We begin this story in a very busy and fast-paced city. People come and go with a lot of hurry and anxiety in a big metropolis. Even the little ants seem to be in a rush in that chaotic and crowded place, and their lives are easily taken when they cross a sidewalk in that area. A very sweet little boy is then seen standing out in this scene. He had brown hair and skin as white as snow. He was heading toward a large store called Omart. The place had a long waiting line with several people standing by. The reason the little boy was there was that he wanted to buy some delicious tteokbokki. His dear sister Mina was particularly fond of that treat. 2 years ago, the car carrying the siblings' parents was involved in an accident, and upon impact, the parents passed away at the scene, leaving only the girl alive. 5 months later, Mina regained consciousness and was soon discharged from the hospital, though she was left with an immeasurable pain as a side effect. And to keep supporting and caring for his dearly beloved sister, the little boy decided to quit high school, pursuing an equivalency diploma instead, which perhaps explained the girl's gradual improvements. Although she still struggled with communication and socialization, she was slowly progressing toward becoming a great writer. Recently, she had started writing a very good novel with a very common and cliché title, How a Princess Survives in a Small World. The two, in this scene from the past, were discussing the work, highlighting that the content was unique, as humans were the size of ants preyed upon by rats and spiders. That gave the boy chills, as the mere thought scared and made him nervously anxious. His sister tried to calm him, saying everything was fine because, in reality, humans were the ones who killed many living beings and were very cruel. This remark from the girl further highlighted her hatred for people after the accident incident. However, in her brother's eyes, she was a good girl, and the novel reflected her true thoughts and opinions, though it had more than just tragedies, which relieved him. He soon asked Mina at that moment if, by any chance, the princess in the story was herself. He was very certain about this almost obvious assumption. He quickly suggested changing the content a little, since it wouldn't be popular for the princess to die and then for the humans to die as well. Mina replied no, because her brother would protect the princess from the dangers to her life, which was the main point of the novel. With that answer, she left her little brother very shy and thoughtful, without saying a word. A month after all this, the boy heard some strange noises coming from the living room. He immediately asked why Mina was crying so desperately. She replied that she had submitted her amazing novel, but it had been rejected. Her little brother asked the reason for the rejection, and she explained that the editors wanted a male main character since the story's genre was fantasy, which required such a thing. He was very surprised and saddened, and according to him, this type of plot had growing demand, but regardless, Mina's novel had been turned down. She was very angry, wishing the entire world would be destroyed. Her brother was desperate because Mina wished, just like in the novel, for humans to die brutally at the hands of horrific spiders and rats. She was crying a lot inconsolably because of all this. Now it's the next day, and more specifically, a sunny morning with a perfectly blue sky. Mina was sleeping, covered in her huge double bed. Her brother was watching her from the doorway, quiet and silent. He was very relieved that she had fallen asleep, probably due to the exhaustion and stress she had experienced earlier. He planned to buy the little girl's favorite tteokbokki because of the moment. Now we return to the present, with him ordering 6 portions of the treat, leaving the attendant quite surprised by the large amount. He confirmed the number of portions, as his sister loved tteokbokki. The little boy sincerely hoped this could cheer her up and pull her out of that sad and vulnerable state. Suddenly, he noticed something around him, becoming very alert and confused. A sinister little mouse was making noise nearby. Soon it appeared, coming out from under the furniture where it was hiding. Then it ran off from that spot. The little boy was very scared, as were the other customers, and he warned the elderly woman about the mouse behind her. She looked back, very confused by all this. He said the creature was black and large and had run into an opening in the place. The elderly lady apologized to the boy, explaining that a few days ago she had called a rat exterminator, but that little creature had escaped the extermination. He is quite shocked by the lack of hygiene in that place, immediately requesting the cancellation of his order. Suddenly, he feels something very different, thinking it might be rats again. He widens his eyes, looking back very scared. His expression shows great anguish and despair. Then something very strange begins to happen to his body. Everything around him starts to feel very odd. Strange sounds are also heard nearby. Out of nowhere, he starts screaming, as if he were being abducted or something similar. His body starts to vanish suddenly, along with his screams. Suddenly, he disappears from that place, leaving only his shoe behind, and his white, slightly crumpled shirt. He seems to fall into some unknown place at that moment. His screams seem to make no difference either. All of a sudden, he finds himself in front of his dear little sister, and out of nowhere, she was also beside him, still crying a lot, besides screaming loudly, filled with anger and rage. Then he realizes, opening his eyes, that it was all just a silly dream. He gets up, slightly confused about what was happening. A large blue cloth with polka dots was over him. That design looked quite familiar up until then. The boy is very surprised to discover that it was his pants. Suddenly, a panel alerts him that he had entered the small world, leaving him very confused about everything that was happening. He immediately decides to move, crawling out from under his own pants. He is very surprised by what he observes. Everything around him appears to have been magnified millions of times. He quickly begins to process what had happened, still very frightened, with wide eyes and completely naked. Out of nowhere, a green magic appears, leaving him even more scared. This magic dresses him in new, perfectly fitting clothes. The panel informs him that equipment for such a beginner user had already been prepared, and his information was available for viewing. The boy's height, weight, skill, job, and even age were displayed on the panel. It also informs him that the main mission had already arrived, and it was to find the beautiful little princess. The little boy reads all that information with a very astonished and confused look. He had no idea what was happening, especially with his own body. He cries out for help and for his dear mommy. While shouting, he notices something peculiar in his field of vision. All the people who had been in that market had also disappeared, leaving only the clothes they wore, and thus, in this peculiar way, this chapter ends. The little boy begged his sister to confirm that the events were not real. Suddenly, the information panel appears again. It said that the minimap feature had been activated and the prince could see all the locations of the little princess. That little boy becomes desperate after all this, and soon realizes that the impossible was becoming pure reality. He quickly expands the map with his hands, and is amazed by such an enlargement option. A small red dot right there indicated what seemed to be his own house. It then becomes clear that Mina, his dear little sister, was indeed the sought-after princess. He is astonished with a very desperate and confused look after processing all this. Then he begins scratching his head and flailing nervously. Suddenly, footsteps that shook the ground are heard in that place. The giant lady becomes desperate, causing the main humans to panic as well. The prince recognizes that the woman was the Tiapbaki stall lady, and the symptoms had started quite late. The woman suddenly begins to scream with a very startled and tense expression. 2 pieces of clothing then begin to fall. The pants don't escape the fall either, nor does the pot of food she had been holding. All the mini-humans become desperate, watching what would be a large pot of food falling uncontrollably. It soon crashes to the ground, spilling a lot of soup brutally and uncontrollably in their direction. Everyone screams and tries to run desperately from the food tsunami. The attempt by some is quite unsuccessful, and they end up boiling in the extremely hot and thick liquid. The prince watches it all with a face full of despair and fear. He then notices some blue dots on the small map. Suddenly, all of them start disappearing. At the same time, the little people were unconscious and lifeless in the hot soup. The prince then concludes that all those people were dead, and everything his sister had written in her novel was really happening in real life. He becomes desperate, wondering what he should do at that moment. First, he just wanted to survive. Second, he wanted to find his dear sister. And third, to discover what such power could offer him. The prince then decides to leave that place to meet someone else, hoping to figure out what was happening. Suddenly, some strange and peculiar noises are heard. The protagonist widens his eyes with a desperate and fearful expression. Turning his head, he sees something utterly terrifying. It was a massive, sinister rat, very hungry. This scene is the same as the previous chapter, where we encountered this very animal. Now it was much more frightening, no longer seeming harmless. It roared with the intention of intimidating its prey. That helpless little boy screamed desperately after this, and immediately, without thinking twice, he started running quickly. He noticed that the rat looked very familiar while running. That big, sinister creature also ran toward the protagonist at high speed, making loud and intimidating noises and growls. The protagonist thought that, at this slow pace, he would soon be captured and devoured. The massive rat was quickly closing in on the little boy, who was screaming desperately, his face full of agony. Suddenly, the creature caught a mini-human. Still running, the prince watched this in horror. The little guy was being devoured by the leg. Brutally, he was thrown forcefully to the ground by the sinister rat. The beast showed its superiority over the tiny human, who screamed in pain, despair, and agony. The protagonist of the story watched with wide, terrified eyes, running a lot while being very breathless and tired at the same time. Meanwhile, the fearsome enemy devoured its prey mercilessly. The boy cried out and screamed for help at that moment, and was soon noticed by the massive, sinister rat, which ran toward him, roaring loudly, with bloodlust in its eyes and a craving for another delicious mini-human meal. The little boy begged, crying for the rat not to eat him. He repeated this desperate and humiliating phrase incessantly. The map of the area showed both the enemy and the victim. The dots got closer and closer as time passed, until they were practically touching. The rat was just a few centimeters away from its new delicious meal, roaring incessantly to intimidate and stop the prince. Then it prepared to bite and swallow him. But suddenly, another mini-human appeared, instructing the boy to duck immediately. The boy widened his eyes, his face filled with fear and exhaustion, still running fast without stopping. Then, without thinking twice, he threw himself to the ground on his backside. With the force of the impact, he rolled and ended up lying on his back. His fear made him close his eyes, dreading for his life and what might happen. But suddenly, a very bright light appeared. A flame shot out toward the sinister rat. It was the mini-human who had appeared out of nowhere, attacking the creature with fire from his mouth like a powerful dragon. The rat, struck by the scorching flames, screamed in pain and agony. Meanwhile, the man didn't stop spitting fire from his mouth. The protagonist watched it all, desperate and impressed. The rat seemed to be defeated, its body covered with multiple burns, ending this tense chapter of the story. We begin this chapter with the sinister rat running away in flames. The protagonist of the story watches it, panting heavily after running for several minutes. Soon, the fire-breathing mini-human arrives, asking about his physical condition. He responds that he's fine even after all the trouble he had gone through. The man was very concerned about whether the boy was hurt, but he assured him he had no injuries. A woman soon arrives, wondering what was going on. Given the bad situation they were in, her brother-in-law and husband ask her to stay calm. The protagonist then learns that they were all a family, including an elderly man, who soon arrives grumbling because the boy had put him in danger. The boy apologizes, feeling very sorry for everything that had happened. The girl tries to defend the boy to her father-in-law, but to no avail, as he only calls Jin Chil over for a chat. The man asks Man Chil to talk to the boy while he takes a little rest, which is answered affirmatively with a simple question. He quickly responds that he's fine and had just used his ability a lot. After this, his brother remains silent for a few seconds, saying absolutely nothing. The boy and the man soon start chatting, learning each other's names. Their ages come up in the conversation, and Kang Bakyen reveals he's only 20 years old. After that, the man introduces his family, stating that his brother Jin Chil is the guy who spits fire. This confirms the protagonist's assumptions about the story. He thinks about forgetting all of this because the situation was very strange. The man then tries to console him, saying not to worry because where there's a will, there's a way, making the boy thank him for those beautiful poetic words. Kim Min Cheol then asks the boy about his ability, as shown by the strange panel, leaving him very confused. Kang Bakyen thought the man was talking about the minimap, also getting confused. He then explained that his ability resembled a small virtual map, which showed people's locations and the surrounding terrain. But he was soon asked about its level, leaving him puzzled. While searching for the level, he discovered that his ability was at level 1. He quickly provided this information while Kim Min Cheol tried to tell him something. The man thanked Kang Bakyen for being honest and speaking the truth, leaving him quite confused. He explained that everything there was very real and for some reason, people had their own abilities. Kim Min Cheol revealed his own ability, which was physical enhancement, and since it was at level 1, it could only strengthen his fist. His older brother's power was called Flame Breath, also at the first level. After hearing all this, Kang Bakyen fell silent, saying nothing for a brief period of time. He soon began thinking about his sister crying and shouting, wondering what Mina had done with the novel. The boy also thought that to survive in that place, he would need to fully understand the type of capability his ability provided. He wanted to stay close to the man who had just arrived there, calling Min Cheol to the first floor since the man could spit flames. The Dragon Man then informed him that he and his family were planning to leave that place, asking what Kang Bakyen planned to do in the future. He quickly considered the long distance to his home, realizing it would be difficult to get there alone without dying. And at least until leaving the supermarket, he would need help from others. Kang Bakyen then asked if he could join that family's group. The man replied that such a decision couldn't be made immediately. After what seemed like a long conversation, a negative response was heard. The old man denied the boy entry into the group, saying they were not in a position to help others. His son tried to argue, saying the boy was only 20 years old and it was cruel to leave him alone. The other brother agreed with his father as he already had to protect his wife, and another person could just become a burden, complicating everything. Kang Bakyen retorted, saying he could help with his ability to see the geography of the surrounding terrain. The old man replied that they also knew that place well, as they visited it frequently. However, the boy added that besides seeing the layouts, he could also analyze and pinpoint where and when dangerous obstacles would appear in that vast area. By revealing this, he left the old man quite confused and thoughtful. Then Kang Bakyen asked everyone to look at something nearby. He pointed to the object with his index finger. It was the body of someone lying on the ground. Noises near it could be easily heard. It then started disappearing, being slowly dragged away. Everyone was shocked and terrified by this. The boy quickly revealed that it was a praying mantis. This confused them, but he soon explained that some animals had been released from the insect stall. And with his mini-map, it was possible to detect threatening things from the start. Strong green wings could be seen from there. Suddenly, a giant praying mantis appeared, flying imposingly right there. All 5 of them noticed it immediately, and the monstrous creature also noticed their presence. It stared at them with large, frightening eyes while the woman called out for her dear husband. She expressed her concern about continuing in that direction, which was met with agreement. The scary green creature kept staring at them in the meantime. The man soon said that it was the quickest route to the stairs, but they had no choice but to turn back again. On the other hand, it was clear they might encounter more things like that, and the hygienic condition of that market was terrible, according to family elder. Suddenly, Kang Bakyen noticed something very strange on his minimap. There was a bright red dot indicating a nearby and imminent danger. He immediately became very scared and nervous. Then he informed everyone that something was heading their way. Out of nowhere, some strange and frightening noises were heard. Soon, something strange and very technological appeared in that place. This left the brown-haired boy very scared, along with his brother, who widened his eyes in fear. And this also left the veteran elder very frightened and worried, ending this tense chapter of the story. That absurd and terrifying thing was the latest ad-powered vacuum cleaner. It automatically cleaned dirt from the floor using infrared sensors. So all those mini-humans seemed like dirt that needed to be cleaned up immediately. They stared at the approaching device, utterly terrified and dumbfounded. Then everyone decides to run as fast as they possibly can immediately. For humans at that moment, even simple vacuum cleaners were imminent threats to their fragile lives. That giant machine seemed to move faster than a plane. It was sucking up everything in its path, getting closer and closer to the fragile mini-humans. Their goal was to reach an opening to hide and save their lives. Most of them successfully made it inside their target, but the man's wife was still outside, desperate and crying, trying to run as fast as she could. Sadly, she tripped on the ground due to her high speed. She fell hard onto the floor, letting out a loud scream. Her husband, who was also still outside, called out to his dear, tiny wife, Kang Bak-hyun. Seeing the whole sad scene, decided to run quickly to help the loving couple. The husband was already there, trying to help his beautiful wife stand. That weak and fragile boy said he would assist as well. Meanwhile, the giant vacuum cleaner was approaching quickly, sucking up everything in its path. The dust stirred up by the machine was clear, forming a huge brown cloud. The three of them ran as fast as they could, their faces filled with desperation. The distance, once insignificant when they were big, now felt like miles. The despair and agony on their faces were evident, but their goal was too close to give up right there. In the last second, they had to save their fragile lives and managed to reach their intended spot. The vacuum cleaner then crashed violently into the crevice. It noticed something to its right and observed it intently. It was the terrifying and scary green praying mantis. The mantis was also staring intently at the high-tech vacuum cleaner. Suddenly, the state-of-the-art machine began rushing toward the green creature. The mantis tried to flee quickly from the attack, but it failed miserably and was shredded by the equipment. Kang Bak-hyun's mini-map displayed this swift battle, and the red dot representing the praying mantis disappeared from it. The united group was very tired and scared from what had just happened moments before. The man quickly asked if his dear sister-in-law was okay. Even groaning in pain and agony, she answered affirmatively. Her ankle appeared to be very swollen, possibly indicating a broken bone or torn tendon. Her husband tried to help her while Kang Bak-hyun, feeling very thirsty, desperately wanted to drink some cold water. Suddenly, he widened his eyes, looking thoughtful and scared. The woman's husband was carrying her on his back while his brother offered to help. He'd thanked him but declined the assistance. Kang Bak-hyun watched that act of camaraderie and generosity in complete silence, not uttering a single word. The journey of that united group continued without major challenges, except for having to carry the woman on their backs due to her injured foot. Ahead of them was the much-desired escalator. It seemed enormous compared to the size of those mini-humans. Risks could easily be lurking there. The man then asked the boy how the area looked. He quickly informed them that there were some loose insects wandering under the escalator, so they immediately decided to head to the emergency stairs instead. Some people were already there as well. In addition to the woman appearing to be in terrible condition due to her injury, her husband decided to return to the escalator. All five of them began walking again through the gigantic market. The boy then asked the man how he had discovered the use of his ability, leaving him slightly confused and suspicious. Kang Bak-hyun explained that he was just curious because, in his case, a hologram had told him how to use it. The man replied that if a person shouted the name and level of their ability in their mind, the assistance would appear, and they only needed to mimic its movements. He added that this was the technique he and his brother had used, leaving the boy deep in thought about it. He quickly tried that trick in his mind, thinking of the name and level of his ability out loud in his head. When something appeared in front of him, he was completely stunned and impressed. Right, there was a hologram identical to him. That clone was creating a transparent ball around itself, and that was probably the barrier. Meanwhile, the man was trying to help his dear sister-in-law move. She was lamenting, but Kim Man-cheol tried to console her, saying he trained so hard to help others, which she responded to with gratitude. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun was trying to check where Minna was, and according to the location of the red dot, she was still at home. Kang Bak-hyun's greatest wish at that moment was for the little girl to wait for him as he wanted to rescue her. Suddenly, a red dot appeared very close to him, signifying a looming threat. Kang Bak-hyun became very tense and desperate, as he had let his guard down and been careless for just a short moment. Meanwhile, a large, furry rat was chasing after him, growling loudly. He alerted all of his friends that the rodent from the past had returned, more bloodthirsty than ever. The creature was ravenous, eagerly chasing its easy prey. The gray-haired man faced it with a look of fear on his face, ending this terrifying and tense chapter of the story. The rat lunged at the man with all the determination and rage in the world. The man, in turn, was already using his fire-breathing power. The battle between the two had begun at that very moment. The fire from the man's mouth seemed highly ineffective against the sinister rat, and suddenly it began to falter and disappear, leaving the man utterly desperate. After that, the rat appeared even more furious and enraged. Watching all of this, Kang Bak-hyun began to move to try to help. Everyone around him was terrified and completely desperate. He firmly planted both feet on the ground, and then began to use a very impressive power, creating a round barrier around everyone there to protect them. The rat, in turn, slammed hard into the barrier, severely injuring itself. Everyone inside the barrier was amazed by this event. But even after all that, the rat got up angrier than ever, and charged at the barrier again, growling loudly, frightening everyone there. Once again, it hit the strong barrier created by Kang Bak-hyun. It was thrown back in pain and agony. Our dear little protagonist watched this with a stunned and amazed expression. The rat then got up again, but with a completely different goal. It wanted to get the defenseless old man who was outside the protective bubble, very scared and tense. The brothers were desperate over the imminent danger their father was in. Kim Man-sheol immediately laid his wife on the ground and ran toward his defenseless dear father. The rat was growling loudly, eager to devour the old man. The old man, in turn, had a completely desperate look on his face. His son, seeing the rat approaching, became even more desperate. And then, sadly, the rat managed to strike his beloved father. The old man flew far from there, his frail, elderly body landing heavily on the ground with a loud thud. Seeing this, Kim Man-sheol became completely enraged with that mother-loving rat, and immediately delivered a powerful blow to it with all the strength and power he had in his body. The rat fled, running desperately, letting out high-pitched, fearful squeals. A lot of vital red liquid was seen on the ground in that area. The old man was there, groaning in pain in his right shoulder, as his arm had been severed by the powerful blow from the sinister rat. His fire-breathing son and daughter-in-law immediately approached with great concern. The old man then tried to have a conversation with Jin-sheol and whispered something juicy in his ear. Kang Bak-hyun was astonished as the old man was very calm despite missing an arm, facing the imminent risk of death from the sudden shock. Jin-sheol quickly called the boy to take care of his father while he helped his fragile wife. The boy promptly accepted the mission assigned to him. Suddenly, Jin-sheol was impressed by something he saw in front of him. The information panel displayed a warning that hostility from Jeok-ga Shim toward Kang Bak-hyun had been detected. The little boy showed a very tense expression at this, wondering what this information meant and its real significance. Suddenly, someone grabbed his weak little arm forcefully. Jin-sheol tried to pull him, saying there was no more time. The old man then began to emanate a red magic aura. Kang Bak-hyun didn't want to leave with his friend, asking him to wait a little. The elderly man, with all that happening to his body, commanded haste. Jin-sheol became very angry with the boy, wanting him to approach as quickly as possible. His wife then asked what he was doing, her face full of concern. The old man couldn't take it anymore, groaning in pain and urging for the process to speed up. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun managed to free himself from the man pulling him, and immediately asked him the reason and justification for that strange action. Meanwhile, the woman approached her father-in-law, deeply concerned about his loud, painful screams. The old man informed her that he couldn't stop. He then grabbed the woman's arm with all the strength he had. Jin-sheol panicked at the sight and shouted in protest. The woman and the old man both began screaming loudly at that moment. She desperately tried to ask her father-in-law what he intended to do, but amidst the chaos, he didn't respond and just kept screaming. Magically, his arm seemed to regenerate as the event unfolded. Bit by bit, it was taking shape again. Everyone there watched the phenomenon with astonishment and concern. Kang Bak-hyun, with a look of deep worry, wondered what was happening, suspecting that the old man was likely absorbing all the woman's blood. Meanwhile, she screamed in pain and agony. She then began to recall the moment when the brothers discussed how everyone had their own innate abilities. The two had revealed their powers, physical enhancement and flame breath. The old man then disclosed that his ability was called absorption, though the methods for using it were not explained. After that, Jin-sheol asked his wife about her power, leaving her a bit confused. She believed she didn't possess any such ability. Then the old man asked what she was truly capable of. His son urged him to stop asking such silly questions, to which the old man replied that it was all becoming frustrating. The woman's ability turned out to be self-destruction. She wondered when and where she could use such a power. Now we return to the dramatic scene of her and the sinister old man, who was sucking all her blood to regenerate his lost arm. Without any hesitation, she quickly activated her self-destruction ability. Jin-sheol pleaded in vain for his father to stop immediately as he approached. His wife, seeing this, grew deeply worried and tried to stop him, shouting at him to stay back. She didn't want him getting that close, but even so, Jin-sheol kept moving closer to the phenomenon. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-sheol observed everything from afar with very tense and worried expressions. Still, Jin-sheol kept moving ever closer, bringing this tense and dramatic chapter to a close. The next chapter begins with the woman screaming loudly, her skin almost disfiguring. Her fatty tissue seemed on the verge of exploding as many fiery rays emanated from her. Jin-sheol had no idea what was happening to his wife, and his face was filled with complete worry and tension. Kang Bak-hyun also grimaced at the intensity of the phenomenon happening before him. Suddenly, a giant hot firewall appeared. The woman seemed engulfed in flames with tremendous energy bursting from her eyes and mouth. The old man could only scream more and more, his face utterly destroyed by agony. His son Jin-sheol was deeply frightened, watching everything happening to his father and wife. Due to the immense proportions of the phenomenon, Kang Bak-hyun decided to form a protective barrier around his friends, and suddenly, a massive destructive explosion occurred right there. Kang Bak-hyun did everything he could to protect his friend Kim Man-sheol within the protective barrier. A strong wind carrying smoke from the explosion swept through the area. Thick fog blanketed the location after the incident. It seemed to dissipate more and more as time passed. Man-sheol and Kang Bak-hyun stood within the protective bubble, their faces full of fear and concern. At the epicenter of where all the fog originated, there was only a black mark on the ground. Kim Man-cheol was furious about everything that had happened and let out a deep sigh. Then suddenly, he released a loud, desperate scream. Kang Bak-hyun, very frightened, thought that all of this was hell, and that he couldn't survive there by just being kind. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol cried desperately over what happened. Kang Bak-hyun wanted to stay alive to find his little sister Mina. He would need to face all this chaos with the help of someone strong. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the vast market. The information panel appeared, stating that the time remaining before the radioactive pollution of area JB-1513 was 16 hours, 15 minutes, and 13 seconds. Kang Bak-hyun was deeply alarmed and thoughtful about the information he had just received. He wondered whether this detail was displayed on the minimap. Using his ability, he expanded the map, making it much larger and more detailed for better environmental analysis. There it seemed that each area was labeled with numbers according to longitudinal and latitudinal columns. JB-1513 most likely referred to the area where Kang Bak-hyun was currently, and such radioactive contamination was not good news. He was very worried about what Mina had done. He quickly recalled a moment from the past when he was talking with her about why she had included areas of radioactive contamination in her novel. Mina quickly explained that if there wasn't something like that, people would just hide, eliminating the tension, killing the action, and making the story less fun. She added that if people didn't move, she'd have to kill them off immediately. If she didn't do that, that person wouldn't forgive her. Kang Bak-hyun grew curious with a worried look, wondering who that person might be. The matter remained a secret, and now we returned to the present, where he was observing the source of the radioactive miasma, feeling upset with Mina. He was also deeply concerned about Kim Man-cheol, who was in very poor condition, and tried to explain the imminent risk of staying there. He told him he would die if he remained in that spot. Kim Man-cheol, visibly shaken, wondered what to do after losing his family, and Kang Bak-hyun responded to his question in a motivational tone. But the man saw no point in trying to survive now that his dearest loved ones were gone. The boy tried to appeal to his emotions, saying there was no reason to die in vain and that his family wouldn't want that. But Kim Man-cheol simply didn't know what else to do at this point. Kang Bak-hyun just wanted him to focus on staying alive and moving forward for now, intending to continue the fight alone if that didn't happen. After saying all this and thanking Kim Man-cheol, he turned his back and began to leave the area. But suddenly, the man asked him to wait a moment. Kim Man-cheol wanted to continue with Kang Bak-hyun because the world had gone crazy, but there was nothing left to do except survive. The boy, after hearing all this, responded that the shaken man had made the right choice. Before leaving, Kim Man-cheol placed his hands on the ground. He knelt in a gesture of prayer and appeal. He asked for the souls of his deceased family members to find peace after their tragic deaths. Kang Bak-hyun observed the entire ritual in complete silence, not uttering a single word, out of deep respect for his friend. After that, since all the insects near the escalator had disappeared, they decided to head in that direction. Suddenly, at that moment, the map began to glitch and disappear for no apparent reason. Afterward, the information panel appeared, stating that the daily 30-minute limit for using the ability had been reached. Kang Bak-hyun had never imagined there was a rule for using it, but it made sense, leaving his friend Kim Man-cheol quite confused. He explained that it was nothing major and they should just continue with their previously planned route. Upon reaching the escalator, they encountered dozens of people there. Everyone seemed very scared due to the immense size of that mode of transport. Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol commented on how many people were gathered there since it was one of the few ways to go down. Suddenly, a deafening and desperate scream was heard by everyone present. The scream came from someone who had gotten stuck in the gaps due to the escalator's high speed. Perfect timing was necessary for anyone who wanted to ascend. Kang Bak-hyun remarked to Kim Man-cheol that it was difficult to ascend in one go, which was why the area was so crowded, and was quickly told to follow his brother. But suddenly, something arrived with a loud noise grabbing everyone's attention. Everyone in the area looked back, stunned and frightened by what they saw at that very moment. There was a huge, fat, furry cat with a cute little collar, arriving there hungry. The creature quickly noticed the presence of easy, succulent food to feast on. It let out a loud meow, sending everyone into a panic. Kim Man-cheol and Kang Bak-hyun glared at it with furious expressions. Meanwhile, the cat meowed even more to intimidate everyone present, bringing this sad and devastating chapter of the story to an end. After the cat's loud meow, everyone in the area tried to flee via the massive and terrifying escalator. Kim Man-cheol and Kang Bak-hyun ran as fast as they could to escape. Looking ahead, the powerful little boy noticed something that moved him. There were some elderly people and a child crying a lot for her mother, who was desperate at that moment. The two, seeing that sad scene, felt even more moved. Meanwhile, the cat grew more terrifying, eager to devour the little humans. Man-cheol and Kang Bak-hyun then approached those defenseless people. And just as the cat was about to strike with its giant paw, Kang Bak-hyun created a protective bubble around everyone nearby. It completely stopped the paw of the sinister giant cat with little effort. The cat, after that became very frightened. The strength of the protective barrier was greater than Kang Bak-hyun had expected, and he likely established some control over it. However, stamina was still a big issue as the energy consumption rate was higher than normal. Suddenly, the child inside the bubble said that she could help Kang Bak-hyun, leaving him very confused. The boy then approached the protagonist, exuding power from his hand. Kang Bak-hyun was utterly confused because his exhaustion vanished in just a second. Kim Man-cheol was also astonished by the child's ability. The mother explained that most likely Park Yu-soo had the power of healing. Kim Man-cheol immediately asked if the boy could revive a completely dead person. Park Yu-soo replied that it wouldn't work on lifeless bodies, it only worked on living humans. Hearing that, Kim Man-cheol grew pensive and sad, remaining silent without saying a word. He then asked Kang Bak-hyun to lower the protective barrier for a moment, as he intended to step outside despite the imminent danger. Kim Man-cheol justified that staying there was a waste of time, wanting to deal with the threat quickly. Kang Bak-hyun agreed with his powerful friend. The sinister cat, seeing the barrier dissolve, was both impressed and alert. Quickly, Kim Man-cheol began charging his super strength in his hand. The sinister cat, seeing this, grew furious and prepared to attack immediately. The strong man was also extremely angry at the looming threat. He then delivered a strong and powerful punch to the cat's paw. The paw flew far away and the cat whimpered in pain and agony. Meanwhile, Park Yu-soo's mother used her ability, impressing Kang Bak-hyun. He quickly realized that the woman's power was to amplify the magnitude of others' abilities. The cat, after receiving that strong, painful punch, became even more enraged and lunged at Kim Man-cheol with all its might. But just as it was about to strike again, it was stopped by a barrier. The barrier was formed by Kang Bak-hyun with the help of the powerful woman. He could freely shape the protective barrier into any form he desired, thanks to the power amplification effects. Kim Man-cheol, meanwhile, was once again charging his super strength to attack the sinister cat. Seeing this, the cat became very alert, its face tense and frightened. After closely observing the situation, it let out a loud meow, deciding it was time to retreat completely. Meowing again, it warned that it would return to capture its prey and kill them mercilessly. The gray-haired old man, after all this, thanked Kang Bak-hyun. In response, Kang Bak-hyun asked about the man's condition and was told he was fine. As he touched Kang Bak-hyun, the old man tried to analyze his ability but failed miserably because the boy's skill level was too high. He then greeted Kim Man-cheol, who returned the gesture. From the strong man, the old man was able to discern that his job was classified as warrior. The old man found it strange that he couldn't analyze Kang Bak-hyun's ability. He immediately asked his elderly wife to reveal the boy's future. Kang Bak-hyun was quite confused by what he had just heard. The old woman explained that her ability was divination, but for some unknown reason, she couldn't see the boy's future. She gently and firmly held the boy's hand. The two remained in complete silence, not uttering a single word for a brief moment. Kang Bak-hyun closed his eyes as something seemed to happen around him. He tightly squeezed his eyelids shut, but soon reopened his eyes, feeling somewhat disappointed and frustrated. The old woman reaffirmed that no matter how many times she tried, she couldn't see the boy's future. Kang Bak-hyun gazed at her silently for a brief moment. Then he thanked the woman for using her ability and making such an effort. He quickly asked Park Yu-soo to heal him again and was given an affirmative response. He also requested the power amplification. Once again, the woman agreed to help. Yu-soo quickly began his magical work on Kang Bak-hyun. After a few moments, they once again faced the challenge of the immense escalator. Kang Bak-hyun immediately began using his enhanced ability. He created a sort of carpet over the gaps in the escalator. He informed everyone present that it was completely safe to pass using his power as a means. The people then started walking on the protective carpet-shaped barrier. After descending a few steps, they paused and stared at what lay ahead of them. The information panel appeared, announcing that Park Yu-soo's favorability had increased by 30 points. Jung San-hyu's had risen by 45 points. Meanwhile, Park Il-dong's favorability had increased by 44 points. Choi Bak-ja's favorability also rose by 47 points. And last but not least, Kim Man-cheol's favorability had increased by 56 points. Kang Bak-hyun, upon seeing all of this, remained completely silent. He stared at the immensity of the giant escalator, ending this chapter of the story. After all that, Kang Bak-hyun found he could use his power again. Realizing this, he was impressed. All of it was thanks to Park Yu-soo's incredibly useful ability. He quickly informed everyone in the area that the only possible direction was toward the revolving doors. He also said that radioactive contamination was closing in from all directions, making it dangerous. But this was truly their only option. Kim Man-cheol immediately agreed with his brother and ordered everyone to move quickly before it was too late. They now stood in front of the revolving doors. Many traces of destruction and death were evident in that eerie place. Several people were gathered around, observing the monumental challenge before them. The looks on their faces were fearful and deeply anxious. Park Yu-soo's mother closed her son's eyes so he wouldn't see such an ugly scene. To get out alive, a person would need to cover 100 meters in just 15 seconds. Kim Man-cheol and Kang Bak-hyun agreed that it wouldn't be an easy task. A couple soon appeared in front of the revolving doors. The man told his girlfriend that he would run during the next turn and she should observe carefully and follow during the next opportunity, to which she agreed. The man then began running as fast as he could toward the door. His face showed complete effort and exhaustion as his girlfriend watched her heart and her throat with worry. When he managed to enter the door, he ran like a madman. He ran as fast as he could while the door seemed to move at lightning speed. Finally, after all the drama, he reached his desired destination. But the mission wasn't completed so easily. Now it was his girlfriend's turn to enter and run as fast as she could. When she entered the dangerous door, she was very frightened and tried to move quickly. Her boyfriend tried to help, urging her to hurry. She was running very fast, but was already tired and out of breath. Her boyfriend called her name, trying to support her in the dangerous race. But all that effort seemed to be completely in vain. The door caught up with Soo Hyun, crushing her mercilessly. Her boyfriend screamed desperately upon seeing the horrific scene. Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol, with sad expressions, confirmed that the girl had truly died cruelly. The elderly seer then called her dear husband. She quickly informed him that he needed to see the future and warned her if another exit appeared. The two joined hands gently. The old man remained completely silent for a few moments. His wife soon asked him what he had seen. He replied that everything would be fine if she followed Kang Bak-hyun, which made her question the truth of that information. The old man again fell silent for a few seconds without saying a word. With this suspense, the scene ended, transitioning to one where Kang Bak-hyun informed everyone that to get them through the revolving door alive, he would need assistance. He explained that thanks to the old woman's divination ability, he had seen that by using his power, he could stop the door's movement for about 20 seconds. Kang Bak-hyun said he would first need help from Park Yoo-soo and his healing technique, to which the sweet boy immediately agreed. Afterward, the protagonist thanked the boy, saying he was relying on him. Following all that discussion and negotiation, they returned to the true and immense challenge ahead. Everyone stared at the massive revolving door. Kang Bak-hyun reiterated that he and Kim Man-cheol would cross first, carrying Park Yoo-soo on their backs due to trust in their stamina. The boy wished for everyone to go together because if they followed the seer's path, it would be possible to save everyone without much difficulty. The old man silently observed the little boy. He approached him without saying a single word. After this dramatic scene, we move on to what really matters. Here begins the perilous crossing through the giant revolving door. Kim Man-cheol ran with Park Yoo-soo on his back and Kang Bak-hyun followed right behind him. The two ran with all the speed they could muster. Meanwhile, the giant revolving door loomed behind the three of them. Finally, they reached their destination successfully, earning much praise for their effort. Kang Bak-hyun was very tired and out of breath after the long and dangerous crossing. He quickly called out to his friend Kim Man-cheol. He revealed that his sister was at Jaehyun apartment complex, wing 103, unit 102. Kim Man-cheol was quite confused as to why the boy was saying something like that so suddenly. He then explained that Mina was his only family, and if he were to die, he would entrust the mission of finding her to his friend, who objected. Kang Bak-hyun explained that if his sister died, everyone there would die immediately, so Kim Man-cheol must protect her if his death occurred. Upon hearing this, Kim Man-cheol couldn't believe it, thinking it was just a silly joke from the boy. The protagonist then said he would explain everything later, to which he received an affirmative response. After all this, Kang Bak-hyun quickly began using his protected barrier ability. He shaked it to hold the giant revolving door in place for a few seconds. Successfully, he managed to stop it. He immediately told the rest of the group to run across without hesitation. The three of them ran as fast as they could in that moment. They all had desperate and fearful expressions as they ran as fast as they could. The barrier, little by little, seemed to weaken, becoming more fragile due to the immense force of the enormous revolving door. Kang Bak-hyun used all his power to try to hold the door as long as possible, allowing his friends to cross. His effort was so great that his face showed exhaustion and strain. Meanwhile, his three friends ran as fast as they could, their faces showing growing desperation and fatigue. But the distance seemed too great for them to cross so easily. Despite Kang Bak-hyun's immense effort, the protective barrier began to break apart completely, releasing the giant revolving door. All of the protagonist's effort to maintain his protective power was in vain, as it shattered after a few seconds. The door began to open slowly afterward, and it quickly gained an absurd speed, posing a deadly threat. Even with the protective barrier broken, Kang Bak-hyun and Park Yoo-soo tried to help each other to take action. Meanwhile, the two old people were running very quickly, exhausted and out of breath. Suddenly, they both tripped on the smooth floor within the giant revolving door. This incident made the crossing even more dramatic and desperate for the fragile and defenseless elders. Park Yoo-soo's mother panicked upon seeing the elderly couple fall to the ground. The two shouted at her to hurry, thinking of her young child's future. Suddenly, someone dashed past the mother. It was Kim Man-cheol, heroically urging the woman to climb onto his back as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun's protective barrier still held the giant revolving door for a bit longer. He was making a tremendous effort at that moment, trying to save all those people. Kim Man-cheol ran as fast as he could with the elderly woman on his back, but the old man didn't seem to put in much effort to save his own life. Kang Bak-hyun wished the old man would hurry, as everyone could be saved from that tragic death. With a very worn-out and tired expression, the old man began to slow down. He thought about how he had lived a long life without regrets. Through his wife's divination ability, he had seen that he would survive all of this. But in exchange, the young Kang Bak-hyun would die of complete exhaustion. And 3 hours later, the defenseless old man would also die in a completely different place. The old man wondered whether it was worth a young boy dying just for him to have 3 meager extra hours of life. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun was giving his all at the forefront to save everyone. After reflecting on all of this, the old man began to slow his steps. He eventually stopped running for his life entirely, and thus he said his final goodbye to his dear wife. Afterward, the protective barrier began to crack under the force exerted by the giant revolving door. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol, along with the woman and the elderly lady, reached their desired destination. They were all extremely tired and tense after running and enduring so much anxiety and distress. The elderly lady immediately thought of her dear husband. She looked back, hoping to see him one last time. He was bidding her farewell, wishing her a long life ahead. His expression was filled with sadness over what was happening. After a few seconds, the protective barrier could no longer withstand the force of the giant revolving door and broke apart. Even so, Kang Bak-hyun was doing his best, using all the power he had. Suddenly, a ping appeared on the minimap. This left Kang Bak-hyun very scared and tense. The barrier he had been trying to maintain was gone, reduced to shards. Strange noises and possibly screams were heard after that. In the aftermath, only one of the old man's shoes could be seen on the ground. Upon seeing this, our dear protagonist was devastated and inconsolable, tears streaming from his eyes. He let out a loud, desperate scream. The elderly lady covered her face with her hands, also inconsolable and deeply saddened. Kim Man-cheol's expression showed clear sadness and frustration. The mother simply held her powerful little son, Park Yu-soo. Suddenly, Kang Bak-hyun knelt down on the ground. He was very confused, as he believed he had saved everyone, that the old man had died regardless. Trying to comfort him, the elderly lady approached and asked him to stand up. She said that in her husband's final moments, he had a peaceful expression and likely had his reasons, separating thoughts and intentions. She added that given the circumstances, it was okay, while Kang Bak-hyun continued to lament, deeply inconsolable. She didn't want him to feel regret, as thanks to him, Park Yu-soo, and his mother had been saved. So based on that, everything was fine, but despite her reassurances, the protagonist remained inconsolable and sad. He stayed on his knees, completely shaken, while everyone else looked at him with similarly sorrowful expressions. Kim Man-cheol remarked to the elderly lady that his dear friend had fallen asleep in that position from sheer exhaustion. He quickly tried to help him, laying him down comfortably on the ground. He then asked the elderly lady where she would go after all of this. She explained that all of her children had emigrated abroad, so she would need to find a new place to live since her husband was no longer with her. After saying all of this, she asked if Kim Man-cheol had a family or if he had ever been married. He quickly explained that all his relatives had passed away earlier, and as the boy had said he would find his sister, he was thinking of accompanying him there. With that, the elderly lady ended the conversation. She then asked for the man's hands for a brief moment. He immediately accepted without hesitation. He quickly closed his eyes, intending to foresee the future. There in his visions, something seemed very strange. Upon seeing all of it, he widened his eyes, his expression one of shock and fear. Kim Man-cheol observed his friend approaching a giant figure. He tried to stop him, stunned that there were still people who hadn't shrunk. Suddenly, a massive foot moved toward the boy, and it crushed him completely, without any mercy. Terrified, Kim Man-cheol opened his eyes and shouted for Kang Bak-hyun. The elderly lady, also deeply alarmed, asked what the boy had seen to make him scream so loudly. He explained that he had witnessed his dear, powerful friend die before his eyes. Park Yu-soo's mother, shocked by what she heard, immediately asked the reason for such a death. For now, Kim Man-cheol didn't respond, only staring tensely, bringing this intense chapter of the story to an end. Quickly, the strong man shook his head, saying he wasn't sure of the real reason for his friend's death. The woman then asked if the elderly lady could perform a divination if her ability were amplified, leaving her quite confused. The woman immediately began using her powers on the gray-haired lady. The elderly woman widened her eyes, deeply impressed by it all. She recognized the power of such amplification. Now she could even see her own future. She quickly closed her eyes, but then suddenly opened them wide again. At that moment, she was having a profound vision of her future. Out of nowhere, she widened her eyes even further. She stated that Kang Bak-hyun had the shadow of death surrounding him, and that if she followed him, her end would certainly be sealed without a doubt. Suddenly, someone called the humble and fragile old lady. It was Park Yu-soo asking about her condition. She became very worried that the child was still awake, as he was probably very tired from everything he had been through. She decided to use her remaining strength to show the boy his future, wanting him to see everything clearly. The elderly lady quickly asked the boy's mother for permission, which was granted without hesitation. After that, she gently took the little boy's hand. Suddenly, the boy's eyes turned white, and he let out an almost deafening scream. The old lady's level 2 divination allowed her to access visions of many possible futures. As she pondered this, Park Yu-soo remained in a deep trance. Suddenly, he let go of the old woman's hand, looking very scared. The elderly lady then fell backward abruptly, and Kim Man-chil helped her without a second thought. Park Yu-soo, realizing what had happened, widened his eyes, his expression filled with tension. Out of nowhere, tears welled up in his eyes and his face showed deep sadness, as if he were about to cry uncontrollably. Park Yu-soo immediately ran to his mother, saying that because of him, his big brother kept dying. He explained that staying with him meant his brother would die trying incessantly to save him. The boy's mother tried to calm him down, reminding him that his big brother was alive and well. Suddenly, a loud shout was heard announcing that someone was heading toward Gongshin University Station. Kim Man-chil was startled by the sheer volume of the shout, his ears hurting from the deafening noise. Through telepathy, a message was heard that someone was heading toward Gangbyeon. A man flying overhead suddenly provided directional guidance for those traveling towards Sading Station. Still crying and holding on to his mother, Park Yu-soo heard someone calling him. It was the elderly lady asking if he already knew where he needed to go with his mother. He quickly responded, saying they needed to head towards Sading Station. The old lady, satisfied with the answer, replied that she would head towards Sura Village in the meantime, hoping to see them again later. Park Yu-soo ended the conversation, also expressing a desire to see her again later. After this exchange, the elderly lady asked Kim Man-chil if he would travel with the young boy, to which he affirmed, also voicing concern about the journey. Park Yu-soo urged his mother to leave immediately so they could meet up with his father and save his big brother's life, a suggestion that was quickly accepted. Before leaving, Kim Man-chil said goodbye and thanked everyone present. In return, the elderly lady and Park Yu-soo's mother expressed their hope of seeing him again and their deep gratitude for his help. The old woman then asked the mother to listen to her son and trust him, as this would ensure both their survival, for which she was deeply thanked. Soon after, everyone parted ways to pursue their planned paths and objectives. Kim Man-chil decided it was also time for him to leave as quickly as possible. They were sheltered from the wind, and it seemed like everyone was forming groups to leave and travel. He wondered what new dangers awaited them outside. While pondering this, Kang Bak-hyun finally got up from the ground, groaning heavily. After waking, the two had their first conversation. Kang Bak-hyun asked where everyone had gone, and Kim Man-chil explained that they had all split up and followed their paths, suggesting they should do the same. Suddenly, a man in a blue shirt approached, asking if the two already had a group for the long and dangerous journey. His plan was for Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-chil to join his clan, as their interesting abilities could help one another. The short-haired man responded that their plan was to head toward Aizu. The man in the blue shirt replied that he was relieved, as his group also had the same plan. He then informed them that the journey would begin in 10 minutes, asking them to kindly meet at one of the exits. He said goodbye, hoping to see them again soon. Out of nowhere, the man simply disappeared from the spot. Kim Man-chil and Kang Bak-hyun were very surprised by this, as the man had an impressive teleportation ability. The strong, short-haired man asked if his little friend was okay, to which he received an affirmative response, explaining that it was just extreme exhaustion. Hearing this, he paused, deep in thought, widening his eyes. Without a second thought, he asked his fragile little friend to climb onto his back, leaving him a bit confused. Kim Man-chil explained that they had no time to waste, as the radioactive substance would soon contaminate the area and they needed to leave as quickly as possible. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun remained silent and pensive for a few seconds. He finally decided to climb onto his friend's back without any resistance. He then asked his friend if Miss Choi Bak-ja would forgive him for not being able to save her husband. Giving his opinion, Kim Man-chil replied that she was very grateful to him and that no one wanted to dwell on the consequences or responsibilities related to that. Furthermore, there was another point to mention. Kim Man-chil wanted the boy to stop calling him sir, as he was only 36 years old, which Kang Bak-hyun reluctantly accepted despite some disagreement. Finally, they arrived at the exit, where many people had gathered to leave. A man announced that since everyone was there, they would soon depart. At last, the group began to leave the place. Kang Bak-hyun, exhausted, put in great effort to move forward. He finally got a glimpse of what lay beyond the market. Everyone there stared at the scene in shock and fear. The city was in complete chaos, filled with fire and destruction. Loud noises echoed through the desolate area. There were many crashed, burning cars. Fire hydrants were destroyed, spewing water everywhere. And of course, the power lines were down. Kang Bak-hyun was confused about whether this world was truly the one he knew. According to the man in black, no one could survive alone in a place like that. They planned to cross Aizu Station and head toward Naebang Station. It was clear that there would be various obstacles along the way, but together, anything was possible. Hearing this, Kim Man-chil realized who the man was. He wanted the group to survive together. The man was the mayor of Seoul, Kim Hwan-suk. He stood in the middle of the crowd, addressing them. He had been an independent candidate and was still elected, known for his strong ideals and hardworking nature. Kim Man-chil asked if this information didn't make his friend feel more at ease, but Kang Bak-hyun had an inexplicable bad feeling. Kim Hwan-suk soon requested a scout from his manager, who agreed without hesitation. Suddenly, the man raised his hand in a strange manner. Out of nowhere, he began to float effortlessly. He rose high into the air, leaving everyone deeply impressed. Once up there, he surveyed the area in all directions. He concluded that the best direction was north, free from imminent dangers and relatively safe. Kim Hwan-suk then asked for everyone's opinion on the matter. The crowd felt relieved thanks to the mayor and wanted to move immediately. Suddenly, a loud noise was heard in the area. A giant, fearless flying creature appeared. Seeing it, the assistant panicked in fear. The bird was heading straight for him, ready to attack mercilessly. It grabbed him without hesitation, as he was an easy and succulent prey. Everyone watched the scene in shock. The pigeon happily swallowed its prey. Then it flew away as if nothing had happened. The group continued to stare at the sky, deeply shaken. Using his power, Kang Bak-hyun pointed out that there was likely a pigeon habitat nearby, leaving Kim Man-cheol confused. He explained that there were many flying creatures in the area, making it neither the fastest nor the safest route to travel. Hearing all this, Kim Man-cheol fell into deep thought. Everyone remained gathered in the same spot. The mayor observed the crowd, creating a tense atmosphere. He said he didn't want Go Sung-yoon's death to be in vain. At these words, the people looked at him with sad and tense expressions. Kim Hwan-suk wanted everyone to remember the crucial information the deceased man had provided. He urged them to head toward the alley quickly and without hesitation to continue their journey. Suddenly, someone disagreed with the mayor, saying that direction was too dangerous. It was Kang Bak-hyun, stating that there was a pigeon habitat in that area and suggesting a safer detour. Kim Hwan-suk disagreed, citing the time the detour would take. The boy tried to argue against the decision, but he was quickly silenced without explanation. The group looked confused and unsure about what was happening. Kim Hwan-suk seized the moment to tarnish the young boy's image, saying they didn't have the luxury of worrying about every concern. Kang Bak-hyun found himself unable to part his lips due to the mayor's ability. The mayor wanted to eliminate troublemakers early on to avoid disrupting the atmosphere. He stated that the boy didn't trust himself enough to speak up, and everyone there agreed with this nonsense. Taking further advantage of the situation, the mayor asked the crowd to follow him. Kang Bak-hyun tried to stop what was happening, but he was suddenly grabbed by the neck without explanation. It was Kim Man-cheol, apologizing and saying they would go in a different direction. Kim Hwan-suk silently observed without saying a word. He then decided to move forward with his herd of fools. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol still held his friend by the neck. The boy couldn't say anything due to the mayor's ability. After a few moments, he finally managed to open his mouth. He immediately asked why his friend had stopped him. Kim Man-cheol explained that they couldn't save everyone. This left the boy very saddened. He wanted the boy to focus solely on saving his sister, as it was impossible to help everyone and make it home at the same time. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun agreed with his dear friend, deciding to simply move forward. Suddenly, he thought of something very important. He would check if the other group of friends was still alive, which impressed his friend. Using his ability, he located the people he had seen earlier and found Park Yoo-soo. The boy had moved to the area where Yoo-soo was. Suddenly, several alert signals appeared on the map. They multiplied rapidly and uncontrollably at that moment. Seeing this, Kang Bak-hyun was shocked, his expression deeply worried and sorrowful. He had discovered that Yoon-soo was in imminent danger, bringing this tense and captivating chapter to a close. Now the scene shifts to the mother and her little boy. He desperately needed to pee, and his mother was quite annoyed by this. He wanted to separate from her to do so, but his mother tried to find a more reasonable alternative. Still, the boy insisted on going to that spot. The mother eventually agreed and informed the group of her decision, which was immediately supported by everyone. Finally, the little boy was able to pee as he wanted. His mother's desire was to return to the group immediately since the boy was done. As she pulled his arm, she noticed something very strange. The boy said they couldn't go that way. The mother argued, saying they needed to stay with the group, otherwise they would quickly lose them and wouldn't be able to catch up. Suddenly, the boy informed her that those people were already dead. This left the mother utterly shocked and desperate. The sight of the group's death was horrifying and grim due to the way they had died. The boy explained that a poisonous gas from the sewer had killed them, a fact revealed through Choi Bokcha's power, making it impossible to save them. The mother was stunned by this information, realizing she could have saved them. But the boy said that if they were alive, they would have harmed the two of them. He assured her that such a situation would have been too cruel for a child. The mother immediately hugged her son, crying profusely. The little boy also cried, asking her not to cry anymore. She assured him she would follow his decision and wouldn't cry anymore. They then decided to go find the father. Meanwhile, all those evil people lay dead on the ground. Now returned to Kang Bak-hyun, relieved that the mother and son were alive, informing that the rest were already dead. Kim Man-cheol was glad that the elderly lady's ability had helped the boy survive, but he wondered why the rest had died, being told that they had likely fought among themselves, as there were no apparent threats. He agreed, though he found the situation far from normal. Suddenly, he asked about Miss Choi Bokcha. He was relieved to learn that she was alive and part of a large group of 13 people. Kim Man-cheol immediately praised the boy's ability, likening it to a military satellite. Kang Bak-hyun explained that his power was far better than that, earning even more praise. He thought the safest way to travel was along the main road. The two discussed the boy's ability to use his barrier again, possibly 1 or 2 more times. Kim Man-cheol then asked why he tired so quickly, leaving the boy confused. The boy explained that he didn't get that exhausted using his power, but his friend and Miss Choi Bokcha did. Kang Bak-hyun suggested that energy consumption likely varied for each person, and the way the power was used could also affect this. But for now, they decided to take things one step at a time. They were approaching a strange and eerie place. Some lit windows could be seen nearby. It seemed the area was still inhabited by living people. The two watched with great hope in their eyes and expressions. Kang Bak-hyun felt relieved because there were still many survivors left. Staying inside one's own home was definitely safer, he thought, wondering what Mina was doing there. Suddenly, he remembered that he hadn't eaten anything that day. Kim Man-cheol then asked if he wanted to stop by a convenience store. The boy replied with an eager and somewhat doubtful tone. Although it was a bit far, they saw a CS about 25 to 30 minutes away, so they decided to walk there quickly. Suddenly, Kim Man-cheol noticed something both impressive and frightening. There was a parked car, and the drivers were likely dead. Kang Bak-hyun decided to check it out before continuing to their destination. He quickly opened his minimap. Discovering that someone was still alive, he left Kim Man-cheol astonished by the incredible information. The most impressive thing of all was that Kang Bak-hyun knew this person. Now the challenge ahead seemed immense. They needed to climb up to the door handle to open the giant car door. Kim Man-cheol was a bit confused about how they would accomplish such an almost impossible feat. Suddenly, they began walking on air thanks to the protective barrier shaped by the powerful boy. The short-haired man was amazed by this, and his friend quickly explained how he had done it and the consequences of the high energy consumption. But there was no time to waste. Now it was Kim Man-cheol's turn to use his ability. He used his super strength to open the car door handle. Finally, he succeeded in this mission with total success. Kang Bak-hyun then saw something that caught his attention. It was a tiny person lying unconscious on the seat of that giant car. The two immediately approached without hesitation. The person was Kim Aram, someone Kang Bak-hyun knew. She was lying on the car seat, taking a nap. Our protagonist immediately tried to wake her up. She woke up thinking she was dreaming about something. Kang Bak-hyun then tried to explain the current situation they were in. Kim Aram panicked upon realizing what had happened to her dear father. Suddenly, everyone looked back and noticed something. Kim Aram grew even more frightened and tense, her eyes wide open. Her dear father was dead, lying on the dashboard of that giant car. She screamed loudly in horror and despair, ending this sad and tragic chapter of the story. We begin chapter 13 with Kim Aram kneeling on the ground, continuing her loud and deafening scream. The scream echoed from the car, audible from several meters away. Meanwhile, the car itself was emitting thick white smoke. The sun was setting rapidly, giving way to the dark and dreaded night. The story takes us back inside the car. Sad groans could be heard at that moment. It was Kim Aram, still crying heavily over the tragic and sudden death of her beloved father. She felt immense guilt, thinking he wouldn't have died if she hadn't asked him to pick her up from that place. Kang Bak-hyun mentioned that the deceased man had been a kind person, piquing Kim Man-cheol's interest in their friendship. He explained that throughout elementary and middle school, Kim Aram had been in his class 3 times. This helped his friend understand everything that was happening. Kim Aram remained there, utterly shaken and inconsolable after losing her dear father so suddenly. The man had been lying on the car seat for some time, with a white cloth covering his lifeless body. All 3 stood there before him, showing great respect for Kim Aram's significant loss. After several minutes of crying, she tried to explain that her father had come to pick her up after having a meal with some friends when he suddenly began shrinking. She had been wearing her seatbelt when it happened, but her dear father had not. She felt she had caused his death and was deeply worried about what to do next, calling out Kang Bak-hyun's name. Answering her question, Kim Man-cheol said she needed to survive to reunite with the rest of her family. Kang Bak-hyun agreed with his friend and invited Kim Aram to join their group. After hearing this, she felt supported and accepted the boy's advice. Kang Bak-hyun then decided that their first step would be to get down from that giant car. He immediately began using his moldable protective barrier ability. Kim Aram, seeing this ability, was amazed and asked her friend what the blue thing was. Kang Bak-hyun explained that in exchange for becoming small, everyone received a unique and exclusive power. Meanwhile, he put his plan into action to safely get everyone down from the car. Finally reaching the ground, he explained that his ability was called Barrier, and that there were various abilities with different uses. Kim Aram, upon hearing this, became even more curious, finding the subject very interesting. Kang Bak-hyun told her that she too could discover her unique and exclusive ability. This piqued her interest even further. Her unique, exclusive, and impressive ability turned out to be psychokinesis. Realizing this, she immediately put her power to the test. Her ability created an almost identical clone of herself, resembling a type of hologram. The clone attempted to approach Kim Aram. She immediately managed to push it away using her 2 powerful hands. The force sent it flying into a giant leaf, leaving Kim Man-cheol deeply impressed. After doing this, Kim Aram revealed that she felt very tired. Kang Bak-hyun quickly explained that her ability likely consumed a lot of energy and should only be used in critical moments. The girl said she found it quite scary. Her friend assured her that she would need to get used to it, as it would be essential for her survival moving forward. Kim Man-cheol then introduced himself, stating he would call her Miss Aram. Finally, as he was about to share the nickname he preferred to be called by, the little girl said she would also call him Sir, just like Kang Bak-hyun did, making him quite annoyed. She was worried about not knowing how to use her ability, but Kang Bak-hyun tried to reassure her, while Kim Man-cheol remained irritated by the designation. The boy then discovered that Kim Aram was also heading to Jaehyun apartment complex to find her mother. He quickly asked her mother's name. He soon learned that her mother's name was Kim Jong-mi. With this information, it would likely be easy to find her since they lived in the same apartment complex, according to Kang Bak-hyun. He immediately opened his mini-map to search for the woman. After checking the details, he discovered that the woman was still alive and informed Kim Aram of this, leaving her curious about his method. He quickly explained that he could use the mini-map for 30 seconds a day. Kim Man-cheol praised him for being the only one to have 2 active abilities. Kim Aram, after hearing all this, proposed they hurry back to the Jaehyun apartment complex. But suddenly, one of their stomachs growled and Kang Bak-hyun suggested stopping by a convenience store first before continuing their journey. After that, the 3 continued their way to the store. Out of nowhere, they started noticing something strange in the area. They wondered where the horrible smell was coming from. Looking to the side, Kang Bak-hyun widened his eyes, frightened and tense. There were dozens of tiny ants walking slowly in a line. Farther ahead, a giant dog lay lifeless on the ground and with open tongue hanging out. The 3 immediately realized that the terrible stench came from the rotting carcass of the dog, solving the mystery of the awful smell. Kim Man-cheol quickly stated that there was nothing they could do about it and that their only option was to endure the smell and continue toward their goal. Meanwhile, the ants drew closer to the dead dog. They also picked up small objects scattered around the area. Due to the strong smell of decay, a few opportunistic flies buzzed over the dead dog. They seemed entirely focused on the dog's carcass. This relieved Kang Bak-hyun as the dog distracted the insects, rendering them practically insignificant and irrelevant to the group. This allowed them to continue their journey without significant obstacles or difficulties ahead. As they passed by the large dog, Kang Bak-hyun thought about the size of a whale's body and how dangerous it would be if such a creature were alive. Even a puppy would pose a huge threat to the tiny humans on Earth in this context. Suddenly, while lost in thought, something immediately caught his attention. A loud, deafening, and terrifying sound echoed in the area. Out of nowhere, a sinister black crow revealed itself, cawing loudly, ending the chapter with great suspense. The enormous bird had clearly spotted the group of friends. The crow began flapping its wings rapidly, heading toward the tiny humans. All of them wore terrified expressions, their eyes filled with fear. But surprisingly, the crow flew straight past them without paying any attention to the humans. The bird's true target turned out to be something entirely different. Even the flies in the area backed away in fear. The black crow's real goal was the body of the lifeless, adorable little dog. Suddenly, more black flying birds appeared in the area. They too were intent on feasting on the body of that lovely dog. Seeing this, Kang Bak-hyun thanked God that the birds weren't interested in them, while Kim Man-cheol mentioned his strong dislike for birds. During their conversation, the sinister crows continued devouring the dead dog's carcass. They were fully focused on their opportunistic meal. But then something caught the attention of one of the crows. It turned its head and widened its dark eyes. The bird had noticed the nearby group of friends. Panic set in as they realized that the crows, which they thought weren't interested in their fragile, non-nutritious bodies, had spotted them. Suddenly, the black crow let out a loud screech to intimidate them. Without hesitation, it began flying toward them, intent on eating them. Kang Bak-hyun quickly ordered his friends to run immediately to the convenience store. Meanwhile, the crow flew rapidly, screeching continuously. Their race to the store was critical, determining whether they would live or die. Without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun used his protective barrier ability. This helped his friends reach their desired destination faster. Kim Aram was the first to enter the convenience store, followed by Kim Man-cheol. Only Kang Bak-hyun remained outside, terrified as the giant, menacing black crow pursued him. It seemed like the end for him, as the bird was just centimeters away from grabbing him. But suddenly, something began happening to the black crow. This allowed Kang Bak-hyun to reach his destination successfully. The mysterious black bird suddenly fell behind, screeching in pain and agony. The cause soon became apparent. It was Kim Aram using her incredible ability to repel the crow and protect her friends. Her hand extended forward, releasing her surreal power that restrained the bird. The crow screeched endlessly, terrified of what was happening. Outside the convenience store, the crow watched its easy prey, now completely safe. Accepting its defeat, it flew away. After her successful effort, Kim Aram, exhausted, knelt on the ground. She took deep breaths while Kang Bak-hyun looked at her, concerned about her physical state. She assured him she was fine, just a little tired, but he warned her that overexerting herself could cause her body to give out eventually. Thanks to her, however, her little friend was still alive to make that point. He was deeply impressed that just 20 minutes after learning her technique, Kim Aram already had full control over it. She had excellent awareness of her unique ability, making her power all the more impressive. After reflecting on all this, she mentioned that she was very hungry. One of the boys was amazed at the amount of food in the store, remarking that even a lifetime of eating wouldn't deplete it all. At that moment, Kim Aram used her impressive ability. Her goal was to knock a snack off the store shelf. She succeeded with barely any effort. Within seconds, the package was on the floor, ready to be opened. Kang Bak-hyun quickly said he would hold the package in place while Kim Man-chil pulled in the opposite direction. Working together, they easily opened the plastic bag. The protagonist immediately noticed the sweet smell of the food. Without hesitation, Kim Man-chil began enjoying the snack. All three sat on the floor eating heartily. Kim Aram then told Kang Bak-hyun to chew a bit before swallowing, which he immediately complied with. It was the first time she'd seen her dear friend in such a state. Around him were many crumbs and bits of food due to the speed at which he was eating. Seeing the mess, he quickly apologized. Kim Aram told him not to apologize and suggested they simply clean themselves up a bit. Then they spotted a full bottle of water nearby. Suddenly, the cap was opened, giving them access to its contents. Shortly after, the clear liquid was poured into a cup. Kim Aram, after doing all this with her impressive powers, asked the boys, who were very amazed, to clean themselves up immediately. Kim Man-chil quickly filled his hand with water. He splashed it onto his face with full force. He was standing inside the cup, very happy because it was so refreshing. Kim Aram, embarrassed by the sight of the two men bathing in just their underwear, turned her back to avoid seeing it. Then Kim Man-chil mocked Kang Bak-hyun's skinny body and was immediately countered with a remark about how girls didn't like his bulky physique. Hearing this, she called the boy a jealous bastard, but there was still something the boy wanted to ask. Kang Bak-hyun asked if the man didn't want to return to his own home and was told no, as his entire family had already passed away. Kim Man-chil revealed that he had been surrounded by friends he had met in a gym and believed they were likely safe at the moment. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun thought about letting his friend go alone if he wanted to move forward, but he was told no, as Kim Man-chil wanted to stay with him. The boy was confused by this, but Kim Man-chil said he couldn't let him die. The protagonist responded that he could handle things alone without any issues. Afterward, the two laughed, staring at each other in silence for a few seconds, in a moment filled with friendship and camaraderie. Kim Man-chil then thought about the future he had seen earlier. He recalled the visions he had observed with the old fortune teller. The prediction involved a man of normal human size. He reasoned that the future of Kang Bak-hyun was undoubtedly very dangerous, but there was a catch. In the vision, he saw his close friend nearly being trampled by the giant human. He concluded by saying that if the prediction were true, their survival up to that point was uncertain, closing this chapter of the story. We begin the next chapter with a bright light from a massive street lamp. Some strange noises could also be heard nearby. The group of three friends was still at the 25 convenience store. They stood together in the middle of the place. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun was using his minimap ability. He zoomed in and examined a rather curious area. But suddenly, the minimap started to fade and become blurry. This happened because Kang Bak-hyun had used up all the 30 minutes of recovery time Park Yoo-soo had provided despite trying to use it sparingly and carefully. Still, he managed to find a relatively safe path for the team to continue their journey. Kim Aram said she found all this a bit strange, leaving him confused. She explained that when she was in Japan, she had read a novel whose content was exactly what they were experiencing at that moment. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun was very surprised and perplexed. Kim Man-chil wondered about the country the little girl had mentioned earlier. She explained that, as a child, she had lived in Japan for a long time because of her father's job. Kang Bak-hyun replied that this didn't matter much and insisted she explain more about the novel she had read. She explained that the work was titled People Who Shrunk to 3 centimeters, and that if it had been published, it would definitely have been a bestseller. Kang Bak-hyun quickly realized that she was talking about the novel Mina had written. He immediately asked her what the story was about. Kim Aram explained that in the novel, everything the protagonist's wife wrote became reality, and all the people shrank to 1/50th of their original size. Curious about these facts, Kang Bak-hyun asked why the novel hadn't been published. She explained that it had been continued online for a short time, but the author suddenly stopped writing without an official statement or explanation. This was likely because the author had plagiarized a novel already published in India, which left Kang Bak-hyun quite confused. Kim Aram explained to her close friend that in countries other than India, similar stories had also been published. Not only were the general topics similar, but the content seemed quite alike as well. Kang Bak-hyun was surprised to learn that Mina hadn't been the only one to write such a novel. The phrase, "if she didn't do it, the person wouldn't forgive her," immediately came to his mind, making him wonder what kind of situation this was, and who exactly was the person the girl mentioned. The dark, cold, and ominous night had already fallen in that place. The three friends continued walking, heading toward their previously planned destination. Kim Aram suddenly asked Kang Bak-hyun to move more slowly, as she had night blindness, and her request was quickly accommodated by her dear friend. At that moment, he was thinking about having to kill other people, just like in the novel his sister had written. He wondered if he would truly be capable of such cruelty. Perhaps he could if he were attacked and found himself in a life or death situation. While deep in thought, someone called out to him. It was Kim Aram, asking if Mina was okay. He quickly replied that she was, and that she was probably safe at home. Hearing this, Kim Aram admitted she didn't know how she would tell her mother about her father's tragic death in the car accident. Kang Bak-hyun hoped her only concern would be getting there alive. The girl agreed, saying she, too, wanted to reach home alive. The three of them continued walking toward their goal in complete silence, without saying a word. Kim Man-cheol's expression was sorrowful and weary. Suddenly, they heard a very eerie and unsettling sound. They all stopped to listen, their faces tense and filled with fear. The sound grew louder and more terrifying with each passing moment. It echoed easily through the area due to its height and sheer volume. The noise could be heard throughout the place without issue. Kang Bak-hyun then pondered whether to proceed via the road or the bridge. Using the bridge to cross would take a long time. On the other hand, the road was filled with potholes and a strong odor, though it posed no life-threatening danger. Considering these factors, Kang Bak-hyun decided with unanimous agreement to take the road. The three of them continued their journey on foot as planned. There was a traffic light that, as they passed, was red on one side. Seeing this, Kim Man-cheol remarked how amazing it was that electricity still worked at this point. He concluded that someone, despite being shrunken, was still working to replenish the power supply alone without any support. Kang Bak-hyun agreed, recalling the mayor's comments about heading to the control room. There were likely people trying to manage the situation. Kim Man-cheol, however, speculated that there might also be some humans who hadn't shrunk. This reminded him of the vision he had using the old woman's future prediction ability. Kang Bak-hyun then remarked that it would be great if there were still normal-sized people. Suddenly, a loud and horrifying scream echoed through the area. Kang Bak-hyun widened his eyes, his expression tense and fearful upon hearing it. Out of nowhere, two people emerged from the dense fog, walking toward them. One of the men noticed the trio's presence. Then suddenly, he disappeared from his injured friend's side. In an instant, he reappeared in front of Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Aram. Without even greeting the trio due to his desperation, he asked if any of them had a healing ability. Now all five of them were gathered together. The man in the white shirt was groaning in pain and agony due to his severely injured, heavily bleeding arm. Kim Man-cheol immediately asked what had happened to Mayor Kim Hwan-suk. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun was deeply worried about the rest of the group. The mayor soon revealed that everyone else had died. This left the two friends shocked, their faces filled with disbelief and sadness. Kang Bak-hyun shook his head, unable to accept what had happened to the others. Despite the boys' warnings about the imminent danger, Mayor Kim Hwan-suk had chosen to take the risky path, leading to his followers' deaths. Kang Bak-hyun started this chapter of the story by staring at Mayor Kim Hwan-suk with a determined expression. The other man, meanwhile, looked deeply disappointed and sorrowful over everything that had transpired, saying nothing at all. The man in the blue shirt broke the silence, explaining that the group had encountered pigeons along the way and only he and the mayor survived the attacks. Kim Aram was surprised to learn that the man was truly the city's mayor, a fact confirmed by her good friend Kang Bak-hyun. The girl remarked that Kim Hwan-suk must have felt responsible for managing the situation, which led to him getting injured. It must have been incredibly difficult to go through something like that. But Kang Bak-hyun was confused about whether this had actually happened. Kim Hwan-suk's plan was to use Joe's teleportation to get to the sidewalk, but Joe immediately informed him that he wasn't feeling well enough to use his ability at the moment. Kim Man-cheol then remarked that the amount of energy required for each power varied from person to person. For example, he could use his physical enhancement ability for a long time, while Kang Bak-hyun could maintain his protective barrier for as long. Hearing this, Mayor Kim Hwan-suk decided to walk a bit further while his friend apologized. The five of them continued walking together toward their planned destination. Mayor Kim Hwan-suk soon commented that he hadn't realized how difficult crossing the road could be, but he reassured himself that he just needed to endure a little longer since they were nearing their desired location. The five of them even helped each other climb the small incline together. Finally, they all celebrated reaching their planned spot. Kang Bak-hyun then informed them that just a little further ahead would likely be the pavement. He'd also mentioned that there were gaps between the pavement, but crossing it should be much easier. Suddenly, something in the surroundings caught his attention. He looked ahead toward the ground. Meanwhile, something terrifying and ominous seemed to emerge. It was soon revealed to be a black ant with an aggressive expression. But it wasn't just one of these insects. There were many of them. All of them were ready to kill the five friends mercilessly. That's when Kim Man-cheol realized they were in an ant nest. The ants made loud noises to intimidate the people there. Mayor Kim Hwan-suk called out to manager Jo Da-hoon to do something. Joe immediately began using his powerful teleportation ability. In just a few seconds, the two of them appeared atop a structure far from the imminent danger. They breathed deeply, relieved to have escaped. Manager Joe lamented, worried that he hadn't been able to bring the others, while the mayor was certain the rest would soon perish. He explained that in this new world, having a strong ability was necessary for survival. This grim truth left Manager Joe both frightened and deeply worried. Meanwhile, in that extremely dangerous battlefield, the three powerful friends remained. Without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun activated his moldable protective barrier ability. It held back the swarm of ants for some precious time. The ants banged against the barrier, trying to break free. While observing this, Kim Aram took deep breaths to successfully use her impressive ability. She managed to hurl some of the ants far away, but her mission was far from complete. They all began using their powers together to fight off the hundreds of ants in the area. Kim Aram pushed herself hard, moving her hands in ways she never had before. With all of her strength, she literally split an ant in half as if it were a biscuit. She managed to break dozens of ants in half, significantly contributing to the frantic battle. The dismembered ants writhed on the ground in pain and agony, their back sections brutally torn off. Seeing this, the remaining black ants became even more enraged, charging forward with a thirst for vengeance. Kim Man-cheol fought against dozens of them, using his super strength without hesitation. In front of him were countless opponents, their expressions filled with rage and vengeance. One brave ant that tried to attack him received a powerful, painful punch to the face. It flew far away, almost split in two. However, in a moment of carelessness, Kim Man-cheol was bitten on his left arm by another ant. Despite the pain, he quickly retaliated with a strong punch to its face. The ant flew far, unconscious, crashing hard to the ground. Kim Man-cheol continued killing ant after ant, reaching an impressive total of 22 kills on his own. Pleased with these numbers, he told Kang Bak-hyun that he would protect him and Kim Aram. With their combined abilities, the trio performed exceptionally well in the frantic battle. Meanwhile, the mayor and his friend watched everything from their elevated position. The two were very impressed by the trio's performance, and Kim Hwan-suk couldn't believe what he was seeing. Kim Aram was extremely out of breath from using her power without any breaks for rest. She had already reached her limit, screaming in pain and exhaustion as she attempted to lift something extremely heavy. It was a concrete slab that was part of the sidewalk in that area. With great skill and success, the girl managed to lift the heavy block. Kim Man-cheol watched the entire scene with a perplexed and highly impressed expression. Kang Bak-hyun, too, observed with a tense and astonished face. Meanwhile, the girl was lifting a concrete block 10 times her own size. Then she made her final hand movement. This caused the heavy concrete block to collapse onto several ants in the area. Afterward, Kim Man-cheol and Kang Bak-hyun tried to shield their faces from the dust and debris generated by the impact. The impact was so strong that it created a cloud of white dirt in the area. Meanwhile, Mayor Kim Hwan-suk watched everything, deeply impressed, wondering how those people managed to do such things and whether he could survive until the end with his friend. Manager Jo Dae-hoon agreed with everything, acknowledging that all three had highly useful and impressive abilities. But Kim Aram had especially caught Mayor Kim Hwan-suk's attention. She was someone he wanted to keep close no matter what, and with this comment, the chapter concluded brilliantly. This chapter of the story began with Kim Man-cheol still shielding his face from the dust, wind, and debris caused by the falling concrete slab. Afterward, Kim Aram was visibly exhausted and out of breath. Suddenly, she lowered her head, appearing to have given up entirely. Kang Bak-hyun rushed over, deeply concerned, asking if the girl was okay. He believed she had used too much of her energy and decided to take her to a building, ordering Kim Man-cheol to provide protection during the journey. Kim Man-cheol responded affirmatively, promising to follow closely behind. Quickly, Kim Man-cheol began walking, escorting his dear friend alongside him. They soon disappeared into the dense dust cloud lingering in the area. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol faced two bizarre black ants that had survived the attack. He was a bit uneasy about being alone in that moment. Suddenly, one of the ants charged at him mercilessly. Kim Man-cheol's initial reaction was to recoil in shock, retreating comically from the insect. Without hesitation, he retaliated, punching the ant to drive it away. Dozens of surviving black ants remained, which Kim Man-cheol attempted to kill. Meanwhile, inside the building, the boy and girl discussed what had happened just moments earlier during the frantic battle. Kang Bak-hyun was amazed by how she had lifted the heavy concrete slab as if it were nothing, but she admitted it had been extremely difficult and exhausting. However, there was more to it. Kim Aram revealed that she couldn't believe how strong she had become. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun thought that the girl's telekinesis ability might be the most powerful on Earth, but her greatest weakness was the limited time she could use it. While this was being discussed and contemplated inside the building, Kim Man-cheol continued punching and killing the black ants. He was extremely fatigued after the chaotic and challenging battle. Suddenly, two holograms appeared behind him. They were Manager Jo Dae-hoon and Mayor Kim Hwan-suk, asking where the rest of the group had gone. Kim Man-cheol quickly revealed his friend's location, politely asking the two men to follow him. Meanwhile, Kim Aram, utterly exhausted, had fallen asleep while leaning her head on her dear friend Kang Bak-hyun's shoulder. Suddenly, someone arrived and questioned why the two were sitting so close together. To Kim Man-cheol, they looked like a couple or something similar. Kang Bak-hyun quickly dismissed the joke, explaining that his dear friend Kim Aram had simply fallen asleep due to extreme fatigue and exhaustion. Mayor Kim Hwan-suk then, knowing the safety of the location, ordered everyone, including Manager Jo Dae-hoon, to rest before resuming their journey. His order was promptly obeyed. He remarked that a bit of sleep would do them all good. Kim Man-cheol then noted there was no immediate danger in the area, but suggested taking turns keeping watch for safety. Manager Jo Dae-hoon quickly agreed with this excellent idea. With the plan approved, Kim Man-cheol volunteered for the first watch while the others got some rest. Within minutes, all four were dozing off under the strong man's watchful eye. Something suddenly caught Kim Man-cheol's attention. He observed the eerie and ominous surroundings of that place. He thought that for now it seemed safe, but over time the power would be cut, leaving everything dusty and in near total ruin. However, he concluded that worrying about a distant future wasn't as important as surviving the present moment. Meanwhile, the two boys slept like babies due to their extreme exhaustion. Kim Man-cheol felt a sense of camaraderie toward the two tired teenagers, even though they had only been together for a short time. Kang Bak-hyun had his head completely down, sleeping soundly. Outside the building, the day was already beginning to dawn, and everyone was still inside, resting well after such a tiring and adventure-filled day. Even Kim Man-cheol had started snoring, having fallen into a deep sleep. Gradually, he began to wake up and open his eyes. Finally, when he managed to open them, he saw something quite strange. It was Kim Aram asking if he was awake. Still confused and sleepy, he asked when the girl had woken up and where Mr. Jo Dae-hoon had gone. The girl quickly replied that he had gone on patrol to check for any dangers on the path to the district office. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun also woke up looking very tired and drowsy. He was soon informed that everyone was already awake, including Kim Man-cheol. He then proposed that they get moving, as staying there was practically a waste of time. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun immediately activated his minimap. He informed them that fortunately, heading toward Byunghyun High School, they wouldn't encounter many dangerous obstacles along the way. Kim Man-cheol was thrilled by this information, suggesting they head out immediately. But suddenly, someone spoke up, saying it wasn't a good idea. That person was Mayor Kim Hwan-suk, who had also just woken up from his deep sleep. He stated that in a catastrophic situation like that, someone had to step up to ensure order and safety, and as mayor, he had inherited that responsibility. Even with this explanation, Kim Man-cheol admitted he didn't understand what the man was trying to say. Kim Hwan-suk then explained that it was important for everyone to return home, but there was no benefit in returning to a place where even basic social security wasn't provided. He also mentioned that the district office needed him as soon as possible and urged everyone to come with him. Suddenly, a sort of hologram appeared. It was Jo Do-hoon informing them he had secured a safe path to the district office, which only strengthened the mayor's conviction about his plan. Not wanting to waste time, he ordered everyone to start walking toward the district office. But suddenly, something made his eyes widen in total surprise. Out of nowhere, he began levitating magically. It was the powerful little girl, Kim Aram, lifting him into the air. She was furious because Kim Hwan-suk was trying to force them to go with him to the city's district office. He looked extremely scared and tense about what was happening. Meanwhile, the powerful little girl, Kim Aram, glared at him with fire in her eyes, ending this thrilling and exciting chapter of the story. Mayor Kim Hwan-suk began this chapter in a state of panic, pleading with the girl to put him down so they could resolve things more calmly. Suddenly, his friend Jo Dae-hoon began moving to defend him. Noticing this, the powerful little girl, Kim Aram, became very alert. Out of nowhere, Jo Dae-hoon displayed a desperate and tense expression. He was soon thrown against the ceiling far away due to the girl's power. Realizing he was about to hit the ceiling, Jo Dae-hoon panicked completely. He used his teleportation ability to avoid serious injury. His hologram reappeared on the floor of that place. Upon fully materializing, he wore an expression of great tension and shock. Meanwhile, Kim Aram continued to hold Mayor Kim Hwan-suk in the air. He was amazed by the girl's ability and wanted her by his side no matter what. He asked her to calm down for a few seconds, pointing out that a large number of people lived in Seocho-gu and perhaps some of her family members were there. After saying all this, Kim Hwan-suk delivered a persuasive speech, seeking an escort to the district office by appealing to the citizens who were in chaos at that moment. Hearing about the need to save her family, the girl became deeply thoughtful, wearing a sorrowful expression. Kang Bak-hyun then interrupts the conversation, saying that the mayor should at least have a disaster prevention plan since he didn't even have a substitute ready. Hearing these words, Kim Hwan-suk becomes quite angry as the brat wanted to interfere again. Kang Bak-hyun immediately asked Jo Dae-hoon if he knew about that matter, demanding a clear and plausible answer. Jo stared at him for a brief moment, saying nothing at all, and then he agreed with all of the boy's words. Suddenly, his mouth was sealed shut, preventing him from saying anything further. No words could escape his mouth due to this sudden occurrence. The culprit was Mayor Kim Hwan-suk, who used his power to silence Jo Dae-hoon. Kang Bak-hyun quickly realized that the man had indeed used his trick and raised the alarm about it. But as he spoke, he was silenced again by the power of that cunning and malicious mayor. Kim Man-cheol immediately noticed that Kim Hwan-suk had prevented his friend from speaking once more. Meanwhile, the mayor tried to persuade the girl, promising to save her family and guaranteeing that promise if she escorted him to the district office. Seeing all this, Kim Man-cheol cursed at him for crossing the line. Noticing the man's revolt, Jo Dae-hoon quickly began to use his powers. He suddenly appeared next to a giant shoe. Then he teleported the shoe, making it appear right above Kim Man-cheol. Realizing this, the man cursed at those little bastards. Without hesitation, he used his power to escape the dire situation. He ran out of the impact area of the giant sneaker. As he did so, he tumbled to the ground, fortunately staying alive after such a cowardly attack. Afterward, Jo Dae-hoon used his power to teleport next to Mayor Kim Hwan-suk. Seeing all this, Kim Aram expressed a look of great surprise and shock. Meanwhile, Jo Dae-hoon and Mayor Kim Hwan-suk disappeared from sight, teleporting. They reappeared far away, atop a very strange shelf. After escaping the girl's powers, the greedy mayor ordered his subordinate to bring the girl, even if unconscious. Without hesitation, Jo Dae-hoon obeyed his master's decision. After that, he took a deep breath and swallowed his saliva before putting the plan into action. He carefully observed Kim Aram and Kang Bak-hyun. He planned to teleport in front of her and strike her abdomen hard and cowardly. After forming the plan, he teleported toward his target without a second thought. But suddenly, something unexpected happened, sending him flying far away with a stunned expression. He crashed harshly to the ground, creating a strong impact. He wondered what the heck that strange thing was. At that moment, Kang Baek-hyun's protective barrier was revealed. Even after seeing it, Jo Dae-hoon tried to push through. But again, he was launched far from the area. Once again, he hit the ground hard, feeling great pain in his body. He realized he couldn't penetrate it with his impressive teleportation power. Meanwhile, Kang Baek-hyun firmly held his protective barrier without hesitation. He then understood why Mina had assigned him such a useful skill. Now we flash back to when he asked his sister why the prince in the novel didn't have an offensive ability. She explained that he would protect his citizens and, for that purpose, had a defense-based power called a protective barrier. Mina also said that the ability would be very useful for her brother, allowing him to save his allies in many possible ways. Excited and curious, Kang Baek-hyun asked what kind of power the princess would have. Mina preferred not to reveal it, saying it would ruin the novel's fun, leaving her brother confused since he was voluntarily analyzing the story. The girl explained she wouldn't tell because she'd be reprimanded afterward. Hearing this, Kang Baek-hyun asked who would reprimand her. Suddenly, a woman arrived saying Mina's results were out, making the boy rush to her and abruptly ending the conversation. Back to the present, Kang Baek-hyun realized everything was as his sister had said because within the protective barrier, all abilities were completely sealed. After understanding this, he began to use his powers without hesitation. He molded his protective barrier toward the malicious Jo Dae-hoon. Jo tried frantically to teleport to another location, but he failed miserably, becoming extremely scared and tense. He was now completely trapped within Kang Baek-hyun's moldable protective barrier. With this, he realized that he could not activate his ability at all. Kang Baek-hyun then declared the fight over as Jo Dae-hoon had been captured by him. He remained entirely enveloped by the moldable protective barrier, unable to use his teleportation powers. Suddenly, Kim Aram, quite surprised, noticed something impressive. Not only was Jo Dae-hoon's ability sealed, her powerful telekinesis wouldn't activate either. The malicious man stared coldly and bloodthirstily at Kang Baek-hyun. The latter also observed him silently while maintaining the protective barrier, ending this tense and chaotic chapter of the story. We begin the next chapter with Kim Man-cheol, deeply impressed, watching Kang Baek-hyun use his powerful ability. He remarked that the brat always found a way to surprise him. Meanwhile, Jo Dae-hoon struggled inside the protective barrier prison. Kang Baek-hyun told him that going to the district office wouldn't improve anything. On the contrary, the dogmatic figure of Mayor Kim Hwan-suk would only bring more confusion and despair to his followers. Hearing this, Jo Dae-hoon fell silent, his face seemingly filled with sadness and regret. Kang Baek-hyun continued scolding him as he had witnessed firsthand how many lives were sacrificed due to the mayor's irresponsible decisions. Jo Dae-hoon reflected for a moment, acknowledging that the boy was right and realizing that Kim Hwan-suk was no longer the man he had once known. Kim Man-cheol interrupted, asking for the name and address of Jo Dae-hoon's wife and daughter, whom he had mentioned earlier. Jo Dae-hoon appeared confused and suspicious about the question, but Kim Man-cheol offered no explanation, simply repeating his request. After a moment, Kang Baek-hyun activated his mini-map ability. He searched for the apartment in Alapart 103, where Choi Soo-yeon and Johanna, Jo Dae-hoon's wife and daughter, lived. Discovering that both were alive, he quickly informed everyone present. Hearing this, Jo Dae-hoon was completely stunned and in disbelief. Kang Baek-hyun also mentioned that even the man's dog was alive in the room next door. Hearing all this, Jo Dae-hoon became extremely emotional, crying like a baby. He was deeply relieved, thanking God because he had been very worried about his most precious loved ones. Still crying profusely like a child, Jo Dae-hoon apologized and thanked Kang Baek-hyun. The boy reassured him, advising him to quickly reunite with his family, as his teleportation ability would probably get him there in a second. Jo Dae-hoon agreed, realizing he could return quickly. Looking up, he saw the malicious mayor Kim Hwan-suk. Without hesitation, he apologized to him, who then cursed him, calling him a little bastard. Hearing these insults, Jo Dae-hoon stayed silent, but then he decided to act using his magical teleportation power. Seeing his friend disappear suddenly, Mayor Kim Hwan-suk panicked. Meanwhile, Kim Aram and Kang Baek-hyun observed everything in complete silence. The little girl broke the silence, commenting that it was probably time for the evil mayor to face punishment. Upon hearing this, the man's expression became one of pure fear and desperation. Moments later, he was already kneeling in a completely humiliating position before everyone. Crying desperately, he apologized, admitting his wrongdoings. He begged profusely, utterly broken, for the forgiveness of those around him. Kim Aram asked if he was truly reflecting and remorseful for his actions. Without hesitation, Mayor Kim Hwan-suk affirmed that he deeply regretted his terrible and cruel deeds. After hearing this, the powerful little girl began using her impressive ability. She lifted the arrogant mayor into the air, leaving him utterly terrified. Then she and Kang Baek-hyun stared at him silently. Finally, she steadied him mid-air in a normal position. He could even breathe a bit easier after that. Kim Aram then told the mayor to never manipulate people again, her tone full of warning. He understood her message and promised it would never happen again, as the powerful girl desired. After all that, she gently placed him back on the ground, forgiving him and saying he could count on her help from now on. Kang Bak-hyun, hearing this, felt both surprised and confused, as did Kim Man-chil. But Kim Aram simply responded that he wouldn't need to deal with trivial matters like that again. He was not satisfied with that answer, finding the little girl quite different from usual for some reason. Nevertheless, that strange and complicated conversation came to an end. After all that, the dark, cold, and gloomy night had fallen over the area. Creatures of the night, like a beautiful black cat, appeared in the vicinity. Meanwhile, the three friends walked boldly through the darkness. Kang Bak-hyun soon mentioned that they were about 1.2 kilometers away from their destination, making Kim Aram curious about whether the mini-map could show even the exact distance. The boy denied it, explaining that he simply knew the area well, so he was familiar with all the distances and measurements. As he continued walking, he thought about how that walk used to take just 20 minutes, but now it likely stretched to a full 2 days. The night there was pitch dark and deeply ominous. Cars burned amidst the cold and darkness of the chaotic city. The exact time was 4:32 a.m. Kim Aram suddenly asked Kang Bak-hyun if the apartment would be okay. She hoped everyone there was safe, while the boy felt relieved that she had returned to her usual self, wondering about the strange feeling from earlier. He figured that the little girl had gotten carried away with her newfound, magnificent power. After contemplating all this, he decided they should take a short break before continuing toward their final destination. The three of them were exhausted from walking so much. Kim Man-chil quickly agreed, noting that taking breaks like this was essential, otherwise their bodies would give out. Kang Bak-hyun thanked God they were already in Seoul, as there were plenty of things to eat and many convenience stores nearby. Kim Man-chil agreed, pointing out that the area had many positive aspects. Suddenly, Kim Aram revealed she was quite puzzled by something intriguing. This left everyone confused about what she meant. She soon explained that the situation wouldn't resolve easily. Kim Man-chil disagreed, thinking she was being overly pessimistic. But that wasn't it. She revealed she had read a novel and already knew how the world would end. Hearing this, the two boys grew tense and stunned. According to what Kim Aram had read in the novel, something horrible was likely to happen soon. Pillars of light would fall from the sky, killing everyone on Earth. Kim Man-chil grew curious about what those things were. Kang Bak-hyun looked utterly shocked and fearful, as he seemed to have some idea of what they might be, concluding the chapter tensely. By pillars of light, the girl meant a phenomenon that only appeared when a specific condition was met after people shrank. Now we flash back to a moment when Mina explained to her brother that the prince would face a dilemma that would make it harder to meet the princess. Kang Bak-hyun responded that it sounded too violent and even random, but Mina insisted she had to write it, as it was crucial information given to her by that mysterious person. Furthermore, it wasn't just about violence. There was a concrete and plausible reason for it. Returning to the present, Kang Bak-hyun explained that depending on how one thought about it, the situation could become either good or bad. Kim Aram then asked if he knew something about it, while Kim Man-chil was utterly lost in their conversation. The little girl explained they were discussing the novel she had read in Japan, which mentioned the Pillars of Light. Kang Bak-hyun said that if they could reach a certain place, they might have a chance to fully recover their strength. This confused Kim Aram, as such a thing was never mentioned in the novel. Feeling shy, the boy said it was just his intuition, not revealing the full truth. Kang Bak-hyun wondered how the novel ended since he had only managed to read the beginning of Mina's work. As he was finally asking Kim Aram about the book's ending, a strange noise suddenly emerged. It was the informational panel announcing that radioactive contamination had begun spreading in area JB 1513. This was a terrible revelation, according to Kang Bak-hyun, and his expression turned fearful and tense. He quickly opened his mini-map. They were at the location of a large market. Kang Bak-hyun, upon seeing the information, said that the radioactive contamination had likely killed everyone, and Kim Man-chil quickly realized it was true. He became very concerned about the food, fearing it might be poisoned by the pollution, and suggested being more cautious about what they ate from now on. After expressing his concern, he proposed that they head to an uncontaminated area to gather food, which Kang Bak-hyun quickly agreed to. Now we are shown a dark and ominous view of the city, where thick fog blanketed the landscape. The three friends walked boldly through it, seemingly unafraid of anything. Kim Man-chil soon commented on not seeing anyone around, and Kang Bak-hyun added that his mini-map also showed no one. But suddenly, something startled him, making his eyes widen with intense focus. He immediately shouted that something was approaching them at an extremely fast and impressive speed. Kim Man-chil was alarmed, wondering what it could be. There were approximately 6 things in total, according to Kang Bak-hyun. Suddenly, the creatures appeared, looking fearsome and intimidating, making loud noises to frighten the trio. They were several giant dogs of various breeds, barking ferociously. Kim Man-chil, realizing the imminent danger, ordered the 2 teenagers to run and hide in a place where the dogs couldn't reach them. All 3 of them bolted as fast as they could without hesitation. The dogs chased after them, barking loudly and hungrily, eager for an easy and juicy meal like that. One white dog barked incessantly, drooling as if salivating for a feast. But despite its effort and speed, the easy prey managed to slip into a very secure spot. The dog immediately stopped running, planting its 4 furry paws firmly on the ground. It stared curiously at the gap, seemingly unsure of what was happening or where the people had gone. Meanwhile, the trio was inside the gap, extremely exhausted and out of breath after the frantic chase. Kim Aram was visibly worried about what to do next, while the dog sniffed the crevice incessantly. Kang Bak-hyun suggested escaping through a window, but that would take too much time and energy, while Kim Man-cheol suggested simply waiting for the dogs to disperse. Hearing these alternatives, Kim Aram remained silent with a determined and thoughtful expression. She soon said that they wouldn't be able to meet up with the others if they kept hiding like that and started moving toward the exit. Seeing this, Kang Bak-hyun became desperate, and Kim Man-cheol warned her that even though she was strong, she'd get into trouble due to the dangerous area they were in. She replied that she didn't plan on acting recklessly, dismissing their concerns entirely. Outside, all the dogs were gathered somewhat quiet and curious. A small orange ball on the ground caught Kim Aram's attention. Without hesitation, she began using her telekinetic powers to move the ball. The ball immediately began to float lightly as if weightless. It rose impressively high. Then it was hurled far away, catching the attention of all the dogs in the area. They ran toward the ball, barking excitedly and distracted by it. Kim Aram quickly announced that her plan had worked, but Kang Bak-hyun scolded her, proposing that they wait a little longer to ensure the dogs were far enough away. However, the girl retorted, saying she was desperate because her family was in danger and saw those delays as pointless and insignificant. She then decided to go ahead first, leaving Kang Bak-hyun completely distressed. Thus, all three left the secure gap, heading into a very exposed and dangerous area. From Kim Aram's perspective, there was no immediate danger or obstacles in sight. She quickly noted that the dogs weren't there and suggested they move swiftly while they still could. So the three of them continued their long journey toward their previously planned destination. But suddenly, a giant white creature caught their attention. It was a fluffy, white, and very cute dog. Yet this sight terrified the inseparable trio of friends. Then, out of nowhere, several large, frightening dogs appeared, chasing after them and barking loudly, just like before. Kang Bak-hyun immediately ordered everyone to run without hesitation. And once again, the three of them started running with several angry and hungry dogs in pursuit. Kim Aram, without hesitation, began using her incredible telekinetic powers. One of the dogs suddenly fell backward due to a strong force applied to its snout. Seeing this happen to their companion, the other dogs became even more enraged, running faster. Without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun began using his moldable protective barrier to save his dear friend. She was about to be bitten by one of the dogs when she was enveloped in the protective sphere. The dog bit hard into the protective circle Kang Bak-hyun had created to shield his cherished friend. With that powerful bite, the protective glass shattered into tiny pieces, causing Kim Aram to fall from a great height, screaming loudly. She landed hard on the ground, taking a harsh and painful blow. But her ordeal was far from over. The giant dog was still after her, ready to bite her like a delicious and easy meal. It finally managed to grab her arm in its jaws, lifting her into the air. She watched in utter horror and despair, her face filled with tension. From a distance, Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol anxiously observed the scene, deeply worried and tense, thus concluding another chaotic and problematic chapter of the story. We begin the next chapter with a chilling scene involving the girl's arm and the massive jaws of the enraged dog. She screamed desperately in pain and agony, her eyes wide with terror. Afterward, she fell to the ground again, hitting it with a brutal and painful impact. She lay unconscious, groaning from the fall and the pain of losing her left arm. Yet the dog had not given up on devouring her entirely. Just as it was about to fulfill its desire, a protective barrier appeared, stopping it in its tracks. Without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun ordered Kim Man-cheol to grab Kim Aram and retreat immediately while he held off the pack of fierce dogs. One of the monstrous beasts bit fiercely into the protective barrier with its sharp, strong teeth. Realizing he couldn't hold on for long, Kang Bak-hyun urged Kim Man-cheol to hurry. Kim Man-cheol ran as fast as he could, carrying Kim Aram in his arms while the boy held back the large dogs alone with his protective barrier. Finally, Kim Man-cheol managed to reach a safe place with the girl. However, Kang Bak-hyun remained in danger outside. He planned to reduce the barrier's size and strengthen its resistance. He enveloped himself in the protective shield. A dog bit into the protective barrier with its enormous fangs, launching Kang Bak-hyun far away at high speed. He crashed against the entrance to the safe crevice. Disabling his power, he quickly ran inside the secure corner. Minutes later, the dogs were still there, watching the group trying to save the girl. Kim Man-cheol was treating the girl's arm, trying to stop the heavy bleeding. He had completed the first aid, but noted a serious concern. Without proper medical treatment soon, she would undoubtedly enter a critical condition. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun's face reflected deep sadness and worry for his dear friend. Suddenly, a loud noise startled the boy, making him widen his eyes attentively. He quickly asked Kim Man-cheol if he had heard the sound, but Kim Man-cheol replied negatively, confused. Without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun activated his mini-map power. He discovered they weren't the only ones in the vicinity. Kim Man-cheol grew concerned, asking if the entity could be another mini-human. According to the mini-map, the entity was to their right, but suddenly, his marker vanished. Seeing this, Kang Bak-hyun was shocked as the entity appeared and disappeared strangely and quickly. When the sound repeated, he focused his attention to the left. Kim Man-cheol asked if something was indeed in that direction. Kang Bak-hyun prepared himself for a potential threat emerging suddenly. He stared intently at the dark and eerie corner of the area. Strange and frightening sounds echoed again, startling Kang Bak-hyun and filling him with fear. The mysterious entity finally revealed itself in that dark and ominous corner. It was just an elderly man wearing a white outfit and a funny hat. Kang Bak-hyun, upon seeing Mr. Choi Hyun-woo, felt both surprised and relieved. Likewise, the elderly man was utterly astonished. After all, standing right in front of him in miniature form was the son of President Kang Jin-woo. Choi Hyun-woo was impressed at how much the boy had grown, now resembling the leader of the company, while Kang Bak-hyun showed great concern for the old man. Kim Man-cheol, overhearing the conversation between the two about the company's safety and Kang Bak-hyun's father, felt relieved that they already knew each other. Shifting the topic, the boy quickly asked Mr. Choi Hyun-woo if he had any medical supplies nearby. His dear friend was gravely injured and in critical condition at that very moment. The old man replied that he did have some medicine, but there was a catch. They were stored on top of a giant tall cabinet. Despite this, Kang Bak-hyun thanked the elderly man. Without hesitation, after a few moments, he decided to use his incredible moldable protective barrier power to reach the top of the cabinet with Kim Man-cheol. Mr. Choi Hyun-woo was amazed by this, wondering what that ability was. With great success, within seconds, Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol reached the medicine kit. The boy wasted no time and used his moldable protective barrier to open the supply case. In mere seconds, the power had reached the box. Quickly and with ease, he managed to open it. The lid flew far away due to the force applied by Kang Bak-hyun and his incredible power. He immediately informed Mr. Choi Hyun-woo that he would toss the medicine to the ground, asking the elderly man to move to a safe place. Without hesitation, the old man agreed to the boy's request. A few seconds later, some medications and supplies were scattered on the floor. Given the circumstances, the two boys quickly sprang into action to treat their injured friend. Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol tried to lift the giant, heavy saline bottle. With its cap open, the liquid inside poured out directly onto Kim Aram's severed arm. As the cold liquid hit her, she woke up, her eyes wide open. She began screaming in agony and pain. Her friend Kang Bak-hyun tried to comfort her, urging her to endure for just a little longer as the process would be over soon. But the girl couldn't stop screaming and crying in pain. Seeing this, Mr. Choi Hyun-woo showed a deeply concerned and sorrowful expression. Her screams were loud and frightening. They could be heard even outside the large building. The morning seemed to be breaking in that place. But even with some light, the streetlights remained on. The pack of 6 ugly and aggressive dogs continued lurking nearby. Inside the small safe spot were the group of young people and the newly arrived elderly man. Finally, the disinfection of Kim Aram's arm was successfully completed. Seeing her condition, the old man questioned why such a strong girl was in that state despite her impressive ability. Kang Bak-hyun explained that she had been bitten by a dog, and Choi Hyun-woo asked another question about the pack of animals outside. The boy was surprised, realizing the old man seemed to know those wild, terrifying beasts. This information was confirmed by the elderly man, who said the animals always roamed together, being the first thought that came to his mind. Afterward, Kang Bak-hyun asked what ability the old man possessed, leaving him puzzled. The boy explained that everyone who had shrunk gained a unique power, likely displayed on the information panel after they shrank. The old man grew even more confused, prompting the boy to explain that if he repeated the panel's information, a hologram would show a tutorial for using the ability. The power was soon revealed as gigantification, leaving everyone slightly stunned. As expected, a hologram quickly appeared beside the old man. The device pressed something near his stomach. He grew to the size of a normal human. When the button was pressed again, something curious happened. The hologram shrank back to its original small size. Choi Hyun-woo quickly realized that this was his ability. Without hesitation, he pressed the button near his stomach again. He became a human of normal and real size. Kang Bak-hyun, upon seeing this, was impressed. The old man said that it was probably his gigantification ability, and that his strength had grown just as much as his height. Kang Bak-hyun replied, saying that he possessed a great and powerful ability. Kim Man-cheol then changed the subject, deeply concerned about what to do with Kim Aram, as she urgently needed proper treatment. Kang Bak-hyun revealed that he had 2 possible plans. This made Kim Man-cheol curious about what they were. He explained that the first option was to find Park Yoon-soo. Because of his ability, he could make a body part regrow. Kim Man-cheol then asked about the second option. He was told it would be to find a pillar of light. This left him stunned, as it was likely the phenomenon Kim Aram had mentioned. This was confirmed when Kang Bak-hyun said that entering one could heal any type of injury. However, it was uncertain when and where one might appear, making the first option more realistic. Kim Man-cheol became confused, thinking Kang Bak-hyun was likely giving up on his sister. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun stood silently, deep in thought. Kim Man-cheol then said he had a different plan. He wanted to search for Kang Bak-hyun's sister, while simultaneously looking for someone with a healing ability. The boy was worried, as this would rely on a bit of luck. But that applied to his own plan as well, according to the man, because Park Yoo-soo was in the opposite direction, and they didn't know when a pillar of light would appear. While the two discussed their plans and the urgency of treating Kim Aram, the old man became entirely amazed by something. He quickly announced that he could see a possible pillar of light. Without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun turned his attention to it. The three stood there staring at it, very attentive and astonished. It was a beautiful magical blue light descending from the dark sky. Despite its beauty, it emitted an extremely eerie noise. And there wasn't just one, but several pillars of light. They descended from the sky toward the ground like lightning. Suddenly, the information panel appeared, reporting that due to the drastic population reduction, the sanctuaries had been activated for a limited time. Kang Bak-hyun was shocked as the panel stated that half the population had died within just 17 hours and 35 minutes. He immediately recalled Mina saying this phenomenon only appeared when a certain condition was met after people shrank. Thus, everything seemed to be unfolding exactly as in the girl's novel. Those pillars of light were numerous and utterly stunning. They continued making a loud noise in the area. Without delay, Kang Bak-hyun used his minimap ability. He discovered that, fortunately, there was a pillar of light 1 kilometer away and near the apartment complex. Kim Man-cheol quickly asked what the boy wanted to do now, and Kang Bak-hyun said he planned to go to his sister. He added that Kim Man-cheol should take Kim Aram to the pillar of light alone. Fortunately, there was one at the school field as well. Kang Bak-hyun further explained that he intended to bring his sister and Kim Aram's family there. Kim Man-cheol became very tense as going alone was extremely dangerous, and he proposed going as a team. But Kang Bak-hyun countered, saying all he needed to do was take care of Kim Aram, and everything would be fine. Kim Man-cheol, however, didn't give up, arguing that it would be very difficult for the boy to return home alone, but he was contradicted again. Angry, he interrupted Kang Bak-hyun. His past memories suddenly resurfaced. It was the vision he had seen using the old woman's ability. In it, Kang Bak-hyun was trampled by someone gigantic. Given these circumstances, Kim Man-cheol declared that he had seen Kang Bak-hyun die. This left the boy very shocked, tense, and confused. The man then explained that in the vision provided by Choi Bok-cha, he had indeed seen the boy die, and that he was following him to prevent that from happening. Upon hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun was utterly stunned, marking the end of this chapter. Kim Man-cheol explained that the boy was crushed under a giant foot, and that, unfortunately, he would die shortly after as well. Kang Bak-hyun was surprised, wondering if it was a human foot, but the man explained he wasn't sure, as it was something enormous. The boy immediately questioned whether Kim Man-cheol would really die as well, and even so had decided to follow him knowing all of this. Kim Man-cheol then explained that the vision was just a possibility, and that, as he had proven before, the future could be changed. Thus, there was definitely a possibility for everyone to survive. Upon hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun displayed a very sad and tense expression. He then explained that Kim Aram was in no condition to move on her own, and there was no certainty that the sanctuary would be completely safe. Suddenly, the elderly man Choi Hyung-woo said he would take care of the girl, easing the boy's unnecessary worries. Since his wife had passed away long ago and his children had gone their separate ways, it was better for him to go to the sanctuary at that moment, taking Miss Kim Aram with him. Kang Bak-hyun tried to argue even against these words from the elder, but the old man said that if it weren't for the boy, he would still be hiding, and thanks to him, he had discovered his powerful ability, finding confidence and a purpose to live. With that, the elder ordered the boy to go after Mina, regardless of his personal opinions. Kim Man-cheol quickly chimed in, telling the boy to stop worrying so much, as it was impossible to have a foolproof plan from the start, and this was the best one for now. Upon hearing these wise words, Kang Bak-hyun simply agreed. After that, everyone began preparing to leave the place. The old man had even used his power to become giant. He quickly bid farewell to the boys who were there. Kang Bak-hyun simply asked him to be careful on his way, and so did Kim Aram. Choi Hyung-woo agreed and told the boy not to worry. After that, he wasted no time walking toward the powerful blue entity. He quickly entered the phenomenon, almost vanishing completely. Within a few seconds, only his shadow was visible. With that, Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol decided to follow their planned paths as well. Several beams of light were visible in the area where the boys were walking. Kang Bak-hyun quickly commented that they didn't have much time and needed to hurry. Ahead, there was a crowd heading toward the pillar. Those people were very nervous, fighting over the limited space they shared. Kang Bak-hyun was slightly startled by some screams he heard nearby. Two malicious men had just killed some people in the area. One of them had a knife-shaped right arm as his unique ability. He was stabbing several people indiscriminately, grievously and deeply wounding their fragile, small bodies. The two thought it was just a highly realistic dream, finding it very amusing. The man in red had a gun in his hand as his ability. He was shooting frantically at the people present. The two wanted the mini-humans to approach so they could kill them. They decided their next victim would be Kim Man-cheol. The man cursed them, very angry at the nickname he had been given. But suddenly, everyone was very startled by a loud noise. Once again, flying creatures appeared in the sky. The two fools were thrilled with their arrival. But out of nowhere, one of the creatures landed and swallowed the man in red clothing. The people in the area, upon seeing this, began screaming in desperation. Unfortunately, more flying creatures had arrived. Those sparrows were feasting on the abundant, easy food available. Everyone was running, screaming in utter panic. Kang Bak-hyun quickly decided to evacuate to the cave with Kim Man-chil. Kim Man-chil was confused about the location, but the boy explained that he had marked it on his mini-map. They were desperate, running frantically from a sparrow close behind, very hungry. The crowd of people continued running in terror, unsure of what to do. Even children were present. One of them, unfortunately, lost hold of her father's hand. She fell hard and dangerously onto the ground. Her father became utterly frantic over the chaotic situation. She called out for her father as a hungry bird approached. The man looked utterly tense with a deeply desperate and sorrowful expression. At that moment, it seemed there was nothing more to be done, as the bird was already opening its mouth to devour the child. But just as it was about to do so, it was stopped by a protective barrier out of nowhere. It was Kang Bak-hyun using his incredible ability to protect the fragile girl. He instructed the father to grab his child and run quickly away. Meanwhile, the boy tried to drive the bird far away with his magnificent power. The father ran off with his two children as fast as he could, terrified. Kim Man-chil urged Kang Bak-hyun to hurry, and he complied immediately. He then began running as well, still using his magical power. The bird, due to its great strength, managed to break the protective barrier that had restrained it. Upon seeing this, Kang Bak-hyun became completely tense and frightened. Suddenly, the information panel appeared, stating that the amplification effects would soon end, returning the barrier to level 1. This made him even more scared, tense, and confused. All of a sudden, the bird shattered the barrier, breaking through it. Kang Bak-hyun was left entirely exposed, trying his best to protect himself, ending this tense and chaotic chapter of the story. We begin this chapter with the bold creature attempting to snatch Kang Bak-hyun. The boy, in turn, tried to protect himself with his impressive skill of molding the protective barrier, using it around his body. Even so, the bird didn't give up attacking and fell inside, striking the shield. The protective barrier then shattered into several small fragments, causing the boy to fall harshly and heavily onto the ground. Seeing this, Kim Man-chil became very worried, calling out his dear friend's name in distress. He found himself in a scenario of near certain death, where everything seemed utterly lost. However, our impressive protagonist didn't give up and quickly began fighting for his life, once again using his protective barrier without hesitation. Within seconds, the bird managed to break through it without much effort. But even so, it provided enough time for Kang Bak-hyun to dash toward the safe haven. The bird, after breaking the protective barrier, grew even angrier and more bloodthirsty, chasing after the boy. It flapped its wings frantically, aiming to catch the boy and devour him mercilessly. But all its efforts were in vain as the powerful boy managed to reach his desired and planned destination. The bird ended up stuck in the narrow entrance of the dark and gloomy cave. The father and the little girls inside expressed great fear and dread upon seeing the enormous creature. The bird immediately began flapping its wings, struggling to free itself and escape the place. After much effort, it finally succeeded. Without a second thought, it flew away from there after nearly making a meal out of them. The 5 people in the cave watched this intently. The children's father even sighed in relief after all that had happened. Minji suddenly began crying due to the shock and the danger she had faced. The father tried to comfort both girls but had no success. The little ones thought it was all just a bad dream and were extremely scared, wanting to go home. Suddenly, something caught Kim Man-chil's attention, making him widen his eyes. It was the information panel, which stated that the amplification effects had ended and his physical enhancement had returned to level 1. Disappointed, Kim Man-chil informed his friend, who replied that his own skill's amplification had ended a few minutes ago as well. Meanwhile, Minyan and Minji's father instructed them to pray to God for protection from all dangers and evil. The little girl in the yellow shirt quickly clasped her small hands together to pray. The 3 knelt on the cave floor, pleading with God to allow them to return home safely and to protect all people. After all these tense and harrowing moments, dawn finally broke. The story takes us back inside the small cave where the group was sheltering. The 2 girls slept like angels inside, seemingly without a care. Suddenly, a large hand was seen nearby. A wooden beam was drawn toward the hand. It was the man in green demonstrating his ability, leaving Kim Man-chil very impressed. The children's father confirmed this information, expressing deep gratitude to the boys for saving his and his daughter's lives. Kim Man-chil then voiced his concern for the small, vulnerable, and fragile children. The father admitted he had anticipated something like this might happen, but was still struggling to come to terms with it. Kang Bak-hyun felt confused and curious about the man in green's words. The man explained that as long as the Lord decreed it, the end had always been predestined to arrive. Hearing this, the boy wore a stunned and incredulous expression, utterly speechless. He realized that the man was speaking of a higher and supreme God. Kang Bak-hyun began recalling many painful moments, like his little sister crying bitterly. He also remembered the kind old man who had died after being struck by the door, and the dog that had torn off Kim Aram's arm, wondering if this was truly God's will. That would be practically impossible to believe. But suddenly, the man said everything was completely fine now, catching the boy's attention. Kang Bak-hyun quickly asked what he meant by that statement. Suddenly, the information panel appeared, indicating that Oh Chang-hoon's favorability had risen to 68. Kang Bak-hyun was confused about why it had increased. Oh Chang-hoon explained that he had been worried for a while about the situation, but that a director had told him he and his daughters had been saved. Out of nowhere, the man asked if the boy was the Messiah. This left Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol very confused and baffled. The man also said that to serve as the guide, he had traveled from the Hope Society, leaving the boy even more confused. Oh Chang-hoon wanted Kang Bak-hyun to go to this so-called Hope Society, claiming that everyone was waiting for him. Kim Man-cheol immediately commented that the guy didn't seem quite right in the head. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun was pondering this Hope Society. He remembered a tall, beautiful building. It had a sign with inscriptions about this Hope Society. So Kang Bak-hyun quickly asked if this organization was the same one near the Jaehyun apartments. Without hesitation, Oh Chang-hoon confirmed the boy's statement. Kang Bak-hyun was quite amazed, asking how that man had arrived in just 17 hours. Kim Man-cheol was also curious since, if the place was really near the Jaehyun apartments, it should have taken at least 2 days to get there. The man stared at them silently, saying nothing. Then they all looked at the two defenseless and fragile children who were still asleep. The cute little girls continued to sleep like angels without a care in the world. Meanwhile, the father mentioned that the Lord had gifted his two daughters with unique, very useful, and incredible abilities. According to Oh Chang-hoon, their abilities allowed them to open dimensional portals, enabling travel across great distances in just seconds. Upon hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun could hardly believe that these children possessed such a useful, incredible, and unique power. Their father seemed somewhat suspicious, but at that moment, they would definitely need the girls' help. After thinking it over, Kang Bak-hyun quickly said he would rely on the man for the time being. Hearing this, the man became very excited, thanking his messiah. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol listened quietly, and at the end of the chapter, a timer showed 37 hours remaining until the end of page 1. The heat and sunlight were already making their presence known in the devastated city. The sparrows in the area were devouring the many humans scattered there. At that moment, Oh Chang-hoon was waking his little daughters. He also explained to the two friends that the older girl was named Mayeon and the younger Minji. He told his daughters that he had finally found the Messiah, making their return home possible. Mayeon quickly questioned her father, asking if that big brother was really the divine figure. Oh Chang-hoon confirmed this, while Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol observed and listened with stunned and very confused expressions. He then asked if Minji and Mayeon could use their abilities for the Messiah. Minji quickly responded affirmatively, explaining that they could only do so in a place with strong sunlight. The father was taken aback and confused by this. He immediately asked the boys what they should do, as the girls could only use their powers outside the cave, where it was dangerous. This would likely attract the sparrows to the entrance of their hideout. The sparrows were still outside, feasting on the succulent and delicious mini-human corpses. Without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun opened his powerful and incredible mini-map. After analyzing it, he decided they should head to the cave's second exit, which appeared safe and relatively free of sparrows at that moment. Upon hearing this, Oh Chang-hoon was impressed that the Messiah could see the exit even in total darkness. Although it was an illusion, Kim Man-cheol confirmed the information, making Kang Bak-hyun nervous and confused. After that confirmation, Oh Chang-hoon became very excited, saying he would lead the way to the quick exit they needed to take. After a few minutes, all 5 friends were walking toward the previously planned destination. Oh Chang-hoon quickly commented that he had no doubts about Kang Bak-hyun's sanctity, given his insightful way of guiding them toward the unknown. He, upon hearing all this, feels a bit confused and embarrassed, merely confirming such a strange comment. Next, he asked the man about a comment he made earlier about being the boy's guide, implying that he already knew their destination. The man asked the boy to remain calm as he retrieves something from his nice green coat. Soon, he hands over a piece of paper, saying it was all thanks to that drawing. Kang Bak-hyun quickly grabs the sheet, curious about what was inside. Upon unfolding the paper with the drawing, the boy becomes utterly astonished and perplexed. For someone had truly foreseen that the entire situation would happen. Oh Chang-hoon confirms this information and reveals that the drawing was given to him by director Jang Wiswak. The children then comment that this man is amazing because he could see the future, radiating the teachings of an almighty god. Oh Chang-hoon soon adds that if this man drew something, it would happen exactly as depicted, and everything was just as those two cute kids had said. Kang Bak-hyun immediately asks if this man truly had a foresight-related ability. Oh Chang-hoon confirms, stating that the director had shown all possible futures, making that society the only one to receive a prophetic drawing. Upon hearing all this, Kang Bak-hyun is amazed, thinking the reason seemed insignificant. But the man tells him that the director's prophecies were equivalent to God's very word. Hearing this, the boy is left speechless, wearing a confused and astonished expression. After that, they continue walking and suddenly stop. At that moment, the little girl looks back. Kang Bak-hyun quickly asks her what's wrong. Minji then asks if Kim Man-cheol was his father. Hearing that, the man becomes completely enraged, while the boy looks utterly shocked. Kang Bak-hyun quickly explains that the man was not his father, just someone he knew from life. Kim Man-cheol, despite the situation, tries to downplay his age, claiming to be just an older brother. While this entire conversation unfolds, Oh Chang-hoon becomes utterly stunned and frightened by what he feels. That place carried an entirely unusual, terrible odor. Minhyun confirms this, saying the area smelled of a dead frog. Oh Chang-hoon immediately asks the boys if there's anything dangerous ahead. Kang Bak-hyun, without hesitation, responds negatively, assuring that there's nothing alive or dangerous in the area. So all five continue advancing through that foul-smelling territory. Finally, Oh Chang-hoon announces that he can see the exit from that smelly place. After a few more minutes of walking, all five manage to leave the area. But suddenly, they see part of a massive and enormous animal's body. Oh Chang-hoon is amazed by that snakeskin, realizing the group likely passed through a snake den tunnel. He finds it all incredible, as Kang Bak-hyun had known there wouldn't be any venomous creatures ahead, only dead skin. The boy takes pride in this, claiming it was just his amazing ability. After this conversation, the little girls quickly ask their dad if they can open the portal immediately. He then asks if they know the right place, receiving a confident affirmation from them. Without hesitation, the two join their small hands together, one in front of the other, and suddenly, they begin spinning at quite a fast speed. The most impressive thing is that after this, a bright portal starts forming in the area. Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol observe everything in astonishment and disbelief. Oh Chang-hoon promptly invites them to step through the portal, claiming they'll arrive at the Hope Society upon exiting. Kang Bak-hyun, without a second thought, agrees, eager to reach his sister, Mina, as quickly as possible. Soon, he and Kim Man-cheol start walking toward the glowing magical portal. Kang Bak-hyun is the first to approach the thing, and he steps in fully without hesitation. Within seconds, both he and Kim Man-cheol are completely inside the impressive phenomenon. Then they begin to emerge slowly, both wearing tense and cautious expressions. Kang Bak-hyun is the first to exit, finding himself in front of several kneeling people, praying. Everyone was celebrating his arrival, believing him to be the true Messiah. Suddenly, the entire crowd starts shouting in the name of their divine being. Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol merely observe everything with astonished and confused expressions, ending this revealing and intriguing chapter of the story. The next chapter begins with a front view of the building where Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol are. There was the headquarters of the so-called Hope Society. The place was enormous inside, with several benches and even a platform for the main pastor. Some noises were heard in the area. It was that agitated and joyful crowd, shouting for their beloved Messiah. Some were even crying, asking the boy to guide them in life. After a few seconds, Oh Chang-hoon and his two daughters, Minhyun and Minji, arrived through the impressive magical portal. Kang Bak-hyun, meanwhile, simply observed the crowd glorifying and worshipping him, wearing a blank expression. Out of nowhere, a strange old man appeared in front of him, and Kim Man-cheol stared intently at him. The old man welcomed the Messiah, asking if he had had a pleasant journey so far. Kang Bak-hyun simply replied yes, while Kim Man-cheol still believed the boy was truly the Messiah. The gray-haired man then congratulated Oh Chang-hoon for his hard and challenging work. Oh Chang-hoon humbly responded that it wasn't difficult, as they were well thanks to the Messiah. Suddenly, hurried and tense footsteps echoed in the place. A woman was frantically shouting for Minji and Minhyun. She was the real mother of those powerful, adorable, and remarkable children. The girls were overjoyed to have brought the Messiah, and their mother praised them for doing an excellent job, lamenting that she couldn't accompany them. She also congratulated her dear husband, who had taken risks to achieve this unprecedented feat. He simply replied, reassuring her that everything would be fine from now on. The children had missed their mother greatly, who said she loved her sweet daughters and had missed them too. The old man then asked if all those people could trust the Messiah to guide them. Kang Bak-hyun tried to explain that even if he wanted to, he couldn't lead that crowd as he wasn't a true divine being. But suddenly, the old man began proclaiming to the crowd that the boy had accepted to guide them, completely ignoring what the boy had said earlier. He preached even more, saying that all those people could now return to the Father in heaven, while Kang Bak-hyun grew desperate, as he had never said such a thing. Kim Man-cheol quickly asked his friend what was going on. Kang Bak-hyun responded, saying he believed the man had completely misunderstood him. He tried calling the gray-haired man, asking him to wait a minute. He then asked what exactly the man meant by guiding them specifically where they wanted to go. The old man immediately replied without hesitation that it was to the long-desired Pillar of Light. Kang Bak-hyun wore a look of surprise and confusion after hearing this. Meanwhile, the crowd kept shouting for their Messiah. Their cries could even be heard outside that place. The gray-haired man explained that the Pillar of Light was the path to the Father in heaven, a miraculous place that freed them from all suffering and attachments. And the only person capable of leading them to that path was the Messiah, better known as Kang Bak-hyun. He then asked Oh Chang-hoon to show the boy the drawings, and the man complied immediately. There were many beautiful artworks on paper pinned to a wall. In one, a boy was running very fast, looking desperate. In another, a bird stood before three very mysterious men. Yet another clearly depicted Kang Bak-hyun, Kim Man-cheol, Oh Chang-hoon, and his two daughters, Minji and Minhyun, walking inside that cave. The old man was amazed to see such a thing, thinking the man might truly be telling the truth, as he seemed to be an impressive seer. The gray-haired man confirmed this, affirming that the seer could see the future through his drawings. Kang Bak-hyun thought that compared to Madam Choi Baksha, this man's efficiency was lower but still an impressive and incredible ability. He persistently begged the boy as the Messiah to guide them. The crowd begged even more, with many imploring and crying for this. Kang Bak-hyun thought he couldn't afford any delays as his home was just around the corner. But he feared telling all those people that he wasn't the true Messiah. He didn't know what might happen afterward. He wanted to act with great caution and care. Suddenly, he shouted to get everyone's attention, saying he still had a very dangerous mission to fulfill quickly. Kang Bak-hyun also told them that if everyone began heading toward the Pillar of Light, he could complete his task and follow them soon after, intending to escape from there. Suddenly, a man spoke up, saying he would also help complete the dangerous mission. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun felt lost and confused as he hadn't expected such a response. The crowd agreed with the man, saying that even if they reached the Pillar of Light, they couldn't proceed without the Messiah, and they were willing to fight regardless of the obstacles. They begged the boy to take them along, but he thought it was impossible to bring all those people with him. Kim Man-cheol quickly intervened, scolding the crowd for putting so much pressure on a fragile and defenseless boy. He said those people without a sense of honor should be ashamed of what they were doing. The gray-haired man argued that despite the boy's youth, he was still the Messiah, supported by a brown-haired man who criticized Kim Man-cheol. The man said that by the command of the Heavenly Father, he was instructed to draw the Messiah's appearance, asking Kim Man-cheol what explanation he had to contradict it. Hearing all this, Kang Bak-hyun wore a tense and desperate expression. He quickly told Kim Man-cheol that he urgently needed to talk to him. The crowd watched in confusion, not understanding a thing. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol were inside a protective barrier bubble discussing a secret matter that no one else could hear. Suddenly, the bubble dissipated and the two emerged from it. Kang Bak-hyun immediately announced to the crowd that they were now ready to go. Hearing this, the crowd erupted in cheers, shouting the name of the supposed Messiah. But before that, the boy suddenly revealed that he had something to tell everyone. He asked them to look closely at the impressive drawings displayed there. He wanted them to notice that someone had always been with him, never standing alone. Indeed, the artwork depicted another man alongside him. In almost every scene, the man was always present, and he likely played a key role alongside the divine boy. Kang Bak-hyun then revealed that he wasn't the only Messiah. This left the crowd looking surprised and tense. Meanwhile, the boy persuasively and deceitfully explained that the man was the other Messiah who would guide them to the Grand Pillar of Light, and that man was Mr. Kim Man-cheol, concluding this revealing and deceitful chapter of the story. The next chapter begins with a stunning view of the warm sun. Some heavy breaths were heard in the middle of that asphalt road. A boy was spotted there, running quickly and frantically. That boy turned out to be Kim Man-cheol, our beloved and powerful protagonist. He was running as fast as he could, breathing heavily, clearly exhausted from the effort. Now we go back a bit to when he and Kim Man-cheol were inside the protective barrier bubble. Kang Bak-hyun explained to the man that those people wouldn't let them leave willingly, leaving the man unsure of what to do. The boy quickly mentioned the drawings that depicted the two of them, but even so, people thought only he was the Messiah. Kim Man-cheol was confused about what the boy was trying to say and imply. He then explained that no one ever said there was only one Messiah. At that moment, he dissolved the protective barrier bubble around them. He then falsely revealed that he wasn't the only Messiah. As we already know, following this, everyone wore tense and shocked expressions. And shortly after, Kang Bak-hyun falsely stated that the man would guide them to the powerful Pillar of Light. That man was his best friend, Kim Man-cheol, as we also know from the previous chapter. Continuing from where we left off after saying all those lies, Kang Bak-hyun felt tense and nervous, hoping it would work. The man was overjoyed, believing that the Heavenly Father had sent two messages, expressing his deepest gratitude for it. After those words, the crowd began celebrating and giving thanks. They truly believed there were two messages sent by God. While the crowd thanked the Heavenly Father, Kim Man-cheol asked his friend if they really needed to do this. Kang Bak-hyun confirmed, saying he was counting on him. Now return to the moment when he was running fast, breathing heavily. The story reveals that he was heading toward building 103. He could already see the building and hoped Mina would wait just a little longer. Then Kang Bak-hyun, still tired and gasping from his sprint, reaches the sidewalk of the building. However, he is met with a massive staircase, making access to the building difficult. Cleverly, the boy decides to use the accessibility ramp. Not knowing what might happen, he keeps his ability fully prepared and ready for anything. Suddenly, Kang Bak-hyun hears some strange, loud noises coming from behind. But he ignores them and continues running, breathless, through the corridors of the enormous residential building. Finally, he arrives at a giant apartment door. Specifically, it was apartment 101, and Kang Bak-hyun was amazed at the size of the door, which used to be normal before shrinking. Without hesitation, he slips under the immense steel barrier. He was grateful there was a gap beneath the door. and after a few seconds, he finally makes it into his apartment. He feels relieved and breathless after the long, fast journey. Kang Bakhyun then begins to walk calmly through the familiar space. He attentively observes everything around him, his eyes wide open. Suddenly, he hears loud, frightening noises amid the chaotic mess of the apartment. He wonders what on earth had happened as the sounds grow louder and more terrifying. Kang Bakhyun is deeply worried about the whereabouts of his dear sister, Mina. Without a second thought, the protagonist activates his incredible minimap ability. He starts analyzing every detail and corner of the vast apartment. Suddenly, he spots something that makes his eyes widen in shock and tension. The floor beneath him begins to tremble violently, causing the small boy to lose his balance. He falls hard and abruptly onto the ground. Looking around, he becomes even more stunned and bewildered. What he sees is so astonishing that his large eyes widen even further. It is a life-sized man dressed in black, holding a cage with his beloved sister inside. The man has a grim and terrifying face wearing oversized glasses. Kang Bakhyun stares at him with a look of fear and dread, unsure of what to do. Inside that golden cage was indeed a little girl dressed in pink, trapped with no way to escape. That girl was Mina, the dear sister of our beloved and powerful protagonist. Suddenly, while holding the cage, the giant man senses something unusual around him. Without hesitation, he starts searching for the anomaly that must be inside the house. Out of nowhere, his gaze fixes on a wine bottle lying on the floor. Behind that glass bottle was our brave protagonist, Kang Bakhyun, hiding with intense fear. Thankfully, the giant doesn't notice him and continues toward a nearby sofa. Kang Bakhyun is stunned, realizing this must be the giant man Kim Man-chil had mentioned, confirming someone had indeed remained life-sized. Furthermore, it was a mystery why his powerful minimap couldn't detect this brute. As Kang Bakhyun ponders all this, the man picks up his giant remote control. He turns on his enormous television to watch a program or drama airing at the time. After a few seconds, he quickly switches the channel. He does this again in a matter of moments. After flipping through 3 channels, he complains about how boring it is with only old and dull recordings. Meanwhile, Mina asks why the man has imprisoned her and what he wants from her. He approaches the cage and says he wants to talk to the little girl, asking about her unique ability. Mina is confused and asks what he means so suddenly. He simply tells her to stop pretending, claiming he already knows everything about her. Tense and desperate, Mina quickly asks what exactly he knows. Suddenly, the man slams a paper onto the table, displaying the title of her brilliant work, How a Princess Survives in a Small World. Seeing this, Mina becomes even more shocked and desperate. The giant man then asks if Kang Mina had truly written such a work. Hearing this, she panics, realizing the man knows far too much. Meanwhile, he silently stares at her with a grim and foreboding expression. After a few moments, he reveals that, like Mina, he's a life revealer, concluding this revealing and tense chapter of the magnificent story. At this moment, the story takes us back 2 years to a place filled with many seemingly interesting books. There were also some post-its about web novel deadlines and best works. Right in front of it, a computer displayed a message stating that a project had not been approved because they were not looking for that type of content. This news left the giant man deeply disappointed because he genuinely believed he could achieve approval. He questioned what to do after all the disappointment and frustration. All he wanted was to die after reading that harsh rejection message. And it was at this moment that something completely surprising and extraordinary happened. An information panel appeared, congratulating him for being chosen as a revealer of the small world, followed by more details about it. That screen in front of him would completely change his life. At first, he thought he was in a deep sleep, dreaming of something like this. But the panel claimed he was truly a special individual. Despite all the notifications and information, the man didn't believe it, still thinking it was just a dream and that nothing significant would happen. After pondering it all, he finally interacted with the information panel, clicking on page 1 for the predicted keyword. As he opened the tab, his eyes widened in perplexity and suspense. Something interacted with his own body as if it possessed him and entered his being. After feeling such a sensation, he was shocked, still thinking it was a highly realistic and vivid dream. After all that, as if he were genuinely possessed by something, he ended up writing a novel. The title of this work was In a Small World, Only I Conquer. As he wrote the novel, he felt a sense of satisfaction, hoping to pass such a tough evaluation test. But after completing it, he received another "We cannot accept this" from a suited man with a blank expression. Hearing that response, his face showed utter disappointment and sadness. The man argued that overall the plot lacked strength and the theme, besides being absurd, seemed plagiarized due to a contemporary trend. While also stating that the story wasn't sufficient, the novel's creator became furious and agitated. Suddenly, he slammed his palm on the table with all his might. He was extremely angry, cursing because all those people seemed to know was how to say no repeatedly and tirelessly. Standing there with a furious and angry expression, he glared at the black-suited editor sitting across from him. Suddenly, both their attention turned to something very strange happening in the room. The annoying editor was completely shocked and amazed by it. The author of the work also showed a look of utter bewilderment and chills. Suddenly, he began sweating profusely in the face of this previously unknown phenomenon. Then, out of nowhere, something began happening to his own body. Without explanation, he felt extreme pain and agony from the critical phenomenon, screaming loudly. Suddenly, he found himself in freefall toward a vast, deep abyss, passing out before hitting the bottom. After some time, he finally managed to open his eyes. He realized he was naked, covered only by a large blue blanket. Suddenly, as if by magic, perfectly tailored clothes appeared on his body without explanation. Loud screams of despair and fear could be heard in the area. Suddenly, something caught the attention of our giant protagonist. It was the information panel, informing him that he had entered the small world, received starter equipment, and had unlocked new details. The Conqueror's unique ability was power absorption, allowing him to take the power of a deceased individual. His innate abilities were twofold, unlocking an infinite strength. Seeing all this cool and exciting information, Sungjin was very confused, wondering what on earth it all meant. He soon realized that the screens he had seen were no dream but pure reality. Suddenly, someone arrived, yelling his name angrily and desperately. It was that annoying editor, who quickly stood in front of Sungjin. He demanded an explanation for what was happening, claiming these situations were from his novel. Sungjin listened to all the desperate words in complete silence, not responding, merely staring at the man. Suddenly, he decided to attack the annoying man with an extremely strong and powerful punch to his ugly face. The blow sent him flying a short distance, hitting the ground hard. But that wasn't enough for Sungjin, as he wanted the man to address him as Author Nim. After stating this to the editor, he delivered yet another strong and powerful blow to his ugly face, rendering him completely unconscious with a significant amount of vital red liquid pouring from his horrendous face. This tremendous hatred from Author Nim stemmed from the man always ignoring what he had to say. Suddenly, a strange noise caught Sungjin's attention. It was the information panel, informing him that he had absorbed the ability to fly after killing an individual, with 2 more skill slots still available for use. Reading this, Sungjin celebrated the fact that it was all real and working. He then began a low, malicious laugh that grew louder and more menacing. Soon it turned into a villainous scream of triumph. Sungjin was rejoicing over the fact that he was truly someone special. After listening to this entire story told by Author Nim, Mina was completely stunned and perplexed inside that little cage. Sungjin also revealed that after filling all his skill slots, he began to think about something bigger. Following this, we returned to his memories where he stood in front of several chairs. He was now massive, and near his feet lay several deceased individuals. Something once again caught his attention, making him highly alert. It was the information panel again, updating him on his absorbed abilities and noting that they could easily be replaced. He recalled that annoying man saying another writer had already explored a similar theme in their novel. This made it seem like his work had plagiarized popular contemporary content. Meanwhile, he rummaged through his backpack, which lay on a chair. Inside was a large brown envelope containing a manuscript about a small world. The sender of the document was none other than Kang Mina, with her full address written on the paper. Seeing this with bloodshot eyes and a desire to hunt her down, Sungjin grew excited and happy. He stared at the envelope, likely already imagining the atrocities he would commit upon finding the girl, concluding this revealing and tense chapter of the story. This chapter opens with Sungjin explaining to Kang Mina that he had wondered if the person who wrote that novel had also received a revelation. Author Nim speculated that if such an individual had received similar revelations, it likely possessed strong abilities too. Hearing this, Kang Mina became completely desperate, thinking that this man wanted to absorb her unique skill. Suddenly, he asked about her power, suspecting she didn't have anything particularly useful since she had resisted her capture. Upon hearing his question and comment, Kang Mina remained silent for a brief moment, saying nothing while formulating a response. Seeing that the girl wasn't speaking, Sungjin stated that he would force the truth out of her soon. He then began to leave, saying he'd return shortly after fetching a glass of water. Meanwhile, our beloved protagonist Kang Bak-hyun was still hiding behind that wine bottle. Hearing all this, he realized that Mina's novel hadn't become reality, that humans were being manipulated under the influence of a higher force, and the reason for this was still entirely unknown. Suddenly, a massive shadow appeared behind him, leaving him completely tense and afraid. He looked up, eyes wide with fear, dreading what might happen next. It was Sungjin, drawing ever closer to the large wine bottle on the floor, behind which Kang Bak-hyun had been hiding for hours. The giant man clearly sensed someone's presence, having caught a glimpse of something. Spotting Kang Bak-hyun, he rejoiced at the prospect of acquiring a new unique ability. Meanwhile, near the Hope Society building, everyone from the sect was very close to the Great Pillar of Divine Light. They were growing anxious as someone had been delayed for quite some time, suggesting that something had happened. Kim Man-cheol, meanwhile, considered whether now was the time to say something. It was now or never. This might be his clearest opportunity yet. Suddenly, he began shouting to the crowd, claiming that just moments ago, he had received a grand revelation from the divine. Hearing this, everyone became highly attentive, their expressions tense and perplexed. Kim Man-cheol then falsely declared that he must go to the other Messiah immediately, or they would all perish. Following this revelation, the crowd grew utterly frightened and tense over the catastrophic information. Meanwhile, the false prophet asserted that everything was correct and that time was running out. He promptly summoned Minji and Mayim for assistance. The two immediately confirmed their ability to provide the demanded aid. He wanted them to quickly create a dimensional portal to the entrance of Jaehyun apartment, wing 103. The same was promptly obeyed without hesitation by the little girls. In just a few seconds, a dimensional portal was formed at the entrance of that enormous residential building. Kim Man-cheol, Minji Mayan, Oh Chang-hoon, and his wife quickly exited that magical teleporter. The false prophet immediately instructed them to hide and wait quietly for a few moments. After giving that message, he ran as fast as he could, sprinting toward the apartment where his dear friend was. The corridor seemed enormous for his tiny ant-like size, but he kept running tirelessly, even though he was panting heavily. Soon, he spotted apartment 103, where his dear friend was. Inside, Kang Bak-hyun was no longer hiding behind the wine bottle. Suddenly, a giant hand was seen resting on the floor of the place. Upon seeing that, our beloved protagonist fell into despair and tension, panting heavily. Sunjun quickly commented that he was surprisingly agile, given his tiny ant-like size. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun thought his giant enemy was incredibly strong. With his massive hands stretched out toward the tiny one, the giant informed him that he was just playing and would catch him for real this time. Kang Bak-hyun was utterly desperate, looking up as the giant hand rapidly approached. His eyes widened in fear, and his expression showed immense terror, as if this truly was the end of his tragic life. Then suddenly, the giant man struck the ground with tremendous force and power. But he was surprised, as his easy prey seemed to have somehow escaped death. Upon closer inspection, he saw Kim Man-cheol saving Kang Bak-hyun at the last moment. According to the man, this was likely the owner of the giant foot from the previous vision. Seeing another tiny human, Sunjun grew perplexed and furious. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol and Kang Bak-hyun were quickly running toward the balcony. The man soon discovered that the boy's sister was trapped in a cage on the table. Upon learning this, he was utterly shocked, almost unable to believe such a fact. But there truly was a cage on that table, and inside there was indeed a little girl in distress. Sunjun, seeing this scene, cursed the tiny humans as pathetic insects while chasing them. He raised his feet to stomp on the defenseless mini-humans. In a matter of moments, that enormous foot came crashing down on the ground with a tremendous force. This impact made Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol practically bounce due to its magnitude. Looking up, they noticed some utensils on a countertop starting to fall. Among them were a few plastic containers. One fell directly onto Kim Man-cheol's arm, leaving Kang Bak-hyun deeply worried for his mentor. He screamed in pain and agony from the harsh impact on his limb. Kim Man-cheol tried to convince Kang Bak-hyun to escape alone, but the boy refused to leave him behind. Meanwhile, Sunjun, with bloodshot eyes, drew dangerously close to the two. Suddenly, something caught the attention of our powerful protagonist. There was a few sharp and pointed shards of glass lying nearby. Without hesitation, he grabbed one and thanked his mentor for everything. He then began sprinting toward the giant man with the sharp object in his hands. Seeing the boy's reckless move, Kim Man-cheol tried to stop him verbally, but it was in vain as the boy continued his daring charge. Again, his mentor tried to stop him with words. Yet Kang Bak-hyun refused to stop under any circumstances. He drew closer and closer to the giant foot of the malicious man, a scene previously foreseen by his mentor. Seeing this, Kim Man-cheol's expression was filled with despair and helplessness. To make matters worse, Sunjun suddenly stomped on Kang Bak-hyun with all his strength. Witnessing this, Kim Man-cheol fell into complete despair, screaming frantically for the life of his dear friend. With this horrifying scene of the giant man and the false prophet flailing in distress, this sad and tragic chapter of the story comes to an end. This chapter begins with Sunjun reflecting that the tiny humans seemed insane for leaping at him like that. He even compared the mini-humans to insects as they struggled to the very end. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol was still alive, witnessing the entire grim and horrifying scene. He bore a deeply tense expression, clutching his injured and aching arm. The man with the giant towering over him thought it was all over. He believed he would die as well, making his attempts to change his future completely futile. His expression was filled with hopelessness and resignation. But suddenly, he noticed something unbelievable that gave him a glimmer of hope. Something seemed slightly different from what he had seen in the vision. In the prophecy, he had clearly observed red vital fluid splattered everywhere. Yet at that moment, nothing was stained anywhere. Meanwhile, Sunjun eagerly anticipated discovering the ability he had gained from the boy's death. But upon opening the informational panel, he realized that the messages were the same, and nothing seemed to have changed. He became utterly confused, unable to find his supposed new ability. Suddenly, a brilliant blue light appeared beneath his enormous shoe. It was our remarkable protagonist, Kang Bak-hyun, fully protected by his moldable protective barrier. Gradually, he emerged from beneath that enormous giant foot. Witnessing this, Kim Man-cheol's face reflected astonishment and surprise. In just a few seconds, Kang Bak-hyun was outside, still holding the large, sharp shard of glass. He aimed it directly at the massive giant before him. He then began preparing to strike his enemy, and without hesitation, he struck the giant with all his strength. Sunjun, noticing this, silently stared at the boy. The shard of glass shattered into numerous fragments against his body. Kang Bak-hyun, realizing this, was filled with utter despair, his eyes wide with shock. Sunjun mocked him, calling him a persistent little ant. He then grabbed him between his gigantic fingers. Mockingly and with a fixed gaze, he declared that he had metallization among his extensive list of abilities. He also proclaimed himself special, chosen by God, and assured the boy that he couldn't be defeated so easily. Sunjun further belittled the mini-humans, saying they were insignificant beings crawling beneath his feet. Finally, he declared he would crush Kang Bak-hyun like a real insect. Hearing this, the boy panicked and his protective barrier began to weaken and crack. He started shouting with intense determination and resistance. He screamed that he would definitely defeat the giant and powerful man. Hearing this, Sunjun grew even angrier and more furious. He tightened his grip on Kang Bak-hyun between his enormous fingers. But suddenly, something utterly strange and extraordinary occurred, causing him to scream in despair. Kang Bak-hyun had apparently freed himself from his grasp. With his protective barrier, he was heading straight for the giant's enormous mouth. After this rapid phenomenon, Sunjun ended up swallowing the small boy. He panicked, clutching his massive throat, struggling to breathe. He coughed profusely, choking on his undesired meal. Kim Man-cheol, witnessing the demonic scene, immediately thought of his dear friend. Meanwhile, the boy was determined to block the giant's airway, seizing the chance to win because, despite his strength, Sunjun was still human. Sunjun was in utter distress, clearly struggling to breathe. Seeing this, Kang Minna thought anxiously of her dear brother inside the giant man's body. Meanwhile, Sunjun was still unable to breathe, growing increasingly desperate. Kang Bak-hyun tried to hold on, knowing that falling into the stomach would mean certain death. He just needed to hold out a little longer for the plan to succeed fully. Sunjun was utterly confused about what was happening to him. It seemed absurd to die in such a foolish way. He let out a loud, thunderous scream, demanding even more effort from Kang Bak-hyun in his throat. He declared himself special and chosen by God. He insisted that it was impossible to die so pathetically. But gradually, Sunjun began losing all air and oxygen. His gigantic body started to tilt backward. In seconds, he collapsed heavily onto the apartment floor. The impact was so great that it launched Kim Man-cheol far away. Sunjun genuinely appeared dead, lying unconscious on the floor. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol picked himself up from the unexpected heavy fall. He immediately thought of his great friend Kang Bak-hyun. He stood and moved towards Sunjun's body. The man's face looked utterly defeated, with saliva dripping from his mouth and tears from his eyes. Suddenly, Kim Man-cheol noticed something strange that caught his attention. It was our dear Kang Bak-hyun, emerging intact and unharmed from Sunjun's mouth. He appeared extremely exhausted inside his protective barrier bubble. Upon seeing his dear friend alive and well, Kim Man-cheol immediately displayed an expression of great joy and optimism. Without hesitation, the boy descended from that giant mouth using his moldable protective barrier. He quickly expressed concern for his sister, Kang Minna. Meanwhile, the giant dead man remained sprawled across the apartment floor. In just a few moments, the golden cage was already open, with Kang Minna no longer inside. At that moment, she was embracing and cherishing her beloved little brother. They were both very happy, relieved that they were safe and sound. Kang Minna, without hesitation, apologized as her dear brother had endured so much to reach her. But, deciding to tackle one thing at a time, they chose to first head to the glorious Pillar of Light, ending this hopeful and joyous chapter of the story. The next chapter begins with Kang Bak-hyun wearing an expression of tension and surprise as he observed something. It was the informational panel notifying him that the main mission of finding the princess had been completed. He felt slightly confused and reflective about this. Many difficult challenges had occurred along the way, including hungry and ferocious rats trying to eat him, a massive explosion with a dangerously huge fireball, that relentless, motherless cat, the crows that wouldn't stop chasing him, Kim Aram showcasing all her strength and power by lifting that enormous, heavy concrete block, the relentless pack of rabid dogs chasing after them tirelessly, and the descent of all those pillars of light from the sky. Finally, Oh Chang-hoon, his wife, their daughters Minji and Mingyeon, along with Kang Minna, Kang Bak-hyun, and Kim Man-cheol, were outside the residential complex. The false prophet immediately suggested that they all head to the Grand Pillar of Light. But Kang Bak-hyun opposed the decision, stating that they still needed to save Kim Aram's family, leaving the man confused. The boy quickly provided their address, Block 104, Apartment 203, just beyond where they currently were. Kim Man-cheol initially tried to argue against the boy's decision, but upon seeing his utterly exhausted and worn-out expression, he couldn't find the heart to refuse and instead showed pity. He quickly agreed, saying that since they still had plenty of time, they could rescue them without any issues, to which the boy nodded affirmatively. Despite his fatigue and exhaustion, Kang Bak-hyun began using his remarkable ability without hesitation. Suddenly, a mini-map appeared in the form of a hologram. To summon it, Kang Bak-hyun exerted significant effort, sweating profusely. However, the mini-map soon began to blur and distort. He lamented, knowing he had overexerted himself in the previous frenetic battle. Kim Man-cheol grew concerned, sensing that something was wrong, but the boy falsely claimed he was fine. Suddenly, his vision became significantly blurred. He appeared to collapse slowly as everyone around him worried about his condition. His sight grew increasingly dim and unsteady. Within seconds, our dear protagonist, Kang Bak-hyun, collapsed hard onto the ground. In that moment, he thought he couldn't stop there. He desperately needed to save Kim Aram's family. His vision darkened and his body was immobilized as he called out for his dear sister, Kang Mina. Suddenly, the scene shifts to another place where people were walking normally and peacefully. There on a bench sat our dear and powerful protagonist, Kang Bak-hyun. He thought he had only dozed off for a few seconds. Everything seemed to have returned to normal, and it all appeared to be nothing more than a deep dream. Realizing this, Kang Bak-hyun expressed great relief. But suddenly, someone approached him, questioning why he hadn't saved those people. It was the powerful little girl, Kim Aram, standing before him. She desperately reminded him of his promise to save her entire family. The boy, seeing Kim Aram, displayed an expression of great surprise. And suddenly, his lord also appeared, saying that although he had successfully saved his sister, her entire family was now dead. Then all the people Kang Bak-hyun had seen die appeared, asking why they hadn't been saved. The crowd rushed at him like zombies, pleading to be rescued. Seeing this, Kang Bak-hyun widened his eyes and let out a loud, desperate scream. Suddenly, while still screaming, the boy realized he was now in a completely different place, a place where everything was entirely white and devoid of color. As he looked at his hand, he noticed something completely astonishing that made his eyes widen again with a deeply confused and despairing expression. It was his body healing itself at that very moment. However, where he was remained an entirely baffling mystery. Suddenly, a loud voice welcomed him to the pillar of light. A man with green hair appeared there out of nowhere. The man was dressed in a suit and stared at the boy with his green eyes. Kang Bak-hyun immediately asked for his identity, first wanted to know where Kang Mina and his lord Kim Man-cheol were. The man replied for him not to panic, assuring that everyone was completely safe. And once again, Kang Bak-hyun demanded to know where everyone was. The man mocked him, saying the boy was quite impatient but would soon reunite with all his friends and family. He added that this would happen on page 2. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun became very confused about what that meant. Then the green-haired man explained that first, they would analyze the results of page 1, where the survival numbers for the rock area were recorded. He snapped his fingers loudly, and suddenly, the number 4,663,311 appeared. The man stated that this survival rate of 9% wasn't too bad. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun became utterly confused by such a designation. Angrily, he shouted that people were dying everywhere. He prepared to strike the man, furious at how he trivialized these terrible deaths as if it were a video game. But when he finally attempted to punch him, his hand passed right through. The man was merely a hologram. After this failed attempt, Kang Bak-hyun fell hard to the ground. The green-haired man laughed loudly, remarking that humans were indeed a very fascinating species. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun's expression reflected intense confusion, his eyes wide open. He wondered what kind of situation he had found himself in. The man in front of him clapped and laughed while this went on. The green-haired man even shed tears from laughing so hard. As he had not yet introduced himself, he revealed his name, Charles. He was the administrator of the game called 3 Centimeter Hunter. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun was left completely stunned and bewildered. The two locked eyes in that completely white space, ending this tense and revealing chapter of the story. We begin the next chapter with Kang Bak-hyun utterly furious that Charles referred to everything as a mere game. This was confirmed with much mockery by the green-haired man, who asked if the boy didn't like games. Suddenly, Charles spread his arms wide. He then asked if Kang Bak-hyun had ever considered the possibility of the world ending differently. Such an event could involve numerous bloody wars, countless natural disasters due to global warming, massive floods and tsunamis worldwide. Hearing all this, Kang Bak-hyun became quite frightened about what it all meant. Charles commented that everyone anticipated the world ending in that way. However, no one ever considered the possibility of it ending the way it was now. Opening his arms again, more images appeared behind the green-haired man. One showed tiny people being cooked in hot coffee spilled from a porcelain cup. Other images depicted small humans being devoured by black ants. Some showed people jumping and falling hard onto the ground, dying from fatal falls. Kang Bak-hyun became enraged upon discovering that this man was responsible for it all. He immediately asked whether the shrunken people gaining strange abilities and the novel coming to life were his doing, also demanding to know where Mina was. For a few moments, Charles remained silent, not uttering a single word. Then he remarked that the boy was asking too many questions. He said that many others had asked him countless questions, but he would make an exception and answer just one of the boys. Once again, he snapped his fingers. A hologram of Kang Mina, the protagonist's little sister, appeared behind him. Since she was a revealer, Charles wanted him to take good care of her, thus giving some people in his area a chance to survive. Charles also stated that there was a way to restore everything to how it was before. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun became deeply interested and eager to know more. Charles revealed that the boy had earned the right to be the narrator of the story, possessing the qualifications to become the main character. However, he wasn't the only candidate competing for that spot. Hearing all these proposals, Kang Bak-hyun became even more confused and lost. But Charles simply told him that no further explanation was necessary. The rest, he would have to figure out on his own without any assistance. Hearing those words from the green-haired, green-eyed man, Kang Bak-hyun was left speechless. Suddenly, Charles began to disappear, merely urging him to survive while he tried to stop it. Even as Kang Bak-hyun called for him to wait, he found himself alone in that bland white space. But then something appeared, catching his attention. It was the informational panel, informing him that page 2 would start soon and that some upgrades had been unlocked. It was possible to enhance his powers using points earned on page 1, and his second ability slot had just been unlocked. The panel also displayed some of Kang Bak-hyun's stats and provided the option to change his clothes. The little powerhouse was a bit puzzled by everything he saw. The panel gave him the option to change outfits by clicking a simple button at the bottom. Without hesitation, our beloved protagonist clicked it. Suddenly, a strange black door appeared in front of him, leaving him even more confused. After a few seconds, Kang Bak-hyun finally opened that black door. He found himself facing what seemed to be a closet filled with high-quality clothes, which baffled him. He commented that, in the middle of such a situation, clothing was beyond something he could finish saying. In truth, he didn't know what dangers lay ahead and thought there was nothing wrong with being prepared for every challenge. Grateful, he decided to change into something that allowed for freer movement, as wearing the same outfit without changing felt uncomfortable. Kang Bak-hyun chose a cool outfit that fit perfectly, allowing him greater mobility. Afterward, he decided to upgrade his barrier to level 2 using the points he had earned on page 1. Suddenly, something magical began happening to his body, enhancing his ability. Soon, a hologram of Charles appeared, informing him that in 5 minutes, everyone would transition to page 2, so he should hurry to complete any necessary preparations. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun realized that it truly was a game to be played. He had many unanswered questions, but for now, he wanted to focus on what had already happened. Charles began the countdown to the next page. The seconds ticked down one after another. Meanwhile, Kang Bak-hyun felt anxious, taking deep breaths. Finally, Charles reached the last second before the transition to page 2. Suddenly, a dense fog appeared in the white space where Kang Bak-hyun was, drawing his attention. The mist made him incredibly drowsy, and within seconds, his eyes were closed. Soon, Kang Bak-hyun was lying on the ground, sleeping like an angel without a care. Meanwhile, the drowsiness-inducing fog spread throughout the pillar of light. After a few moments, Kang Bak-hyun began to open his little eyes. He found himself looking at a tree and feeling the warm sun on his princess-like face. Suddenly, someone called out to him in an enthusiastic voice. It was Kang Mina, asking if her big brother was okay after saving her. After a few seconds, his lord Kim Man-cheol also arrived with a bright smile. He quickly confirmed that Kang Bak-hyun was fine, uninjured, and asked about his physical state. The boy promptly replied that he was as fit as a fiddle. After all that talk, Kang Bak-hyun asked where they were. There were many people around and countless giant trees. Kim Man-cheol admitted he wasn't sure yet, and then asked about the scoundrel from the Pillar of Light. Suddenly, the man appeared as a hologram, ending everyone's long wait. Kang Bak-hyun and Kim Man-cheol were shocked by Charles' virtual presence. He appeared everywhere in the area through massive holographic screens. Charles then announced that page 2 was about to begin. With his malicious smile, the green-haired, green-eyed man concluded this revealing and exciting chapter of the story. We begin the next chapter with Kim Man-cheol fuming because the green-haired guy had called him Sir, implying he was an old man. All he wanted was to show the mission for page 2 at that moment. The informational panel displayed that the primary objective was to enter the castle, with 2 survival requirements, and the hint was to ensure their points didn't drop to 0. Charles even downplays the mission, claiming it to be very easy to complete successfully. He also mentions that, to change things up from page 1, he added some small sets of rules. After giving so much information, Charles asks everyone to try opening the window listing their progress. Immediately, those present begin displaying their panels. Kang Bak-hyun also opens his panel, showing his prince status and innate ability. Suddenly, he notices something strange, more specifically, some stars at the top. Charles explains that these symbols represent the number of abilities a person can learn. The level is determined by the number of stars, which are directly linked to strength. Much like the difference between commoners and nobles, normally, the number doesn't change. However, if one manages to kill someone with a higher star count, it's possible to rise to that person's level. Hearing this, Kang Bak-hyun pays close attention, surprised. In summary, this meant that if someone with 1 star killed another with 4, they could acquire 4 abilities from the feat. Charles also says it's amazing that from now on, everyone could see each other's points. After learning this, Kim Man-cheol notices that Kang Bak-hyun currently has 65 points. Charles explains that earning points is very simple. All they need to do is kill another living being. Kim Man-cheol finds this absurd, as the crazy man was basically encouraging them to kill others mercilessly. However, Charles clarifies that he never said to kill only humans, and taking the life of another of the same race depends solely on one's mentality. As he begins to explain what happens when points drop to 0, he realizes it's almost time to start the next game. Without hesitation, Charles begins the countdown to the start of page 2. Hearing this, Kang Mina, Kim Man-cheol, and Kang Bak-hyun wear tense and startled expressions. Nevertheless, the game begins as the countdown ends. Suddenly, groans of pain and agony are heard, drawing the trio's attention. It's a man writhing on the ground, seemingly suffocating. His facial features and skin begin to distort with numerous eruptions. His stomach swells, lowing as if a sun were inside him. Then suddenly, the man explodes like a nuclear bomb, leaving a massive trail of fire. Where he stood, only a large black burn mark remains. Witnessing this, Kang Bakhyun and Kang Mina grow even more terrified and tense. Kang Bakhyun questions whether this could truly be considered a game. Charles reappears, stating that the explosion had a range of over 3 square meters and was quite thrilling. Hearing this, Kang Bakhyun becomes furious with the green-haired man. Kim Man-cheol thinks the situation is repugnant, but concludes that the only way forward is to successfully complete the mission. He promptly asks where they are and which castle they need to reach. Charles responds that it's a place everyone is very familiar with. This leaves the trio even more confused and clueless. However, the green-haired, green-eyed man soon clarifies that they're currently in Namsan and that the castle is the iconic Namsan Tower. He also mentions that the Pillar of Light is already right in front of them. After providing this information, he bids farewell to the tiny humans for now. The holographic screens around them suddenly vanish. At that moment, Mina is deeply disappointed in her actions. Kang Bakhyun tries to console her, emphasizing that the important thing is that they're all alive. Kim Man-cheol also reassures her, promising to follow and support them no matter what, using all his strength. Hearing this, Mina quickly asks if the man always spoke his mind, leaving Kang Bakhyun startled. She then reveals that one of her abilities is mind reading, allowing her to see almost everything. Kang Bakhyun is astonished as he had no idea about his dear sister's powers. Meanwhile, Kim Man-cheol feels deeply unsettled that his inner thoughts were exposed this way. Mina remarks that she could likely read his mind even without her ability, making him even more nervous. Suddenly, a loud, terrifying scream is heard from where the trio stands. It's a man screaming in pain and desperation as another person attempts to kill him. That muscular guy apparently had a very strong and well-built arm. He was tightly gripping the neck of that defenseless mini-human, leaving him completely out of breath. After just a few seconds, the little guy simply faints due to the lack of oxygen in his lungs. The muscular man with orange hair celebrates this inadmissible act, wearing a malicious grin on his ugly face. Suddenly, he stares at the trio with a psychopathic and wild expression. He was checking the points those three had available. Seeing that there were many points at stake, he quickly decided to go after them without any mercy. Given this, he would likely use his incredible arm strength to kill all the friends present there. Upon witnessing this, Kim Man-cheol begins charging his super strength ability, cursing the orange-haired guy as a bastard. At that moment, the battle between that man and the villain was already in full swing. Their fists clashed in midair due to simultaneous strikes, but it seemed that one of the punches was weaker. Kim Man-cheol delivered the stronger blow, and as a result, the villainous orange-haired man was sent flying. Without hesitation, the villain quickly got up despite the pain and started running away. Kang Bakhyun was shocked to realize that the man had killed someone just for points, and Kim Man-cheol warned him that more people like that were likely around. Furthermore, everything was probably going to be much harder than it was on page 1. After giving this warning, Kim Man-cheol urged the team to hurry toward Namsan Tower. Following that path would eventually lead them to their destination, but they might run out of time before reaching it. Another option was to take the forest route, which was full of many obstacles. Kang Mina also suggested using the cable car, which was the fastest way to get to the tower. But Kim Man-cheol argued that it could be a trap since many bad people would likely be nearby, making things chaotic. So Kang Bakhyun emphasized that the best way to reach the tower was by taking the given path. His master agreed as it seemed the only plausible option. Meanwhile, far away, a little boy was calling for his dad. It was Park Yoo-soo with his father after all the challenges they had faced. His mother highlighted to Jin-seok how difficult the journey to that point had been. He reassured them, saying they were all together again now. The woman had tears in her eyes upon hearing this. Jin-seok concluded by saying that everything would be okay. We begin this chapter by seeing the father's points displayed. He was putting Park Yoo-soo down on the ground. He then asked where his in-laws were. The woman replied that she didn't know, asking the same question in return. Jin-seok admitted that he hadn't found his parents either. Suddenly, Park Yoo-soo mentioned that they needed to find his big brother first, leaving his father confused. The boy explained that Kang Bakhyun could tell them where his grandparents were. He then asked his father to wake up the dead people lying on the ground. Jin-seok became even more confused by this. He was surprised that his son knew about his innate ability, as Yoo-soo wanted him to revive those dead people. However, Jin-seok explained to his wife that he didn't resurrect people. His ability was necromancy, allowing him to control corpses. Park Yoo-soo immediately told his father that he was the strongest there, and that they needed to find his brother quickly. From afar, someone was observing the happy family. It was a little person with white hair and green clothing with polka dots. Soon, this individual revealed themselves as an elderly woman who seemed very friendly. She was surrounded by men, and one of them asked if everything was to her satisfaction since the boss had ordered it so. She then asked if his name was Taekyeol. He confirmed, saying he was the boss's right-hand man. The woman informed him that he would have a long life, making him happy since the place didn't seem conducive to such a prediction. But the lady reaffirmed her forecast, warning him to be cautious of birds, which she would alert him about, dismissing any worries. He sincerely thanked her without hesitation. Meanwhile, the old woman had a thoughtful expression. She believed that Yusu would have to save her in the future. He needed to survive so that she could live as well. Suddenly, as she was thinking this, the woman began coughing heavily, making the man very concerned about her physical state. She explained that only when Yusu reached level 3 could he cure her lung cancer, saving her from death. Meanwhile, far away, the trio celebrated finding chips in a place like that. The three of them were greedily eating the delicious snack. Kim Manchiol remarked that, unlike page 1, there were no convenience stores nearby, making it very difficult to find food. Thus, it was essential to eat whenever possible. He also praised the delicious chips, saying he wanted to remember to buy them in the future. Suddenly, he started checking the points of the two teenagers. He wondered if they would be able to reach the top with their current scores. In the end, they might have to kill others. While thinking about these things, Kang Mina was watching him, looking rather puzzled. In the area where they were, there were many tiny people. There were also some mosquitoes with an exact score of 0.4 points. Several ants present had 0.3 points each, and a big frog had 1 life point. Upon learning about these scores, Kang Bak-hyun felt quite confused and scared. Kang Mina asked him if he wanted to take on the frog, but he replied that it would just be a waste of time. Kim Man-cheol agreed, saying it would only cause more harm than benefit in exchange for a measly point. Kang Bak-hyun noted that their pace had slowed, likely due to the incline of the area making walking more difficult. Suddenly, looking to his right, he noticed 2 guys walking as well. Their scores were 77 and 81 respectively. Kang Bak-hyun thought those scores were enviable. Then, out of nowhere, something very large fell from the sky. It struck the man in the blue shirt hard, knocking him to the ground. Kang Bak-hyun immediately pointed out the high likelihood of rain in the area. Suddenly, huge raindrops began falling from the sky. Several people were struck hard by them, collapsing to the ground. Loud, terrifying thunderclaps echoed through the area. Kim Man-cheol quickly decided that the 3 of them needed to run into the dense forest. The trio began running as fast as they could toward their goal. Meanwhile, the giant raindrops hit the ground like atomic bombs. One was about to hit dear Kang Mina directly. But without hesitation, Kang Bak-hyun used his modelable protective barrier to save his sister. He successfully shielded her from the potentially fatal deluge. Kim Man-cheol shouted for them to quickly enter the forest. The rain was now dangerously strong and relentless. They extended all the way to the tower and the divine pillar of light. Some pathways were already flooded with so much water. Many people in the area were swept away by the rushing water. Some of them were already dead, floating lifelessly in the water. The rain poured heavily in all directions, sparing no one. As the downpour continued, the trio commented that even light drizzles now felt like massive storms. Kim Man-cheol mentioned how lucky they were to have Kang Bak-hyun as an ally given his impressive ability. He wondered about the state of the people they had met on page 1. Meanwhile, strange noises were heard from within the dense forest. They seemed to be getting closer as time went on. Suddenly, shadows of several people appeared in the area, and with the ominous arrival of this unknown group, sometime after the rain stopped, the protagonist group begins to leave the forest. The muscular man says that it was good that the rain stopped earlier than expected. He comments that they should hurry before it's too late. Suddenly, someone starts screaming for help. It is a blonde man who is crushed by a rock, pleading for assistance. Analyzing the situation, Kim thinks it's surprising that this man has survived until now. Upon seeing this, Mina starts crying uncontrollably. She reveals that she was friends with one of the 2 who ended up being crushed. She explains that because of the points, they tried to kill each other. She also says that during a fight, a rock ended up crushing her friend and the blonde man was responsible. Desperate, he starts stuttering, saying that she is wrong and that the other one tried to kill him first. Completely enraged, Mina tells him not to lie and that he is only regretting it now. Still furious, she says that regardless of the current situation, he was still her friend's comrade, so she questions why he did it. Crying, the blonde Rock Lee says he is sorry and that he thought he wouldn't be able to reach the top with only 30 points. Still completely desperate, he says he was wrong and starts calling for help again. Nervous, the muscular man says that this guy wouldn't live long anyway, so he suggests they do something to increase their points. He explains that in the state the man is in, it would be more painful to keep him alive. At that moment, he shows a branch to Mina, saying that she should increase her own points. Meanwhile, the blonde Rock Lee keeps saying that he was wrong and admits it. Kim comments that he is not trustworthy since he tried to finish off his friend, and even if they left him alive, he wouldn't survive for long. Hearing all of this, Mina starts thinking about what she should do and then quickly rushes toward the bowl-cut man. However, she hesitates and says she can't do it. She then asks her brother to help remove the man from under the rock. At that moment, the hero uses his barrier ability to try to move the rock. A short time later, he succeeds without much difficulty. Approaching the man lying on the ground, the boy says that this is all they can do for him at the moment. Still crying, the man thanks them, saying that if he survives, he will repay the favor. Kang simply says that he hopes he manages to survive and sincerely prays for his survival. Still completely injured, the man thanks them again. After that, the entire group leaves. A short time later, the bowl-cut man remains on the ground, saying that he can't feel his legs. At that moment, he begins to hear several footsteps. It is a group of unknown people approaching. They are being controlled by the child's father. Yoon-sol notices the injured man on the ground and tells his family that they need to save him. Back to the protagonist's group, they find themselves in front of a giant pool of water. Kim comments that it looks like it will be difficult to cross this path. Back to the child's group, the child approaches the man, saying that he is the visible man they had seen before. In shock, the bowl-cut man questions how the child knows about his ability. Completely ignoring the question, the child turns to their mother and asks if she can amplify their ability. That way, their healing ability will reach level 2. In a very cute manner, the child says that now they can save the fallen man. They then approach and start using their level 2 healing ability. A few seconds later, the man realizes that his legs are healed. Not believing what just happened, he wonders if he is truly better now. Feeling very excited, he approaches the child and thanks them, saying he will never forget this favor. Seeing this, the father comments that his child's ability is great. However, the child says that it's not, as they still can't heal diseases or disorders, so they need to increase their level even more. At that moment, the bowl-cut man appears, thanking them once again for everything. Then, the child's father tells him to be careful on his journey and that they will meet at the top. Meanwhile, the child continues thinking about their brother Bake, saying that they will reunite soon. Back to the protagonist's group, the hero comments that it's too late for them to turn back and head toward the cable car. However, Kim explains that it seems like it will still be difficult to pass through this area. Bake says that they will probably need to go back and take the forest path. Already in the forest, they comment that there seems to be a trail not too far from their location. Kim mentions that many people have used the trail, so there aren't many obstacles along the way. In this particular forest, there are various insects ranging from flies to moths. Seeing this, the muscular man comments that there seem to be many animals and insects, and that if someone gets injured, it will be difficult to heal. Suddenly, the hero starts thinking about Aram, wondering if her arm is healed since he was able to see her back then. He soon recalls her crying, saying that he had promised to save her family. At this moment, the protagonist seems to have an epiphany. Desperate, he asks the man if, when he was on page 1, he went to Aram's house. Kim starts sweating nervously before answering. Khan comments that he had said he lost consciousness before going to her house, so he questions if he went straight to the Pillar of Light. With a trembling voice, the man says that he did go to Aram's house, but her family was already gone. Hearing this, the hero is left speechless. Not knowing what to say, the muscular man simply apologizes. With a sorrowful expression, the boy remembers that he had told Aram he would save her family and wonders if he should tell her the news. Without a second thought, he opens the mini-map to find her, but realizes that she is at the cable car. Mina asks if she went to the cable car by any chance, and her brother responds that she did. However, he explains that it seems like many people have gathered where the cable car is. Meanwhile, at the cable car, a large number of people have gathered in the same location. The giant old man is transporting each of the shrunken people. They thank him, saying he's the best. In the control room, one of the men comments that it looks like almost everyone's on board and asks if they should send it now. The cable car door then starts to close. The people become apprehensive as it begins to move. They feel relieved because they are now safe and wonder if they will arrive too early. Inside the cable car is the old man who was once giant, along with Aram. She quickly recalls when she asked Charles about her mother and little brother. He had told her that the men were asking other questions and that he would show her so she would know. Being completely sadistic, he shows her an image of her mother and little brother already lifeless, informing her that they were all gone. Seeing this image, Aram is completely in shock. He comments that she had seen her father die and says that, apparently, she no longer needs to let the rest of the family know about it. Back in the present, Aram remembers all of this and starts trembling. The table currently has 101 points. A man then approaches and asks her why the counter above her head is so high. With a sadistic smile, he comments that it seems she has finished off many people. He then asks if her parents know that she is doing this. Using his ability to stretch his hand, he announces that he's going to take all of her points. However, the old man becomes giant and grabs the man's hand, warning him that he should know when to stop. Nervously, the man insists that it was just a joke and asks if he can be released. Curious, the man asks the girl what her ability is and questions how she accumulated so many points. However, she simply tells him to get lost. Irritated, he asks where she got this kind of attitude. He then says that she can't act this way being so arrogant. Bothered by the entire situation, the old man simply tells him to be careful with what he says. However, the man then listens and questions how her parents raised her to be this way. Quickly, he ends up being thrown to the ground. In a fury, the spider used her ability on the man. His leg then moves on its own until it breaks. Feeling immense pain, the man starts rolling on the ground, cursing at her. The old man tries to stop her, but she warns him to let her go because she's going to kill this man. Everyone in the area starts getting nervous, questioning what is happening, and one person explains that the girls suddenly attacked the man. A large number of people then comment that she is terrifying. In the background, a group of 3 men is merely observing everything. It is the mayor, who is analyzing the entire situation. One of his subordinates asks him if they should do something. He explains that dangerous people like her need to be put under their control. Seeing this, the mayor agrees while wondering what the boy is talking about. Another subordinate then says that if they combine their forces, defeating a boy along with her will be very easy. Frightened by the situation, the mayor thinks that they are idiots and that they should not get involved with her on purpose. However, the bald man tells the mayor to wait a moment because they are both going to resolve this problem. One of them becomes very confident and then approaches the girl, asking if she doesn't see that everyone is scared. Sensing the malice in the man, both Aram and the old man begin to prepare themselves. Nervous, the mayor thinks that whatever happens from here on has no direct relation to them. Suddenly, the entire cable car starts to shake. Many people begin bumping into each other. In shock and stuttering, the mayor questions what is happening. One of the cables of the cable car is snapping. Because of this, the cable car starts swaying to one side, causing many people to crash against the wall. Everyone begins to panic. RM then tells the old man that with her power, she can only save one person. Quickly, she breaks the window of the cable car using her ability. Then she launches the old security guard toward the hole she created. Worried, the man calls out to Aram, questioning what will happen to the rest of the people. Without thinking twice, she leaps toward the hole as well. At that exact moment, the cable car's rope snaps. This causes it to plummet straight toward the ground. Both Aram and the old man just watch everything unfold from above. After crashing into the ground, the cable car explodes, leaving no hope that anyone survived. The girl then comments that it is impossible to save everyone using only their abilities, and that from now on, she will only save the people close to her. At that moment, the protagonist starts screaming. He then begins to vomit without any explanation. Not understanding anything, Kim asks if something happened. Kang then responds that the cable car ended up falling. With a sad and downcast expression, he says that countless people have lost their lives. Worried about the situation, the muscular man asks what happened to Aram. Then he explains that she and Mr. Choi are alive. He says that they must have survived using psychosis to fly and then questions if it was possible to save others from the cable car. However, Mr. Kim says that it must have already been difficult for Aram to save only herself and the old man Choi, let alone anyone else. Upon hearing this news, Mina just stays silent listening. Suddenly, a type of squirrel appears behind her. Her brother then approaches, shouting her name. On instinct, he uses his barrier ability to protect himself from the bite. At that moment, the squirrel ends up retreating. The hero tells Mina to come to him immediately. Understanding the situation, the boy manages to block the attack, but he cannot continue using the barrier in such an open area. Desperate to survive, Mina calls out to her brother, not knowing what to do. Without much time to think, the hero uses his barrier ability. Then he launches a powerful strike at the animal. Using his full strength, Kang manages to stop it. Defeated, the animal falls to the ground. Impressed, Kim says that he knew level 2 allowed him to manipulate the barrier freely, but he didn't know that he could also do something like this. With this, the protagonist's points increase from 54 to 58. Still impressed, the muscular man says that the boy's ability is truly incredible. Getting straight to the point, Kang says that they need to earn some points and that, in total, he only received 4. Suddenly, Charles appears at the scene. With a very strange expression, he congratulates him, saying that he has obtained 4 points. Seeing this figure, everyone begins to worry, asking what is going to happen now. The green-haired man explains that this is an announcement for everyone and that, at this exact moment, the first person has just arrived at the Pillar of Light. Stuttering, Kim is shocked that someone has already managed to reach the Pillar of Light so quickly. Snapping his fingers, Charles says that as an incentive, he will display it on the screen for everyone to see. At that moment, a large blue screen appears in the sky. Riding on top of a dog, a man heads toward the Pillar of Light. Charles starts laughing and says that apparently there aren't only bad humans in this world. Seeing this, Kim says that true winners like him and ordinary people like his group are on completely different levels. At the end of the day, Kim is sleeping peacefully in a part of the forest, while Mina and her brother are awake, talking. She comments that the muscular man really sleeps heavily. Getting straight to the point, she says that her brother must have a lot of questions and asks him to say what they are. She explains that she can sense what he is thinking even without reading his thoughts. Going directly to the topic, Kang asks when she knew that all of this was going to happen. Responding, Mina says that she doesn't know, then asks if he remembers how injured she was after their parents passed away. She explains that at that time, she didn't even have the will to continue living. However, at one exact moment while lying in a hospital bed, a strange window appeared before her eyes. She says that she wondered if she had gone insane. She also mentions that she couldn't move her hand, but just as she wished, the button was pressed. At that moment, her head was filled with all these images and messages. Then, a few months later, she made a miraculous recovery and finally returned home. She says that her brother sacrificed so much for her that it was difficult for him to resume his normal life. She explains that, just as that person had said, she began writing her novel. That person was a whisper. In this case, it was something that whispered only to Mina. It told her that she should let everyone know. However, Mina explains that the whisper told her that she couldn't tell people in person. That was the rule. So she soon questioned whether she had truly gone insane. She comments that now, looking back, all of this was for nothing, just to bring more people into the Pillar of Light. However, she says that the events that happened after everyone shrank didn't follow her plot at all. Only the part where everyone shrank. And the craziest part is that abilities like her brother's were exactly the ones she wrote in her novel. Surprised, the hero then asks if she really created an ability that allows someone to read other people's minds. Responding with another question, the girl asks if her brother remembers the accident in which their parents died. She says that at that moment she realized that the eyes of the person in front of her were filled with malice. Sometime later at dawn, Kim wakes up, yawning and stretching. Looking back, he notices that both the protagonist and his sister are still sleeping. Seeing the sun rising, he realizes that a lot of time has passed and that at this pace, they won't reach the top in time. After everyone wakes up, Kim suggests that they start hunting to gain some points since they don't know when they will reach the top. Agreeing, the hero says that they need to act quickly. With that in mind, they go searching to increase their points and Kim reaches 62. The hero, after defeating another insect, accumulates only 38 points. A short time later, everyone manages to defeat several insects to accumulate more points. Exhausted, Kim says that compared to the amount of time and energy they are using, the number of points they're gaining is too low. Then the boy says that catching insects like these is very inefficient. He soon remembers the blonde bowl-cut man and wonders if, at that moment, they should have finished him off. Especially because Mina, who doesn't know how to fight, couldn't have increased her points. Nervous, he thinks that if Mina's points get close to 0 in an hour, he will sacrifice himself for her. However, he suddenly receives a very strong slap across the face. Irritated, Mina starts crying and screaming, saying that he must not consider such things and questions if he has lost his mind. She states that she would rather die with him than be left alone in this place. Kim explains that the boy was planning to be killed by her, and that is completely insane. However, Kang argues that it's better than watching everyone die. Still angry, Mina says that she would rather die with everyone, as she had already said. The muscular man says that, to be honest, sometimes the way the boy thinks is really insane. He asks him if he has ever thought about the people who survive and how they feel. Hearing this, the protagonist just remains silent. Changing the subject, the muscular man says that, in any case, the small insects aren't giving enough points. So he suggests that maybe they need to fight a bigger animal, like the cat from page 1. Suddenly, he starts getting scared because he sees some kind of animal hidden in a bush. Everyone in the group becomes anxious and then realizes that it's a cat holding a rat in its mouth. At that moment, Kang prepares to use his ability, when suddenly he hears someone calling him little brother. It is Yunsu, who is sitting on top of the animal. Seeing this, the hero doesn't understand what is happening. The child then explains that he must finish off the rat because it is still alive. A short time later, the rat ends up being finished off by Mina. Her points then increase to 37. Not understanding anything, the boy asks the child how they found the group all this way. The child explains that they knew how to find their little brother and that they brought their father along. Kim comments that all of this is thanks to the foresight of Madame Choi. Jin Seop then introduces himself as the child's father, and his wife says that it's good to see them again. At that moment, Kang introduces his sister, Mina. Seeing this, the woman is happy that the boy was able to reunite with his sister, saying that it was a good job. Changing the subject, the hero asks how they managed to make the cat's body move. Jin Seop responds that it is a necromancer ability, which allows him to manipulate dead bodies and make them move whenever he wants. Impressed, the boy says that a necromancer is a very useful ability. However, the man explains that it is a dark ability and that when there are no corpses, he can't do anything because it has many restrictions. Then he asks about their abilities. Kim says that his is physical enhancement, allowing him to have immense strength, while Bak says that he can create a barrier of various sizes and shapes. Also impressed, the man says that they have 2 excellent abilities and then asks about Mina's ability. Nervously, Mina states that she can read other people's minds. At that moment, the man is extremely surprised. His expression suddenly changes. Even more nervous, Mina asks what's wrong with him. She then explains that she can't read the minds of people at a higher level than her and that right now, she can only read the minds of level 1 people. Relieved by this, Jin Seok's expression completely changes again, and he says that the ability to read minds is something incredible. However, he starts staring at her, making her uncomfortable. Joining the conversation, the child calls for their brother Bake, asking if they can use his minimap. They ask if there are any other animals nearby and say that they will go get them for the boy. However, Kang says that they don't have much time to spare. At that moment, the child says that their father's ability is very strong. With a suspicious look, the man wonders if the minimap is another ability. Meanwhile, Mina stares at him, unsure of what he is trying to do. Curious about this, the man asks back what the minimap means. The boy explains that the ability is his and that he can locate places, people, and anything that is alive. Surprised, the father asks if he has 2 abilities. Kang responds that it is something exclusive to him, and that it might be related to his job, which is Prince. Smiling, the man says that his own job is Necromancer, and asks if the Prince job has 3 or 4 stars. At that moment, the boy prepares to respond. However, he is interrupted by Mina, who informs them that her brother has 2 stars. The child then calls out to their big brother, asking when he will check the minimap because they want to go hunt animals. Nervous, the boy apologizes and says he will do it now. Looking at the minimap, he says that 10 meters to the left, there are 2 animals. The child then tells their parents that they should go there. A short time later, the family gets back on top of the cat. The hero asks if it's okay for their group to go instead. But Seok says that it's fine and that moments like this are when they should combine their strengths because everyone should take a break. Happy with the help, the protagonist tells them to be careful and have a safe journey. After they leave, Mina calls her brother, saying that they need to talk. Sometime later, when they are alone, the boy asks his sister what happened. His sister comments that it's about part Jin Seok and says that, if possible, he shouldn't stay too close to him. Not understanding anything, the boy asks why, saying that he seems like a nice person. At that moment, the protagonist starts thinking about what happened. With a scared expression, the boy then approaches and asks his sister if she read Jin Seok's mind. Explaining, the girl says that the man was desperately trying to find out how many stars the group had for some time now. She says that she doesn't know if they were trying to do something, but she explains that he doesn't show the same kindness as his wife or his child. Nervous, the protagonist wonders if he really is that type of person, even though he is earning points for his group. He understands that it doesn't seem to be the case, but he also realizes that no one knows how he will act when the time comes. Baek tells his sister that he will be careful but warns her not to read or reveal Kim's thoughts. He explains that if Kim finds out that Jin Seok knows he is level 2, then Jin Seok will say that she was lying. Nervous, his sister says that she understands the situation and that she won't do it. A short time later, the child appears, announcing that they have returned. Their family has brought an impressive number of animals. The child says that a falcon is worth 7 points, so Jin Seok tells Baek to go ahead. However, the protagonist seems somewhat suspicious about this. A short time later at night, both the hero's group and the child's family are sleeping in some kind of cave. The hero appears to be sleeping while sitting. At that moment, the child wakes up and calls for their father, asking if he is a good person. He remains silent for a moment, but then responds that he is. A few hours later at dawn, the boy is using his minimap ability. He says that the more time passes, the more people will likely become aggressive. Kang explains that if they return to the mountain trail, there could be many people there, and the situation could escalate into something tragic. Jin Seok says that they don't have time to waste, so he thinks it's better to keep going through the forest to continue earning points. Joining the conversation, Kim says that either way they will travel more efficiently now that they can use the cat. However, the man says that there is a problem. Upon seeing a woman, he explains that they cannot use decomposed bodies. He says that even if a body is dead, they can only use it if it is recently deceased. Hearing this, Kim swallows dryly and remains silent. Jin Seok also says that until he finds a new body to use, he is completely useless and just a burden at the moment. However, the boy says that this isn't true and that thanks to the man, they were able to earn several points. Hearing all of this, Mina continues to be suspicious of the man. Sometime later, everyone is walking through the forest. Jin Seok says that the road was already complicated when they were bigger, but it seems to have become even more difficult now. The child then tells their father that their foot is hurting. He crouches down so the child can climb onto his back. This makes the child very happy and relieved. Seeing this kind gesture, both Mina and Kang simply observe in silence. Changing the subject, Jin Seok asks Bak if he can locate a dead creature on the map, to which he responds that he cannot. The man then comments that if the boy could, it would be able to use the bodies to ride on them as they did last time. Joining the conversation, Kim suggests that they go hunting now and comments that probably one squirrel would be enough for everyone to ride. Deciding on this, Baek tries to locate a squirrel. A short time later, he informs them that he has found something. He says that it is about 50 centimeters away. He then suggests that they take their time hunting the creature since they are going that way anyway, as it is part of their path. A few steps later, he comments that he will check the location again. However, upon opening the screen, he is completely startled. He explains that the animal hasn't moved a single centimeter from its previous position. Kim then raises the possibility that the animal might be sleeping, and the boy agrees that it makes sense. He then suggests that everyone moves silently from now on. Walking without making any noise, Baek thinks that they are almost there. However, upon reaching the location, the boy is completely shocked. He realizes that it is a dog, and since there are several flies around it, it is most likely already dead. Looking to the side, they notice a note that says, "Adopt a pet." Someone comments that it seems like someone deliberately abandoned the dog deep in the forest, and that maybe they thought someone would find it. Seeing this horrible scene, the child begins to cry. With a trembling voice, they say that this means they have to use the dog as transportation. Their mother then hugs them to try to comfort them. Then Jae Seok comments that his son must be very sad and asks if they should say goodbye to the dog like they did with the cat. Junsu approaches the dog and asks it to rest in peace. Suddenly, Mina puts her hand over her mouth as if she is feeling sick and then runs to a bush. Kim comments that she probably has a weak heart despite her appearance and tells the boy to go check on her. Kang asks Mina if she's okay. He tells her that she shouldn't witness this kind of thing, but she explains that that's not it. Crying, she says that when Jae Seok petted the dog's head, he was smiling. This information leaves her brother in complete shock. With a sorrowful expression, she explains that he thought it was great that they did this to the dog while petting it. At that moment, the boy becomes completely tense and wonders if it wouldn't be better for the group to separate. Responding, Vina says no, because the man would become suspicious if the group suddenly separated. Worried, her brother asks if she read his mind. With a trembling voice, Mina then apologizes and Baek gently asks her not to read his mind from now on. He comments that she had told the man that he was level 2 earlier, and if he finds out she can read minds, he will know she was lying. Once again, her brother apologizes and says he is really sorry. A short time later, the man approaches the dog to control it. Using his special necromancer ability, the dog quickly rises. Jin Seok asks the group if they should leave now. However, the trio is extremely nervous. Sometime later, everyone is already on top of the dog. Jin Seok asks Bak to check if there are any animals nearby on the minimap. Kang informs them that he detects something 10 meters to the right. At that exact moment, the man tells everyone to hold on tightly. With a terrifying look, he quickly intensifies his ability, ordering the dog to start running toward the squirrel. The dog rushes toward the squirrel and successfully catches it. At that moment, one of the birds is captured by the protagonist's ability. A short time later, the trio goes after a rabbit. Facing the animal, Kim thinks that it is very large. Using his physical enhancement ability, he quickly charges at the animal, striking it in the face. With just one hit, he manages to defeat the giant rabbit. This leaves both the protagonist and the siblings impressed. By late afternoon, everyone gathers and Jin Seok asks how many points they have earned. In this case, Kim has 40 points, Mina has 22 points, and Kang has 20. Exhausted, he thinks that they have been hunting for 5 hours and still only gained this amount of points. At that moment, he remembers that Jin Seok has been using necromancy since early morning and starts wondering if he's okay. The man, in turn, comments that Baek looks exhausted. Responding, the boy says yes and explains that his ability consumes a lot of stamina, then asks if Jin Seok is also tired. The man says that he only awakened the carcass, so it wasn't exhausting for him, and apologizes for not being able to capture many prey. At that moment, Kang says that it's okay and explains that they are grateful for the family's help. However, he observes the counter above Jin Seok's head, indicating 60 points. At that moment, the man says that they need to move quickly and that they won't be able to live well since it's getting dark. However, the hero says that they can still use the minimap. At this moment, Jin Seok says that it's fine and that they should rest for an hour before continuing. Kang agrees, saying that thanks to the dog, they were able to travel faster, and if everything goes well, they can reach their destination in less than a day. Sometime later, everyone in the group is sleeping, except for the hero, who seems to be deep in thought. Looking at the sky, he realizes that things that were once normal in the past are gradually disappearing. He then starts questioning the purpose of continuing to survive in this world. Not too far away in another part of the forest, some kind of lightning appears and several people emerge from it. They all say that they are tired and should take a break for now. The children's father asks if they are okay, and they respond that they are. He also says that it's good that they were able to reunite thanks to the children's ability, which allowed them to travel to the location. The woman says that some people have the ability to see long distances, which allowed them to observe the location and open the portal. The man then says that they should wait a little longer since they are getting closer to the Pillar of Light. In the background, another man says that the boy was not the Messiah and questions whether everything he had said so far was a lie. However, the old man says that he wasn't lying and that it's true that there will be salvation. But the other man asks if everything he has done so far has truly been salvation and questions when the Pillar of Light will actually become a place of salvation. At that moment, the woman gently asks him to lower his voice. Then another man appears and asks if reaching the Pillar of Light will actually be the end for everyone. The director listens to all of this in silence. One of the men approaches him, asking him to say something, while another questions whether he really can't see the future. At that moment, the old man says that they shouldn't worry. Smiling, he says that all of this was planned by the Father of Heaven and that even their own sins were part of his plan. However, his followers did not believe what he said, and one of them tells him to draw something with his ability, just like he did before. They ask if he is trying to deceive everyone. At that moment, the old man begins to sweat nervously. With a trembling voice, he explains that he has never deceived anyone. Then he takes several papers out of his coat. Still nervous, he says that the problem is that they cannot escape. Looking down, he begins to talk about God's judgment. However, he is quickly interrupted by a fatal blow. He collapses to the ground, dropping the papers. Upon seeing his head, everyone is completely terrified. The man starts to feel dizzy after being attacked. He falls to the ground in the middle of the crowd, who watch the scene in horror. A scream fills the area and those present wonder what just happened. Suddenly, other bodies begin to fall from the sky. High above, a man with wings appears, carrying another person. The tattooed man says that it's incredible and that it was good he had done everything earlier, while the other says he can now collect all the points. On the ground, the group wonders who those two are, while someone suggests retaliating. But before they can take any action, they are struck by a cloud of dust. The winged man asks the other what he thinks of his ability, while the young man celebrates that everything happened according to his plan. Without understanding what is happening, the people on the ground are thrown far away. One of the men tries to hold on but is struck in the neck. The other members of the group are also hit and red liquid sprays across the entire area. The family desperately tries to shield 2 children from being struck. Worried, the father asks Meijin and Mayan to open the dimensional portal right away and questions whether they can do it. The little girl says that she cannot return to the place where she was before and that she knows nothing about the road ahead. Desperate, the man says it doesn't matter. They just need to open the portal. Holding hands and spinning, the girls try to do as their father asked, but they fail. Jin Seok encourages them not to give up and to keep trying. The winged man lands on the ground, grabbing his friend. At that moment, the tattooed man says that he used more points than Soyoung and that now it's the other's turn. He also says that there are still some people left, so he will act as the tank. The family panics upon seeing the 2 men standing before them. Determined, the winged man says he will return. Bravely, the mother tells the children not to worry about the 2 men and to focus on opening the portal. Without hesitation, she unleashes an attack toward the duo. An explosion occurs, and through the smoke, the winged man appears, smiling. The tattooed man laughs and says that his defense is absolute and perfect. After failing her defense, the mother begins trembling with fear, and suddenly, red liquid appears on her body. She collapses to the ground, unable to move anymore. Watching the scene in terror, the father cries out for his wife. Still alive, the woman pleads with her children to flee immediately. Tired of the situation, the black-haired man tells his companion to kill the young woman already and warns that the girls seem to have teleportation abilities. But the 2 little girls continue spinning non-stop. Tears fill the mother's eyes as she watches. The winged man steps onto the young woman's body, holding a stone in his hands. With great force, he throws the object at the woman, killing her. Unable to believe what he has just seen, the father runs toward the murderer in desperation. He holds a staff of fire at its tip, ready to strike his opponent. But suddenly, he stumbles and falls to the ground, sending his weapon flying in the other direction. The tattooed man tells Soyoung that it's too dark and that he can't see him. Then, he asks his friend what he's doing and tells him to hurry up and kill that man. Grabbing the stone again, the man states that he doesn't have something like a sword, so his weapon is a bit inconvenient. The little girls keep spinning, focused on opening the portal, and a light begins to emerge from the ground. Still lying down, Jin Seok urges the children to hurry. But the 2 stop when they see that their father is about to be killed and scream for him. Without hesitation, the man orders the 2 to leave immediately. He is struck by the stone, but the young girls escape while looking back, seeing their father one last time. The winged young man wonders if they lost the children, but the other says it doesn't matter since they have already earned enough points. After killing several people, they decide to follow that plan again next time, but first they decide to clean up the mess they made. Using an ability, the tattooed young man manages to cover the bodies and jokes that it's something ecological, while the other calls him an idiot. Both fly away from the scene after the action. A blue lightning bolt cuts through the sky toward a large tower in the city. Many people walk in groups through the forest. Baekhyun observes and tells his sister that there are more people in the area this time, and the girl confirms that they have been surpassed. Another man in the group notices that the elderly climbed quite quickly despite their advanced age. Hearing this, one of the elderly men says that he and his friend were the president and vice president of the mountaineering group, and that was their secret. Curious, the other old man asks where the group came from since he noticed they seem to have stepped in a lot of mud. The young man says they passed through a slope. Friendly, the old man asks if they came accompanied by their son and comments that the young man is quite elegant. But the man in the blue jacket says the boy with him is not his son. In disbelief, the president of the Mountaineering Association asks for the dude's age, and both say they are 36 years old. The response leaves everyone in the conversation a bit perplexed. Even so, the old man says that the young man looks like he is in his 50s, not his 30s. Laughing, he asks if it's a joke from the old man. But the man says he is not joking and asks what hardships the man in the blue jacket has gone through. His friend bursts into laughter and says his colleague looks like an elderly man. He is quickly scolded by the president, who says the young man is just aging a little faster. Unbothered, the dude laughs and says the 2 elderly men are quite funny. Manshul asks the other if he really is 36 years old, and decides to shake the young man's hand, saying that since they are the same age, they could talk more comfortably. Both shake hands and begin a more direct conversation. The younger-looking man asks the other if he got married and has a wife and child, but the man says he is still single. Surprised, the young man asks what his friend has been doing. After all, 36 is an age when practically everyone's already settled. Laughing, he says that's a joke, but that his new friend is really in shape. Embarrassed, he thanks Manshul for saving his son's and wife's lives. He also says he heard that the young man saved other people and that he was courageous fighting against the cat. But the young man doesn't like it much and says it's embarrassing for those past stories to be mentioned. Keeping the conversation going, the other says he wants to be strong like Shul and that his ability is useless. The information surprises the man, and he says the young man's ability is incredible. They continue their journey talking about their lives, abilities, and where they have reached at 36 years old. Kyul suggests that they become friends since their abilities are insufficient. That way, they could combine their strengths to overcome obstacles. The young man agrees but becomes thoughtful about his new friend's level. Mina observes the scene and reflects. The whole group continues on their way. Suddenly, a smell catches Baekhyun's attention, and Chul says it's the smell of blood. They reach a clearing surrounded by trees and freeze. There are some bodies scattered among the leaves. The protagonist is in complete shock at the scene. In disbelief, he wonders what happened in that place. Mina senses the presence of people in the area and warns her brother to activate his barrier. Quickly, the young man unleashes his power and protects the entire group with him. A shadow appears in the middle of the forest. Chul asks who that person standing in front of them is. The protagonist's sister suggests they hide somewhere. Everyone moves behind a huge tree and remains silent, hidden. Using her abilities, Mina says there are 4 people. One is the one who threw the sharp object, and another can track locations. Hearing what the girl says, the young man concludes that the enemies must be level 1. Chul asks what the adversary's goal is, and the girl states that they are trying to earn a lot of points, and that one of the men keeps talking about the group's location. Determined, the man in the blue jacket calls for Baekhyun and says they should do it together. The man also says that it's okay and that they are both stronger when they fight together. Besides that, he concludes that they have plenty of time, but the protagonist states that it is not the right time yet. He says that no one should go anywhere until they discover what abilities their opponents have. Then Chul asks what the young man is planning to do. The protagonist suggests that Mrs. Seonhui strengthened Mr. Jinsuk's ability, but she says she cannot strengthen someone who is level 2. Baekhyun thinks for a moment and then suggests that she strengthened Yoon Soo's ability instead, while the other young man controls the elderly men's bodies. Decided, the boy announces that he and his sister will attack the enemies from behind to investigate more about their powers. Chul worries about the strategy and says that the boy only has his barrier to defend himself, but the protagonist reassures him, saying that he practiced something beforehand. He shows an ability emerging from his hands, and he states that it is no longer just a simple barrier. Quickly, he unleashes the power which spreads through the forest and strikes the leaves in the area. Without a second thought, he says that Chul must protect Yoon Soo, and that it will be necessary to heal quickly if injured. The man agrees and says he will do as proposed. One of the young men who had been killed begins to rise from the ground, his eyes glowing. Jinsuk thinks that he can use those bodies for a while, but it takes a lot of effort just to get them to move. Suddenly, Mina screams, saying there is something in front of the young man. A man with feathered arms appears and stares at the group. Irritated, Jinsuk orders the dead he controls to attack him. However, the feather-armed man throws a sharp object, injuring the already lifeless man. Trying to defend himself, Baekhyun begins to cultivate his ability with his hands. He launches his power toward the opponent, but the adversary is extremely fast, closes his arms, and manages to repel the attack. Surprised, the protagonist wonders if his attack didn't work. Then he sees that the enemy has 359 points and questions how many beings the man must have killed to have that amount. Chul says that this was expected and that now he will need to step in. As he attempts to attack the opponent, a power comes toward him. Mina screams, urging the man to dodge. But it's too fast and the young man ends up injured with red liquid dripping from his arm. Baekhyun reflects that they cannot get close due to the aerial knife user. He asks Yoon Soo to heal the man in their group first. Using her healing ability, the little girl begins to mend all of her comrades' wounds. The man thanks her for the care. Then the protagonist suggests that they split into 2 groups. He makes the division and asks Chul to handle the steel man while being healed by Yoon Soo. And in the meantime, he, his sister, and Jinsuk will face the ultrasonic user and the aerial knife user. Curious, the man asks if Mina will read the attacks while the protagonist counters with the barrier and wonders what his role in the trio will be. This makes Baekhyun think of a task for the young man in that situation. After assigning the task, Jinsuk asks if his role won't be too dangerous, but the young man insists that they have no other choice. Mina suddenly shouts that something is coming toward the group. As planned, they split into 2, each heading in a different direction. Fearful, the protagonist asks Jinsuk to help them. The man then gains speed and runs through the forest. He yells loudly as he runs at high speed. Something almost hits the young man's head, but he manages to dodge it. Terrified, the man curses after nearly being struck by the attack. Then he realizes he was used as bait and wonders if it was intentional. Nearby, Baekhyun and his sister walk protected by the barrier. He thinks that the ultrasonic user wouldn't be able to detect them using the spherical barrier, since ultrasound is only useful when reflected. Mina warns that the aerial knife user is about 25 meters away from them, and her brother suggests that they approach silently. One of the opponents talks to Soyoung and tells the woman to move a little to the right. The protagonist celebrates that he has found the dew he was looking for. The female adversary says that even though it's a bit dark, she can still track the other group's movement, and the man adds that it's only a matter of time before they win the duel. Analyzing the situation, Baekhyun realizes that the opponent is an ultrasonic user. He lifts a large leaf and asks Mina to hide under it. Once again, he begins to cultivate a new power in his hands, but he hesitates, wondering if he would be capable of killing a person. However, he knows that if he doesn't kill the duo, they will be the ones to die. Without a second thought, the protagonist forcefully launches his power toward the opponents. Soyoung notices and is startled by the sudden attack. The one is hit directly by the ability launched by the boy. She falls dead on the ground to the despair of the man who was with her. Baekhyun becomes nervous and begins to say how sorry he is for his actions. Afraid, the young man runs away from the scene. trying to escape. Jinsuk returns and asks if the boy has dealt with all the others. The protagonist says he dealt with only one member of the group, but he doesn't know about the rest. Quickly, the man says that now it is his turn and decides to revive the body first. The woman rises from the ground, looking like a zombie. Jinsuk snaps his fingers and orders her to stop, but the young woman falls to the ground again and remains lifeless. The members of her group approach and call out her name. A red-haired young man wonders if the woman was murdered by Baekhyun. Mina shouts for her brother to run away, knowing that the man can use hypnosis. Speaking through thoughts with his sister, the young man tells her to flee first and assures her that he will guard that place before joining her and Chul. Not understanding, the girl asks what he means. But there is no time and Baekhyun tells her she must escape immediately. Stammering, she tries once more to call out to her brother. Then she realizes she can no longer read the young man's mind and wonders if he is already being hypnotized. Mina knows she must seek help. Once again, she shouts for her brother to wait in place while she runs desperately. The red-haired young man is frustrated to see that he has lost sight of the girl. Crying, the masked man kneels beside Soyeon's body and begs for her forgiveness, regretting that he couldn't sense the enemy sooner. He screams, pleading for forgiveness from the dead. Covering his entire body with a barrier, the protagonist realizes that this way he can block the hypnosis. Approaching, the red-haired young man orders both boys to kneel and to bang their heads against the ground. The two follow the hypnotist's command. Still crying, the masked man continues calling out for his friend while the other questions how long he will stay in that state. He also says it would have been much more effective if he had been with Soyeon, and that this situation was bound to happen since they were a couple, and the man clung to the girl like glue. Irritated, a crying man gets up from the ground and goes to confront his group companion. Fearlessly, the hypnotist says that if the man thinks something is unfair, he is welcome to fight him. Then he asks not to be hated so much and states that he will let the man kill Baekhyun to avenge his girlfriend. Using his power, he begins to hypnotize his own group mate, and he commands him to kill the protagonist, who remains kneeling with his head against the ground. Forcing himself, the man grabs a rock and moves toward the boy. Laughing, the red-haired young man says he enjoys killing people without dirtying his hands. As he approaches to throw the rock, the protagonist, who is on the ground, suddenly gets up and starts running toward the hypnotist, who is caught off guard. Kang knows he must grab the opponent before he can use his hypnosis, but the young man snaps his fingers. Before he can activate his ability, the red-haired young man is struck in the chest by the opponent's power. He falls to the ground as red liquid splashes all over the place. Once again, Baekhyun feels slightly troubled by what he just did. Irritated, Jinsuk questions how his teammate dares to do something like that to him. Then he makes Soyeon come back to life and run toward her boyfriend. Possessed by the other man, she grabs the young man and throws him to the ground. Kang speaks to his companion, and Jinsuk asks him to observe carefully. The young man approaches the controlled woman holding a rock in his hands. Without hesitation, he throws the rock, saying he only has 190 points. Then he realizes that the red-haired young man is still alive and is trying to say something. To finish it quickly, he approaches, still holding the same rock, and asks Baekhyun if he's okay with him taking care of the young man. Irritated, he questions how the man dared to manipulate him in such a way. Elsewhere, Yoon-sun channels her powers into Chul and asks him to fight until he can't anymore. The child says she will heal the man every 5 minutes. Revitalized, the young man screams and rises with all his strength. He runs toward the man with feathered arms and grabs him by the arm. Impatient, the man says that it's good, but it's useless. When he tries to strike, Chul defends himself with his arms crossed. The opponent says he will end this situation immediately. Both clasp their hands together and test their strength. Many powers are launched against each other. Chul injures his hand, but using his own power, quickly heals himself. He celebrates that Yoon-su's ability is truly incredible. The man with feathered arms says that his opponent is stronger than he had imagined. Thoughtful, the man in the blue jacket says he will only get tired if this continues this way and if the boy's ability stops working. But he remembers the protagonist's request, who warned him not to think about fighting, just to buy time and endure. While he reflects, the opponent says that the young man shouldn't ignore him. Without backing down, he asks who is ignoring him while landing a punch to his ribs. Understanding what is happening, the man asks if the young man is trying to buy time, thinking his allies will return. And he laughs, saying that he is mistaken. After all, there is someone who can use hypnosis in the area. Suddenly, Mina appears running and calls out to Mr. Chul. She screams desperately, warning that her brother is in danger. Laughing mockingly, the man with feathered arms says that while his opponent is fighting, the others must already be dead. But he thinks that if that's truly the case, the rest of the group must have already become puppets in Choi Tae-seb's hands. He suggests that Chul should run before the rest of the hypnotized group comes after them. Then the red-haired young man appears in the forest, much to his companion's relief. Observing him, he realizes that the man, like the others, looks like a zombie, Controlled by Jin-seok, Chota grabs a piece of wood and strikes the young man. Shul and Mina stand in confusion over what just happened. They don't understand why their own allies are attacking the man. Desperate, the opponent screams while being attacked by Soyoung and her boyfriend. Jin-seok appears behind the group with an intimidating expression. He thinks to himself that all of this is irritating. Lying on the ground, the man with feathered arms remembers the young man and says that he is the same person from before. At that moment, the man prepares to finish off his two comrades. However, Jin-seok orders him to stop, saying it is not yet time to finish the enemy. Quickly, the red-haired young man obeys the command of his new master. The metal-skilled brute is lying on the ground but still alive. At that moment, everyone tenses up, including the protagonist. Then Jin-seok calls his wife, saying that she should kill this man to become a level 2. He explains that this way their son's healing power will increase to level 3, and his necromancy ability will also benefit. Upon hearing his proposal, the woman becomes extremely tense. But her husband explains that they are merely getting revenge. She agrees but gently asks her husband to take their son somewhere where he won't see what is about to happen. After that, Seo-yoon picks up a rock and approaches the man. With a trembling voice, Bullcut warns that everyone will get their own karma. Without giving him time to say anything else, the woman simply finishes him off. Instantly, her score rises to 339. A hologram appears in the sky, and Charles congratulates her. Everyone is confused and questions what that means. The green-haired man explains that someone killed the steel swordsman and has just reached level 4. Then he asks if he should reveal the honorable protagonist at this moment. At that, Charles decides to display the woman's picture. Not understanding anything, she is shocked, while her surprised husband wonders if Seo-yoon has really reached level 4. Stammering, the woman asks her husband if there's anything wrong with that, but he simply says that she is right. Baek explains to Kim that the number of abilities someone at level 4 can learn is different from other levels. Impressed, the muscular man asks when they can do the same, and the boy says perhaps when they reach the next pillar. Joining the conversation, the child says that this isn't the only advantage. She explains that those who reach level 4 will be able to survive with the revealer until the end. Curious, Kim asks where she heard that. Then the child explains that her father told her, which surprises Jin-seok. The mini Rock Lee says that his father also mentioned that many people will die. Nervous, Jin-seok asks his son what exactly he is talking about. Nunsu explains that he saw in the future what Grandma showed him. He mentions that to obtain stronger bodies, his father ended up killing both his mother and his older brother. Crying, the child states that he needed to tell everyone about this. Additionally, Bullcut also says that Big Sister is the revealer. This surprises both the protagonist group and Jin-seok himself. Both the man and Mina begin to question this revelation. Going back a little in time, Jin-seok asks Charles what he needs to do to survive. The green-haired man responds that Jin-seok is different from all the humans he has encountered so far. However, he warns the man that he will not be able to ask anything else besides this question. He explains that his ability is called necromancy, and that it can be considered the strongest ability. He also says that it is useless if the body decomposes or if there are no bodies nearby. However, he reveals that this is the least important aspect of his ability. He explains that it will become complete if he reaches level 2, because at that point he will be able to use the abilities of the bodies under his control, even though there will be a limit to the number of bodies he can manage. And if he manages to acquire powerful bodies, he will also become stronger. He continues by saying that when he reaches level 3, he will be able to preserve bodies for a longer period. Upon hearing all of this, Jin-seok understands that he needs to accumulate points to level up. With a friendly smile, Charles says that he likes the man and will tell him one more thing. Completely changing his expression, he explains that for Jin-seok to survive until the end, he must find the revealer. Then, before leaving, he simply informs him that he must discover the details on his own. Changing the subject entirely, Jin-seok asks about his wife and son. Laughing, Charles questions why he is only asking about them now. Mockingly, he comments that Jin-seok is a very interesting man. Back to the present, Mina observes Jin-seok trembling. With an enlightened expression, he tells himself that he has found her. Going back in time again, the family encounters several bodies on the ground. At that moment, the man approaches to finish off another body lying there. Shocked, the woman questions whether he is being too cruel. However, Jin-seok explains that it is deplorable, but it is reality. Seeing the notification that he has leveled up to 3, he states that only he is capable of killing. Looking at his wife, he informs her that this is the only way for him to survive through all of this. Shocked by everything she has just seen, the woman takes her son and walks away in another direction. At that moment, the man recalls what Charles told him. He quickly realizes that after hearing those words, he managed to level up using his remaining points. At that moment, he controls a body to use its abilities. Happy that it worked, he understands that if he can use this ability to its fullest potential, he will be able to survive very easily. He affirms that he just needs to reach level 3 on the next page and then find the revealer. Conscious and confident, he declares that he will find the revealer and survive until the end. Returning to the present, Jin-seok questions the group about deceiving him from the beginning. Not understanding anything, the boy simply asks what the man is talking about. At that moment, Jin-seok's wife calls him, asking why he is acting that way. Completely out of his mind, the man starts yelling at her to be quiet because she knows nothing. With a cold expression, he begins to question whether he should spare her. He realizes that their cooperation is not beneficial and that when he reaches level 3, he will also be able to use the preservation ability. He quickly concludes that it doesn't matter what the revealer is, as long as he has her body, everything will be fine. Reading her enemy's thoughts, Mina begins to tremble, questioning how he could think that way. Irritated, Jin Seok questions whether she just read his mind and comments that she had claimed she couldn't do that with people above level 1. Completely enraged, he starts calling them traitors and cursing them. Sensing the man's intentions, Mina asks her brother to dodge. At that moment, he uses his barrier to protect himself. Kim does not understand what is happening and asks if the man can use the abilities of the bodies. Laughing like a madman, Jin Seok questions whether they thought they were the only ones hiding their abilities. Confused, the boy asks the man why he is doing this now. Suddenly, several of the necromancer's corpses start moving toward the group. Kim manages to use his physical strength to block the attacks. Meanwhile, the protagonist uses his barrier to protect himself and his sister. With a trembling voice and stuttering, the child's mother calls out to her husband. Not understanding anything, she gently asks him to stop this. A little later, Kim feels intense fatigue in his arm, thinking how difficult it is to hold off the man without the child's healing powers. At the same time, the hero understands that they cannot move recklessly because Jin Seok can also use the hypnosis ability. Meanwhile, the woman keeps begging Jin Seok to stop, but he simply tells her not to distract him. Then he questions whether she is not his wife and asks why she is not by his side. Mina warns her brother that the bodies are not moving since Jin Seok is ignoring them, so she asks him to close the barrier. Irritated, the man realizes that he cannot use his hypnosis ability. He wonders if he accidentally hit his head too hard and thinks that it will be the end if he cannot use his ability. Then Mina loudly comments to her brother that Jin Seok cannot use his hypnosis ability. At that moment, the boy shouts to Kim, telling him to attack Jin Seok now. Without thinking twice, the maniac simply lets go of his wife. But quickly, the muscular man appears and gives him no chance to do anything. And with just one punch, Jin Seok is sent flying. Seeing the effect of the attack on the bodies, the protagonist informs the man that the attack worked. Charging forward with all of his strength, Kim declares that he will put the judge in this guy's head. Reacting quickly, Jin Seok uses his ability, ordering the metal-armed man to launch an attack toward Kim. However, the hero successfully uses his barrier to block it. In a flash, the muscular man grabs Jin Seok by his coat. Furious, he declares that the man needs to pull himself together, then lands a powerful punch to his head, sending him flying. After this punch, the man's ability is deactivated. Surprised by the immediate effect, Kim wonders if he might have hit him too hard. At that moment, the entire group descends the hill to check on the body. Upon reaching the location, they realize that Jin Seok is still alive but badly injured. The boy gently asks him to stop, stating that they do not want to fight him and that he should think about his wife and son. The woman gently pleads with her husband not to act like this. Irritated, the man insists that it was the group that deceived him, while thinking that he needs a body to do something. At that moment, he notices a strange smell. Looking to the side, he sees a hand. He then walks toward it and realizes that something very strange is happening. Smiling, he understands that beneath this ground there are many bodies. Suddenly, the man starts laughing uncontrollably, leaving everyone in the group extremely confused. Without thinking twice, he begins using his necromancer ability. Quickly, several bodies begin to emerge from the ground like zombies. Jin Seok declares that this is round 2, and that he will take points from everyone except the child. One of the zombies is the father of the 2 children who created the portal. In shock, Kim questions whether these people are the followers of the Messiah. At that moment, the zombie followers charge toward the group, but Baek manages to use his barrier ability to protect them. Meanwhile, Kim strikes them down one by one with his bare hands. Near him, a red-haired zombie begins using a fire ability, launching a massive amount of flames in his direction. However, Baek successfully protects the muscular man using his barrier ability. After that, the protagonist launches a type of crystal from his barrier toward the zombie, hitting him. However, Jin Seok says that Baek can keep trying to block as there are still plenty of bodies available, many with skilled abilities he can use. Emerging from the ground, a body activates its ability, transforming into a Hulk-like creature. Quickly, this red Hulk charges at the muscular man, striking him with full force and knocking him to the ground. Seeing the monster, Baek uses his barrier to protect himself. However, Kim swiftly approaches and lands a powerful punch to the monster's face. Working as an excellent duo, Kim uses his barrier ability to finish off the monster by launching several crystals at him. But when they look to the side, they realize there are still many more bodies. Exhausted, Kim says that this is endless. Seeing all of this, Jin Seok comments that it looks like Baek can no longer use his barrier. At that moment, Kim tells the boy to stay behind him. Completely exhausted, Baek thinks that he has drained his energy, but there are still many bodies remaining. He understands that the opponent can only revive one more body, but Kim cannot handle them all alone. Growing nervous, the muscular man begins to focus on the possibility of breaking through everything at once to strike Jin Seok. Without thinking twice, he charges at all the zombies, striking them down one by one. However, Jin Seok is controlling a zombie in the rear. She begins using her ability, launching several projectiles toward Kim. After being hit in the chest, the man falls to the ground, worrying his entire team. With a cold expression, Jin Seok says that now is the time for punishment. All the zombies under his control move toward the group. Not knowing what to do, the protagonist tries to strike one of the zombies, but feels no effect at all. Completely sadistic and maniacal, Jin Seok reveals that he never liked the protagonist from the beginning. He explains that the protagonist collaborated with his little sister to deceive him. He also says that the boy kept giving orders as if he were superior. At that moment, the protagonist looks up and realizes that a zombie is holding a rock ready to finish him off. Seeing all this, Kim and Mina are in shock. Smiling like a madman, Jin Seok simply says that now the boy will go to heaven. However, some kind of rubble is launched in his direction, hitting him. Looking to the side, he questions what is happening. Then he orders the zombie in the rear to attack the enemy. Upon being hit, the invisible man ends up falling to the ground. Along with him, Jin Seok also collapses, seemingly gravely injured. Suddenly, all the controlled bodies stop moving. Not understanding anything, the muscular man questions what just happened. Lying on the ground, Bull Cut from earlier says that he had not planned this. At that moment, the protagonist realizes that this was the man who had been crying earlier. Then the blonde man asks if, by any chance, he managed to repay his debt from that time. After the question, the man closes his eyes, passing away. Fear takes hold of Jin Seok as he realizes that his counter has also disappeared. Seeing that her husband has died, the woman starts crying. Their son apologizes to his father, saying that he knew this was how it would end but had no other choice. He says that even if he hadn't killed him in the end, his father would have still killed many people. Sometime later, near the blue pillar, the group appears to have gathered enough points so they approach it. Nearby, Charles congratulates them, saying they were better than he expected. He quickly concludes that they all have a little potential. Seeing the protagonist's face, he asks if he is angry. He continues by saying that the people the protagonist has killed so far were just doing their best to survive. With a sadistic smile, he warns the group that if they maintain this attitude, it will not be able to last in the next page. Irritated, Kang asks how much longer this will last, and Charles says that it all depends on him. Getting straight to the point, the green-haired man asks everyone to enter the Pillar of Light. Kim then asks the hero if everyone is safe, and the boy responds that he is not so sure at the moment. With his head down, he says he hopes they can reunite inside. Sometime after entering the Pillar of Light, the hero's group is searching for someone. At that moment, they find the old woman who foresaw the future. Approaching her, she asks about the burden she placed on her son. Crying, she gently pleads to bring Yun-Soo back. The old woman then approaches the child and comments that it must have been difficult. Tearing up, Bull Cut says that he did his best. Hugging the child, the old woman apologizes for making him feel bad and suffer in this way. Upon seeing this, the child begins to cry uncontrollably. The old woman continues, saying that the boy saved them all. At that moment, the child's mother gently asks the woman not to do this again in the future. She argues that she does not want her son to live this way. The old woman thinks that even though she said many people were saved, she understands that at this pace, it might not have meant anything, because in the end, people will die when their time comes. Suddenly, a hologram of Charles appears in the Pillar of Light. He congratulates everyone present for surviving up to this point. Getting straight to the point, he says he would like to applaud them all for their efforts. He also comments that all wounds will be healed inside the Pillar of Light so they can recover. After that, he asks if he can give a brief explanation about the next page. However, Kim intervenes, saying they need to know why this was done to everyone. But Charles replies that there is no point in knowing such things now. Another person joins the conversation, agreeing with Kim and also questioning how long all of this will last. Everyone starts revolting, saying they need to know the reason. Intrigued, Charles then asks if that is the question everyone wants to ask. The green-haired man comments that he was going to answer each question individually, but if they want it this way, there's no problem. Snapping his fingers, he transports the entire group to some kind of dimension. In shock, Kang questions what this place is. Looking closely, he realizes that in front of him is planet Earth. However, there is a layer of various creatures that look like aliens surrounding it. All the people look at these creatures, calling them disgusting. Charles explains that the intelligence of these organisms is far beyond human comprehension. However, they are also instinctive and senseless creatures. He states that these creatures are driven by a peculiar purpose and instinct. One of the men says that this cannot be true. Seeing this, Charles comments that this is why he said it would be pointless to know all of this. Getting straight to the point, the man explains that this entire universe is a hell and their suffering is nothing significant. Beck then asks what this has to do with them turning into insects and being tortured. Charles is confused by this question and asks whether they should not all be grateful to them. He explains that they were given special abilities and that their bioenergy is limited, so they decided to condense this energy by making everyone smaller. He also states that now everyone is 1/100th of their original size and has developed special powers, becoming part of the system. Hearing all of this, Kang is confused and asks what the system and bioenergy mean. In response, Charles says that entering the first pillar of light is a prerequisite for passing. However, the system cannot accommodate the entire human population. Thus, they had to eliminate some of them in the later stages. Then he asks what they think happened to those who did not pass to the next phase. It is explained that all human beings who die are devoured by these bizarre space insects. In shock, the protagonist wonders if they are really being eaten. Everywhere, people begin whispering and gossiping about what they just heard. Charles states that suffering can make them progress and that in this way, everyone can become part of the system. With a serious expression, he says that this is the spark of hope they embraced, which is why these creatures were not eliminated. Changing the subject, he announces that he will send everyone into individual space so they can strengthen their abilities. Suddenly, a dense gas-like smoke emerges. The hero wonders what is happening when he collapses unconscious. At that moment, his body disappears. A man then approaches Charles, asking if he is getting what he needs this time. Smiling, the green-haired man calls him Max, saying it has been a long time. At that moment, the people from Phase 3 are teleported to some kind of swampy area. Everyone wakes up feeling extremely nauseous. In shock, the humans question where they have ended up. Appearing again, Charles states that this is the ant clone phase, something carefully designed for all of them. With a sadistic look, he says that now they will see whether they are like insects or better than that. He also comments that they can now earn points in this phase as well. Then a hologram appears, explaining everything about Phase 3. The objective is to survive for 3 days in the ant nest or to kill the queen ant, and the top 10 participants will receive bonus points. Suddenly, everyone begins to hear a strange noise. It is a swarm of ants coming toward the humans. Many people immediately begin to be attacked by the ants. The man then shouts, telling everyone to head toward the silver area. It is a group surrounded by military personnel. One of the people looks closely at the man and realizes that he is the president. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.